Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Web Audio TV. If you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe to my channel and hit the like button.
301 The Curious Shi Linglong. How do centaurs sleep? Do they sleep on the bed too? Asked Shi Linglong. She was genuinely curious. Centaurs couldn't really sleep on the bed. Yuan had placed some blankets on the ground to make a snug little place for Farla. Let's talk about repairing the heavy blade warriors instead, said Yuan quickly to change the subject. The heavy blade warrior that had fought with Farla was in the hall. Its head almost touched the ceiling. After the fight, its usage time had reduced to 20 minutes. Its metal body had sustained damage. Yuan needed to repair it quickly. She didn't think it could withstand another battle in this state. It would be a great loss if it couldn't be repaired. It was one of her strongest trump cards. N/O/vel/b/jn.c//om. What about mithril? Can't it be used to repair it? Asked Shi Linglong. It can be, but the process is just too slow. Yuan took out some mithril and placed it at the heavy blade warrior's feet. The metal body glowed faintly and started absorbing the mithril at a painstakingly slow speed. Even mithril can't heal extraordinary hunters? Shi Linglong raised her head and sized him up, then frowned. Shi Linglong frowned. Maybe it's because of the impurities in the mithril. Purifying it should speed up the process, she said. I will take this back and try to refine it. That's exactly why I called you here. Yuan knew that her friend was very talented at refining and restoration of equipment and weapons. Right now, the territory lacks crossbows and cannons. We need to develop them as soon as possible to fortify our defenses, said Yuan. Yuan shared her ideas with her friend. If they were going to expand their territories around each other, it was important to remain strong from all sides. Yuan had obtained the god-hunting crossbow's blueprint. It was a powerful weapon of S level. The alchemical cannons and bombs would undoubtedly be effective in approaching enemies. The god-hunting crossbows would be even better for long-range combat. Yuan wanted to perfect the defenses of her territory without any opening that the enemies could take advantage of. Who knows how strong the light-type army would be? If Su Yuan hadn't chased the six-winged seraphim and the angel army, Shi Linglong's territory core would have been destroyed. They talked for a while. After that, Shi Linglong wanted to say the centaur once, so Lin Wan led her quietly to Farla's room. The next morning, the residents noticed a centaur running around the territory. She looked young and full of energy. Farla was like a hyperactive child. The residents were a little surprised. When they heard Farla call Yuan and Su Yuan her mother and father, it caused an even bigger discussion. Our Lord and His Majesty sure know how to fool around, said a middle-aged man. Some thought that Yuan had given birth to the centaur. The Lord must have adopted Miss Farla from somewhere, said one of the residents. Farla looked to be 14 or 15 years old. It was impossible for her to be Yuan's baby. Most people knew that was not the case, but they were always up for some gossip. It didn't matter whether Farla was the biological child of Yuan and the dark demon dragon. Since she called them her mother and her father, that made Farla the princess of the territory. The residents were curious about Farla. They tried talking to her. She sang and danced and jumped around the territory, making everyone laugh. Farla was very sensible, too. She never disturbed others while they worked. She would stand silently at the corner and look at them with curiosity. The residents became fond of her. They always saved delicious food for her. Farla's crisp laughter echoed everywhere in the territory. Yuan let Farla roam freely around the territory. She focused on upgrading the territory. She needed to accumulate more resources and train to become stronger than before. Everything required resources. It was especially difficult to upgrade territory core with a lack of resources. Once the heavy blade warrior was repaired, she decided to take it underground to gather resources. She couldn't rely on hunting monsters to gather resources every time. With the rapid development of the territory, the resources decreased. They were at a stage where the remaining resources couldn't sustain the progress. This was the reason why Su Yuan and Yuan wanted to invest a larger number of resources into the development right now when they had enough. In the future, they couldn't sustain it by collecting and hunting for more. Your Majesty, the god-hunting crossbow has been successfully forged, said Eliza. Su Yuan perked up. He had been waiting for it for a long time. Yuan had gone out after assigning Eliza the task of forging weapons at the blacksmith's shop. When Su Yuan stepped into the courtyard, he saw the heavy crossbow in front of him. It was around 5 meters wide. The curved arc of the crossbow emanated a chilling aura. Many ordinary bowstrings needed to be fused to make one bowstring for the god-hunting crossbow. The body of the crossbow was engraved with runes. The energy fluctuation around it was palpable. The crossbow was propped up on a device that had wheels. Only someone of the giant's bloodline could pull the string on such a heavy crossbow. The crossbow was equipped with intricate mechanisms. It had 2 capstans on each side. When the capstan was turned on, the hook would pull the bowstring taut. The arrow could then be shot by pulling on a trigger mechanism. The ballista had a neat arrangement of giant arrows. They were designed with accuracy and precision in mind. The arrows would automatically get loaded when the bowstring was pulled. God-hunting crossbow. Level 4. Characteristic, each god-hunting crossbow can be equipped with 10 bolts. Range is 700 meters. Arrow flying speed is increased by 300%, attack power increased by 300%, hit rate increased by 70%, additional piercing characteristic, additional damage to heavy armor units, additional 200% damage to dragons. When using God Hunting Crossbow to attack, use at a minimum of 200 meters of range. Doing so will double the attributes. Note, a super heavy crossbow that can even be used to kill gods. The attributes were exemplary. Indeed, the weapon could even kill a god. 302 defensive fortifications. To say that even gods had to be wary of such a weapon would be an exaggeration, but it was true that it held the potential to wipe out the heavy blade warriors. It was that impressive. If the god hunting crossbow was used alongside alchemy cannons, the impact would be devastating, to say the least. Unfortunately, the god hunting crossbow was still a little incomplete. It had been too expensive to forge it. They had spent 100 tons of resources to forge one crossbow. If this thing was mass-produced, no one would be able to withstand it. There were still many underground areas that he could raid. He had only raided one area that belonged to the dwarves and had gained tens and thousands of units of mercury. He needed to accumulate resources, so the dwarves could build the cannons. Otherwise, having such smart dwarves would be a waste, especially if he didn't make use of their talents. Well done, said Su Yuan. Eliza's eyes lit up with delight. How long did it take to forge this one? Asked Su Yuan. Too long, said Eliza. But the time needed to forge the weapon could be reduced to 7 days. However, 30 apprentices will be needed to work on it. Make use of the resources we have right now and prepare to forge another. I will make up for the lack of resources as soon as I can, said Su Yuan. We need more god-hunting crossbows for battle. All right, Your Majesty. It will be my honor to oversee that. Yuan had gone to refine the mithril ores. She needed them to repair the heavy blade warrior. After coming out of the blacksmith shop, Yuan walked to the front of the dark castle. She opened the attribute panel of the territory. She still needed to work hard to make improvements. There were quite a number of buildings with untapped potential. They needed to be upgraded as soon as possible. The winery and food workshop needed to be developed more. However, there wasn't anything she could do to make it better right now. They needed more resources and more time to make Su Yuan and her dream a reality. n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. In terms of territory defense, alchemy cannons and god hunting crossbows were great weapons. The construction of the Hurricane Arrow Tower was in full swing and was about to be completed. Coupled with that, the strength of the troops definitely offered some protection. As for agriculture, dragon fruits, dragon drool grass, wheat, rice, and the 100-night flower honey had been growing steadily. These were the backbone of their territory's economy. Yuan had a lot of beneficial things she could use. The only thing she lacked right now was a suitable blueprint to develop the territory further. She had no choice but to wait till she could upgrade the territory core. The heavy blade warriors were the most efficient troop she had at her disposal. The sandworms were also hatching. They had endless use and potential as well. Perhaps they could be used for travel in the future. Su Yuan sighed. The resources and benefits they had obtained were still not enough. He fell into deep thought. Although they had obtained various useful treasures from their expeditions, these couldn't be used for the development of the territory. Sturdy walls needed to be built. The research and production of various things needed to be sped up. The city walls were essential when it came to the defense of the territory. At night, Yuan returned exhausted. She hugged Su Yuan and fell asleep. 2 days later, Eliza approached the Dark Castle to report on recent developments. Your Majesty, my lord, the Hurricane Arrow Tower has been completed. Yuan was excited. She looked at the tower, which was about 20 meters tall. She had a lot on her mind lately and had forgotten to pay attention to the progress of the tower. It was already completed. The Hurricane Arrow Tower had 3 floors. Each floor was full of holes from where the night elves could shoot their arrows. Hurricane Arrow Tower. Level, Beginner. Characteristic, arrows shot from the arrow tower will carry wind magic damage, 40% increase in arrow flying speed, 40% increase in accuracy, 30% increase in attack speed, increases the range of bows and crossbows by 100 meters. Can install 10 large-scale siege crossbows, increasing the range by 300 meters. Beginner-level arrow tower can accommodate 60 people. Upgrade requirement, gold, wood, stone, iron, crystal, gemstone, mercury. Note, arrow tower with a special power. It will be the territory's line of defense. The attributes of the Hurricane Arrow Tower were simply outstanding. Yuan was satisfied with it. She went to inspect the interior of the tower. At the entrance was a wide space where equipment and weapons could be piled up. There was a staircase that led to the upper floors. The walls were made up of wood, stone, and steel. They were very sturdy. The walls also held inscriptions that glowed with magic. When arrows were fired from the tower, they would be imbued with magic to make them extra lethal. The highest floor widened. Yuan looked out from one of the big holes. She could see the desert on the horizon. There were protruding areas where crossbows could be placed. Yuan was intrigued. The heavy crossbows could be used from here. If she could build 2 more Hurricane Arrow Towers, it would be easier to deal with a large number of enemies. The alchemy workshop was still under construction. Timo immediately started the work after he received 10,000 units of mercury. Timo was extraordinary when it came to his work. He had already engraved the walls with magic arrays and inscriptions. The dense energy rolled out and dazzled everyone. In the dark castle, the long wooden table had been removed from the center, and it was replaced by a black stone platform. The platform was engraved with magical inscriptions. Yuan saw Timo as she came downstairs. Well done. The eyes of the dwarf held determination and resolve, but he turned a little red at being praised. Timo was grateful. In the beginning, he had no hope. He only worked because he didn't want the dark demon dragon to kill him. He hadn't really cared for this territory. However, the Lord always treated him with respect and courtesy that he had begun to care for the territory, too. He felt a sense of loyalty and admiration towards Su Yuan and Yuan and was willing to contribute as much as he could for the betterment of the territory. 303 Yamada no Orakai. Yuan contacted Shi Linglong and the others to explore some underground areas. Zhao Qingrong didn't join them this time because she wanted to stay back and upgrade her territory core to level 3. Yuan needed to collect as many resources as possible. She wasn't far from upgrading her territory to level 4. After that, Su Yuan would be able to reach level 100. The light types were at an advantage right now. I haven't thanked you properly for helping me out last time. If you ever need help with anything, don't hesitate to tell me, said Shi Linglong. I will try my best to repay you. She didn't even know that the six-winged seraphim had been leading an angel army toward her territory to launch a sneak attack. If Yuan hadn't told her, she wouldn't have found out at all. Her territory core would have been destroyed by now if Su Yuan hadn't intervened. Is that so? Said Su Yuan jokingly. Then why not devote yourself to me? Su Yuan didn't really need anything from her, but it was good to banter with her. Shi Linglong blushed. Except that, I agree with everything. Su Yuan, stop joking, said Yuan. Please don't mind him, Linglong. He is just joking. Su Yuan knew how irritating Su Yuan could be sometimes, but he helped out when they needed him. After about 2 hours, they arrived at the level 60 dungeon. If the monsters in this dungeon all escaped to the surface, the world would suffer massive damage. They would need to pass through the first level, kill all monsters, and obtain the key. Only then would they be able to reach the second floor. This time, it was very risky. The threat level was high. After all, the underground dungeon wasn't explored yet. There might be many types of creatures and monsters in the first level. Killing them was bound to earn more experience points. For many lords, this would definitely be an opportunity. At this moment, Zhao Qingrong sent news that someone was planning to invade the territory while she was exploring the underground dungeons. They had been bantering as they walked, but now everyone was on high alert. Some lords couldn't learn a lesson even if it smacked them on their faces. They postponed the exploration and everyone, including Su Yuan, rushed to Zhao Qingrong's territory. Near Zhao Qingrong's territory, hundreds of giant lizards swarmed from all directions. The lords with light-type heroes approached menacingly. Hundreds of troops charged. This was definitely a declaration of war? If you leave now and promise not to cause trouble in the future, I will pretend this never happened, shouted Zhao Qingrong. She tried her best to negotiate with the enemy. If she could solve the problem without violence, she was even more willing to cooperate. However, if the enemies didn't want to listen to reason, she wouldn't back down from a fight. I'm warning you once again. Return to your own territories. Otherwise, I'm not going to hold back any longer. The enemies were unwilling to retreat. Since their territory cores were intact, they didn't want to head back. They could gain points from fighting Zhao Qingrong. After all, thousands of troops began to attack Zhao Qingrong's territory. Her defense of the territory was spectacular. It was not easy for the enemies to break through. What even is this? Said a lord in shock. How can her territory withstand so much damage? The lord had led other lords to attack an SSS-class wild monster and gained a red treasure that was very powerful. However, it was no match for Zhao Qingrong's defensive fortifications. Territory protection, SSS class. Note, increases 25,000 defense points of the city wall, increases 30% immunity and 40% defense. When HP falls below 20%, the invincibility effect will be triggered for 5 seconds. Zhao Qingrong's defense was almost impenetrable. The lords launched a fierce attack together, but they only managed to take down 10,000 defense points. That did nothing to Zhao Qingrong's territory. Yamada no Orakai, attack. One of the lords summoned Yamada no Orakai. A giant 8-headed snake appeared in the fray. The creature attacked and brought down another 10,000 defense points. With Su Yuan with them, Yuan and the others had no reason to panic. They even had the 9-headed hydra with them. What was an 8-headed snake in comparison, anyway? A level 56 hero. Su Yuan was surprised. He had activated the true eye of the demonic dragon to find out about the 8-headed snake. Except for Yuan and her friends, all their troops were of level 40. Yuan was also stunned. The creature wasn't the lord's initial hero, either. The lord must have used some special treasure to summon such a hero. The lord who was leading the battle laughed maniacally. n/o/vel/b/jn.c//om. Although the territory's defense was very high, Orakai's attacks weren't any less vicious. Coupled with the other lords and their attacks, the defenses might actually fall. Two-handed crossblade. Zhao Qingrong saw that Orakai's attacks were brutal, so she activated her SSS class treasure. Two-handed crossblade. Every 5 normal attacks can trigger a critical hit. Critical hit damage increases strength by 20%. Using this treasure can increase damage by 20% and penetration by 40%. When activated, piercing can cause 20,000 damage. The leader of the lords was shocked. Zhao Qingrong has another SSS-class treasure. Such SSS-class weapons and treasure could only be obtained by killing monsters of the same class. At present, no one could deal with SSS-class creatures alone. Even an alliance between several lords would have difficulty killing such a monster. They did not know that Zhao Qingrong had an advantage. They had Su Yuan by their side. By following Suan and Su Yuan on their expeditions, Zhao Qingrong, Xi Linglong, and Lin Yao had gained many benefits. Lin Yao used her sacred fire mage form to fight. The leader of the lords frowned. Where did Zhao Qingrong find that treasure? The probability of obtaining an SSS-class treasure was very low, and Zhao Qingrong has 2 of them? That couldn't be a coincidence. 304 The surrender of the alliance. Zhao Qingrong swung her weapon to attack. Orikai's HP decreased rapidly. The leader sensed that something was wrong. He considered the fact that Zhao Qingrong had 2 SSS-class treasures. However, he felt that Orikai would still be enough to tear her down. The leader of the lords was confident. Although they were slightly inferior in level and strength, their numbers were great. Their collective strength far exceeded Zhao Qingrong's. If the lords banded together, they would eventually defeat her. At this moment, they saw Suan with another SSS-class treasure in her hand. Xi Linglong and Lin Yao had them too. The leader of the lords had some hope when it came to Zhao Qingrong, but he felt helpless now. Impossible? Why do they have so many SSS-class treasures? He suspected that they must have cheated. If a lord obtained an A-class weapon or treasure, they would already be considered strong. Having so many SSS-class weapons and treasures was unheard of. Zhao Qingrong's 2-handed cross-blade dealt explosive damage. One swipe had almost killed Orikai. If it weren't for his special treasure, Orikai would already be dead. D***MN it. How do they have so many SSS-class treasures? The leader of the lords felt helpless. The strength of the lords' alliance was unparalleled. They were all above level 45. They even had Yamada no Orikai on their side. This sort of massive alliance would be enough to crush any lord easily. However, they were helpless now. The leader of the lords hadn't expected this at all. He had a bad feeling about all this. Lin Yao summoned a huge magic array. This was an AoE ability that could attack all targets within a 5,000-meter radius. It was usually used to attack groups of enemies. The skill had many limitations. It consumed too much mana and didn't deal heavy damage. However, with Su Yuan's demonic dragon's blessing ability, these limitations were no longer of concern. Lin Yao felt her mana regenerate as quickly as she used them. In addition, the scepter she had obtained in the mythical ruins could also increase magic damage by 40% and penetration by 50%. With this, the power of the flames had been greatly enhanced. The scepter and the mage robe provided both offensive and defensive uses. Countless fiery raindrops fell from the sky. We have lost more than half of our troops. If we continue fighting, I'm afraid we will be totally wiped out, said a lord to the leader. Their alliance was falling. In contrast, Zhao Qingrong had suffered only 1/3 of the damage. The leader frowned as he looked at the notifications that rapidly appeared, informing him of the numerous deaths. More than half of their troops had fallen. One of the heroes was dead, and most others were heavily injured. Other than Yamada no Orikai, who was struggling, all others in the vanguard were dead. If they continued, there would be nothing remaining of the alliance. However, they didn't know if they could retreat. Zhao Qingrong might not give them a chance to flee. She had warned them, and they had charged forward. Anyway, please, stop. We will surrender, shouted the leader to Zhao Qingrong. We don't have any enmity toward you. The light types promised us benefits if we took you down. The others didn't want to sit around and do nothing. So, we all formed an alliance. They hadn't dared to attack Suwan's territory. They wanted to take down the other lords one by one before targeting her. They had miscalculated. No one had expected all 4 overlords to be equally terrifying. Humph, I gave you a chance? You dare attack my territory on a whim and want to stop whenever you please. Zhao Qingrong's voice was icy. She could wipe out these lords if she wanted to. I'm genuinely sorry, said the leader of the lords. We got the wrong person. This is all a misunderstanding. The alliance was willing to pay 50,000 gemstones as compensation. The enemies had suffered more casualties than her. 50,000 gemstones were enough to cover whatever she had lost. However, Zhao Qingrong didn't want to let them go easily. She was really enraged by their audacity. She hadn't even done anything to them, but they had attacked her. If you want to leave this place alive, pay 100,000 gemstones as compensation, said Zhao Qingrong. Do not ever step near my territory again, or I will slaughter you without mercy. ISNT 100,000 gemstones a bit much, said the leader of the lords shakily. They had already suffered a great loss. If they paid that number of gemstones, they couldn't really recover. You should have thought about that before you attacked me, said Zhao Qingrong. I gave you a chance to retreat, but you wanted to fight. Either pay me 100,000 gemstones, or you will continue this war that you started until every single one of you is dead. The 4 friends were going to distribute the gemstones equally among themselves, so 50,000 gemstones were too little. The lords felt helpless. If they had to pay 100,000 gemstones, they would suffer a heavy loss. However, they still had Orikai, and the most important thing right now was to stay alive. All right, we are willing to pay 100,000 gemstones, as long as you promise to keep your word and let us go, said the leader of the lord. He gathered all the lords and made them pay some amount of gemstones. He was finally able to collect 100,000 gemstones. Zhao Qingrong accepted the gemstones. This is the last chance I give you. If you invade me again, I will not show mercy n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. Why leave them and be in doubt? Just kill them all and save yourself some trouble, said Su Yuan from afar. 305 Suan killed 10,000 people. The leader of the lords was wary as he watched Su Yuan flap his wings and fly nearer. What do you want from us? We already came to an agreement. You want to go back on your word, said the leader of the lord condescendingly. You never learn, do you, said Su Yuan slowly. You attack without reason and then beg for mercy. Nothing personal, but I think you need to be taught a lesson. The lords were too thick-headed. Last time, they had willingly joined together to destroy Shi Linglong. This time, they attacked Zhao Qingrong. Although human overlords could resurrect indefinitely in their territory as long as their territory core was intact, Su Yuan still wanted to give them an agonizing death so that they would remember the pain and tremble at the thought of attacking again. Su Yuan didn't waste any time. He summoned Eliza and the others. His body radiated dark energy that froze the enemies in fear. It was a massacre. The remaining troops were no match for the night succubus queen. She flitted among them and hacked them to pieces. Su Yuan let out a dragon's breath which burned numerous troops to death. The nine-headed hydra slaughtered Yamada no Orokai. In less than a minute, the enemy troops were wiped out completely. The leader of the lords was too stunned to speak. Please don't kill me, he pleaded. You agreed? You agreed to let us live if we paid. Zhao Qingrong was about to intervene when Suan stopped her. Leave it to him, she said. These people will never learn. They will keep attacking us until they are taught a lesson that they can never forget. They paid you, and you let them go, said Suan. You aren't fighting them now, are you? Technically, you aren't going against your word. This dark demon dragon was not known for his mercy. He had no shred of emotion for enemies. Kill him, said Su Yuan indifferently. As the leader of the lords was eliminated, a notification appeared. Suan had broken through to level 55. Congratulations, Lord Suan, for obtaining the title of 10,000 beheadings. Reward, 3 gem veins. Suan was surprised. Her hero and her troops had killed the enemies. So, the achievement was counted as hers? This battle wasn't just to kill monsters. Even real lords had been murdered. How terrifying, she thought. Suan opened her attribute panel. Strength, 1210. Spirit, 1612. Agility, 1507. Constitution, 1350. Hero, troop type. The notification spread all around the Overlord plane. The lords were in an uproar. D*AMN? How powerful is Suan? It might not be true. How is this possible? It's the notification for the Overlord plane. How can this be untrue? Sister Suan, can I join you? Awesome? It's her again. Suan had gained the title of 10,000 beheadings, which meant she had killed 10,000 lords without batting an eye. In the forum, comments kept popping up under the announcement. Congratulations on becoming famous. Zhao Qingrong smiled. Lin Yao laughed. Many boys might be drooling over you right about now. Suan brushed them away. n/o/vel/b/jn.c//om. Oh, come on. Are you afraid of making Su Yuan a little jealous? Said Zhao Qingrong jokingly. No, nothing like that, said Suan as she felt her face getting redder. These 100,000 gemstones are yours for now. The 3 of us are lending it to you. Zhao Qingrong handed her the pouch. Zhao Qingrong, Shi Linglong, and Lin Yao had all upgraded their territories to level 3 just recently. It would take them a long time to gather enough resources and fulfill the requirements to upgrade it further. They knew that Suan had been working hard to upgrade her territory core to level 4, and she was so close. She could definitely use some help. Besides, the 3 friends knew that their recent success had been possible only because of Suan and Su Yuan. Suan accepted it with gratitude. She could finally finish constructing buildings. She needed to upgrade and expand as soon as possible so that the 4 of them could be together. The surrounding lords had all moved away. They were afraid of being destroyed by Suan. Suan wasn't that violent. She wouldn't ever attack someone out of the blue, but the other lords didn't know that. Suan's title was enough to scare everyone away, which suited her perfectly. She hoped the lords would remember today's slaughter if they ever tried to join the light types again. Well, now that the invaders have been dealt with, shall we go back and explore the underground dungeons? Asked Suan. Yes, I'll make some preparations, and then we can head that way, said Zhao Qingrong. When they returned to their respective territories, Suan was still thinking about the reward. The gem veins were an endless source of various types of resources. The veins could be plundered when they urgently needed resources. She sent the night elves out to scout the nearby vein. The night elves had proved indispensable when it came to scouting and patrolling. Su Yuan felt that Suan needed to learn to use the true eye of the demon dragon to watch and communicate from afar. It would also come in handy when trying to suppress an enemy's will in battle. I'll show you how to use the true eye of the demon dragon in another way, he said. He released dark energy and a blood-red eye appeared in the sky. The eye revealed dozens of gem veins around the area. Suan sighed in admiration. The extent of Su Yuan's power knew no end. After some discussion, they agreed to send the skeleton soldiers to the gem veins to mine. These skeleton troops had been the earliest to be created in the territory. They weren't very strong in combat, but they could be revived indefinitely. The skeleton soldiers, with the help of Su Yuan's blessing, were immune to physical damage. Therefore, Suan and Su Yuan felt that they were perfect for mining and securing the veins for now. 306 new special troops. 1. Suan was responsible for becoming stronger. Su Yuan told her that she absolutely couldn't slack off on that. If it wasn't for him, the centaur would have killed her last time. As her level increased, the levels of the other troops would have to increase as well. Only by getting stronger would they be able to deal with the stronger enemies who might attack them in the future. Su Yuan had leveled up 3 times at a go. When word of that spread around, everyone was terrified. Su Yuan wasn't someone ordinary. The next aspect they needed to focus on was the development of the troops. The Battle Axe Warriors and the Dark Knights were their most efficient troops. Their experience points increased rapidly. Their level had already surpassed 60. The level of the troops and the heroes would directly benefit the Lord and the territory. Although they had many powerful troops now, they were far from enough. More powerful troops and creatures were needed. Suan remembered that she had had no time to sort through the spoils of war. She had collected a lot of things that could turn out to be useful. All equipment below A class was dismantled for resources. The equipment that was of a fairly high level that Suan didn't use was listed for sale. Suan allowed payment in installations for the weapons and equipment listed on her page. Now that she had achieved the title of 10,000 beheadings, her reputation had soared. No lord dared to defy her. Suan had also found some blueprints with which she could summon stronger heroes. These were dropped by the monsters they had killed in the past few days when they went outside to explore. If she increased her level more, the possibility of summoning a stronger hero would increase as well. It would be great if she could find more blueprints. Let me see what special troops I can summon this time, said Suan. She went to the hero altar. She placed the summoning blueprint on the altar. It flashed with a bright light. Congratulations, Lord Suan, for successfully unlocking a special troop type, the Azura. Can be summoned from the hero altar for 200 gems. The troop type, Azura, was successfully unlocked. However, to summon them, she would need to spend 200 gems. It was more expensive than summoning tier 4 troops. Suan felt that she might as well give it a go. So, she chose the option to summon the Azura. A red light flashed. An Azura walked out of the hero altar. He was around 2 meters tall and dressed wholly in red. Special troop, Azura. Level, 1. HP, 10,000. Attack, 42. Defense, 45. Speed, 47. Skill, Bloodthirst. When activated, 30% attack boost and 20% HP regeneration. Cooldown, 1 minute. Unique ability, Azura Soul. For every target killed, damage increases by 0.5, no upper limit. Wow, the Azura is indeed unimaginably strong, thought Suan as she looked at his attribute panel. The aura could increase damage permanently. The more people he killed, the stronger he would become. If Suan could help the Azura level up, he would, no doubt, become terrifyingly strong. Suan smiled in satisfaction. She spent another 20,000 gems and summoned a total of 100 Azuras. With such a number, they wouldn't be any less powerful than the Battle Axe Warriors. Suan sent Azuras to the nest of monsters to fight and level up. Only then would they become stronger. Next, Suan took out another summoning blueprint and placed it on the altar. Congratulations, Lord Suan, for successfully unlocking a special troop type, Wraith. Can be summoned from the hero altar for 1,000 gems. Wraiths. This keeps getting better. Suan's eyes lit up. Although the gems needed to summon the Wraith were much more than it had cost to summon the Azura, it only meant that the Wraith might be immensely powerful. Usually, more gems meant stronger troop types. However, Suan didn't know what was so special about the Wraith. She chose the option to summon a Wraith. An afterimage flitted past, and a white, translucent figure appeared in front of Suan. Special troop, Wraith. Level, 1. HP, 12,000. Attack, 56n/o/vel/b//in.c//om. Defense, 57. Speed, 50. Skill, Mental Shock, releases this skill within a 100-meter radius, deals 2,000 damage to enemies, and has 30% crowd control. Abilities. Devour, able to devour any living being, gaining 50% of the target's strength. For that to happen, the level difference between the two should not be more than 10. Cooldown time, 1 hour. Soul Body, 100% immune to physical damage, and 50% immune to magical damage. Wow, this troop is even more powerful. Suan was delighted. The attributes were quite strong even at the beginning. The troop already had 2 abilities to be used. Usually, troops, at the very beginning, came with only 1 ability and unlocked new abilities as they leveled up. The Wraith was indeed very powerful. The Devour ability was particularly remarkable. If the Wraith devoured a strong hero like the Succubus, wouldn't it surpass them in strength? Suan was euphoric. In just a few days, the Wraith should be able to reach level 100 with that ability. The Azuras that she had summoned had already broken through to level 60. Suan thought about it for a while and then decided to summon 100 Wraiths. Although they were strong, they were very expensive. She could only summon 100 of them for now. In the future, when she earned more gems, she would summon more of them. Suan used another blueprint to unlock a new troop type. Congratulations, Lord Suan, for successfully unlocking a special troop type, Dark Demon. Can be summoned at the hero altar for 50,000 gems. 50,000. Yuan was shocked at the price. 50,000 gems for a hero was just too much. She wondered what kind of hero the Dark Demon was to be sold at such an exorbitant price. Another way to summon a hero was by using Hero Stone. Hero Stones were too expensive to buy, but this hero, the Dark Demon, was even more expensive than that. Yuan was deep in thought. In the end, she chose to summon it. 307 memories of the centaur. Yuan reasoned that even if the troop costs an arm and a leg, it might have extraordinary abilities that she simply couldn't ignore. Special Troop, Dark Demon. Level 1. HP, 20,000. Attack, 100. Defense, 100. Speed, 100. Characteristic, Inheritance. The Dark Demon has no independent consciousness. It can be fused and devoured by any target. After fusion, the target will perfectly inherit all the power of the Dark Demon. Abilities. Soul. When fused with the Dark Demon, you can strengthen one's soul power and resist one fatal injury. Netherworld. This skill can be activated to force the target to die. The target's level difference with the Dark Demon shouldn't be more than 10. Note, Dark Demon can only be summoned once. This was great. Yuan thought that this troop type would be invincible when coupled with Su Yuan's demonic dragon's blessing. Nobody would be able to touch them? Yuan asked Su Yuan to help activate Farila's dormant bloodline. She wanted Su Yuan to try it, even if Farila wasn't a dark type. Yuan felt nervous and also excited. She was feeling overwhelmed with a mix of different emotions. She didn't remember feeling this nervous for anything before. However, Farila's constant chatter helped calm Yuan a little. Mother, can we go get some honey later? I love honey, said Farila. The flower fairy took me to the desert to play yesterday. I saw Treebeard. He is my friend. Do you know Treebeard? He can run so fast in the sand. Yuan felt at ease watching Farila talk about all kinds of things. A moment later, magical energy pulsed and surged. The centaur was hit by a wave of sleepiness. Farila slowly closed her eyes and fell asleep. However, the centaur still retained a blurry consciousness. She felt as though her wrist had been sliced open by something. Her power flowed out, and she felt weak and powerless. Even breathing was a chore. She didn't feel any pain, but she felt her strength dissipating. It was as though she had entered a dark prison. The void enveloped her. It was pitch black. She couldn't see where she was. Everything in this world seemed to blend into nothingness. She felt lonely and helpless. It was better to sleep forever. However, the will to live beat fiercely in her heart. It held her upright. Her father seemed to be whispering something. He was telling her not to sink. She did not know how much time had passed. Suddenly, an unfamiliar power slid into her body through her wrist. She finally understood what it was. A ray of light flashed in front of her, and she rejoiced. A memory appeared in her mind. The centaur was only 5 years old. Her eyes were red as though she had been crying. She was taken to a lake in the sky by her father. Farila knelt before a shadow. This entity was the controller of the world. A god whose face wasn't revealed. In her ignorance, she accepted the gift from the god. Vast energy encircled her. She was promised an endless lifespan. She would never die. All she had to do was never leave the lake. n/o/vel/b/jn.c//om. From then on, it was her duty to guard this place. She gradually came to understand that laws were shattered, and this lake was the only fragment remaining from the battle between the gods. Countless powerful gods had fallen here. The previous god had asked her to guard this place so the fallen god couldn't be resurrected. She was chosen by the gods because of her bloodline. She was the only one who could survive the power bestowed by the gods. At first, Farila was happy. She felt proud that she was chosen to fulfill this responsibility. She dedicated her waking hours to patrolling the lake and making sure it was safe from intruders. However, as time passed, the lake became her prison. She was lonely. She only had the desert fishermen. Farila had accepted her fate, but after 100,000 years, there was a sudden change. Some mermen reported a discovery they had made. Farila was already a demigod now. She led them to investigate the area. It was the Divine Kingdom. There was a god there. The one who was supposed to have fallen. She had a responsibility to fulfill. Farila led the mermen and attacked. The frail god was killed, but the Divine Kingdom, which was breaking apart, devoured Farila's power. The Divine Kingdom was repaired, but it left Farila half dead. It had tainted the mermen, too. She suppressed the Divine Kingdom into a core to prevent it from destroying everything. However, there was a bigger problem. The Divine Kingdom wasn't destroyed. It gradually devoured the power of the place around it and perfected itself. The centaur's power came from the shattered fragment left behind by the god. After losing her power, she became weaker and weaker. Her injuries didn't help. She had no choice but to seal her soul and enter a deep state of sleep to save herself. Generations of mermen died. Some died fighting, while others had lived a long life until death claimed them. Farila remained asleep for years. The power of the Divine Kingdom no longer posed a threat to the lake. With time, everything was forgotten. No one remembered what had happened. Suddenly, the centaur was awakened. She sensed the lake losing its power. The shackles on her body no longer bound her. She was free. However, her soul was injured, and her power completely dissipated. She no longer remembered anything. When she opened her eyes, she saw her father and her mother. Farila's memories made one thing clear. The Divine Kingdom wasn't destroyed. It was suppressed in the land of broken laws, and only the centaur knew how to unlock it. 308 Memories of God, 1. After the memory played itself out, Farla fell into the darkness again. However, she didn't feel helpless this time. Power surged in her body and healed her rapidly. This power didn't put a burden on her. She sighed in relief. With the help of the power, she regained control of her body. She sensed the energy circulating in her body. It was tender, like a newly sprouted seedling in spring. It wasn't a power she was familiar with, but it lifted her up and out of the darkness. Su Yuan's power allowed the centaur to be reborn again, out of her dark past. Farla didn't resist this power. She happily accepted it. As time passed, she felt stronger. It was as if she had so much power pumping through her veins that she could barely breathe. Farla didn't know how much time had passed. She used all her strength and opened her eyes. A blue sky came into view. Her blurry vision gradually cleared. She felt stronger and calmer than before. She turned to look at her side, where Su Yuan crouched. Farla's eyes welled. The memory of the past was too much to bear. When she was only 5, she was sent to the lake by her father. She had no one to talk to. Although she had received the blessing of the gods and obtained eternal life, her life had become her prison. It was an imprisonment without an end. At least for others, death sets them free in the end. She didn't even have that luxury. Farla sat up. She now recognized the power that had lifted her up from the darkness. Father, Farla gave him a teary smile. She walked in front of Su Yuan and knelt before him. She promised to be his sharp blade and wipe out anything that stood in his way. Yuan felt a little disappointed. She had wished for a daughter like Farla, and now the girl had only chosen her father. n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. Su Yuan had used his dark energy to break Farla's seal on her soul. Her power and her potential were now unleashed. A notification appeared in Yuan's mind. Congratulations, Lord Yuan, on obtaining an SSS class hero. Yuan was ecstatic. This was a win. However, another notification popped up. Breaking the seal of the gods will invite hostility from the light types. Your territory has been marked. The believers and worshippers of the god of light will regard you as an enemy, and your territory will be attacked. Yuan didn't really care. The light types were already at odds with them, anyway. What difference did it make to be marked now? She was angry, too. The light types had made Farla work all these years without any benefits. Besides, the light types couldn't descend to the overlord plane for now. The light types were only capable of launching sneak attacks. Moreover, she had Su Yuan by her side. Even the six-winged seraphim had turned tails and fled from him. Rise, said Su Yuan to Farla, who was still kneeling. The territory and the Lord need your protection. Will you help them? I will do my best, said Farla with conviction. From the moment her seal was broken, Farla had decided to dedicate her life to the dark demon dragon. She would obey him unconditionally. I will protect Mother with my life, said Farla as she glanced at Yuan. That made Yuan feel happy. Farla hadn't completely abandoned her. I saw my memories, said Farla sadly. Yuan's heart went out to her. Farla had been given too heavy a burden at such a young age. I was placed there to guard the area because of the fallen god, said Farla. Fallen god? Asked Yuan curiously. Farla nodded. I found out that the fallen god wasn't dead yet. Yuan was excited. She hadn't expected this. What happened after that? She asked. I led the Merman into the divine kingdom and killed the god. However, I was severely injured. I managed to suppress the kingdom, but it was too much for me. I know where the divine kingdom is. I am confident I can unlock it again. Yuan glanced at Su Yuan. She wondered if the god had left anything behind in the kingdom. Farla knew the location. This should have made her excited, but why did it make her feel so uneasy? Farla, what did you find in the divine kingdom? Asked Yuan. I found the god who was dying. His broken body. Divine body of a god. Yuan couldn't believe such a thing even existed. 309 Tupor. The fallen god could be resurrected in his body, said Farla solemnly. The divine body was not easy to destroy. They were practically invincible. Therefore, she had no choice but to seal it with the divine kingdom. So, the divine body is still in the divine kingdom? Asked Yuan. Farla nodded. The body was emitting power and tainting the Merman. For thousands of years, these tainted Mermen have reproduced rapidly. According to what Farla knew, the tainted Mermen had already formed an army within the divine kingdom. They were at least level 75. I suggest we wait and become stronger if we want to explore the divine kingdom. With our current progress, it will be difficult to deal with the tainted Mermen, said Farla. Yuan felt that that was sound advice. With the current speed at which they were leveling up, her troops would be ready in no time. Meanwhile, Su Yuan could break through the current level. Yuan nodded. She was still shaken. The value of a divine body was priceless. Unfortunately, they couldn't rush to explore for now. The tainted Mermen were at least level 75. Yuan and her troops needed to get stronger. What if there was an existence in that place that could even match Su Yuan, thought Yuan. We can't let anyone else find out about this, said Yuan. Also, is it possible for Farla to recover more of her memories? Su Yuan shook his head. Her soul was injured twice. It is difficult to heal that kind of damage. Farla only remembered her past till she had discovered the divine kingdom. She couldn't recall anything else. Yuan felt that that was for the best. At least, Farla could enjoy her life now and start over. There was no need for her to endure such unpleasant memories. Yuan opened Farla's attribute panel. The SSS class tag jumped out. Yuan knew the value of having an SSS-class hero at hand. No one would be able to challenge Farala in the territory, except Su Yuan. Moreover, Farala's attributes would increase drastically as she leveled up. She had an endless potential to become the strongest in the territory. Yuan was euphoric. If your kind decides to join us, we can make space for them, said Yuan. If she had around 3 to 50 powerful centaurs at her command, her territory would be invincible. Farala shook her head. Without the approval from the Patriarch, the Centaur clan will not join anyone else. I can't call them here. Farala was chosen to guard the lake because the Patriarch of their clan had approved it. Otherwise, she would never have left her fellow centaurs. Yuan was surprised. She wanted to tell the centaurs to move forward with the times. It seemed they still followed such old customs. However, there was no time to convince them of that right now. Besides, it seemed the centaurs sided with the gods. They might not really side with Su Yuan, after all. Yuan waved her hand. Farala went out to play. She was happy as she watched Farala disappear around the corner. Su Yuan opened the attribute panel. They had accumulated 2 weeks' worth of resources. We need to go to the underground dungeons again. You should hurry and develop the territory. It has become more urgent to level up. Su Yuan yawned. Yuan was feeling restless. There was the mythical ruin they still needed to explore. Now, they had information about the Divine Kingdom which was worth visiting. It was as though numerous treasures were waving at her invitingly, but she wasn't strong enough to harvest them. She needed to expand the territory as well. City walls. Characteristic, able to build a 20-meter tall city wall for a small city. It's equivalent to a normal city wall. Additional characteristic, as firm as a rock. Soldiers guarding the city wall will have their defenses increased by 20% and strength increased by 20%. Placing the city wall requires 2 million units of stones. Note, a city wall passed down from the ancient era, rare and precious. This blueprint of the city walls had been dropped in the recent war. The attributes were decent, but the problem was that she couldn't build them right now. Building the city walls required a total of 2 million units of stones. Even if she unearthed her whole territory, she wouldn't be able to gather them. Yuan sighed. She could only visit the underground to collect more resources. There was no other way. The trade output was slow for now. The pace at which they killed monsters wasn't helping either. They needed to raise resources as soon as possible. Go and make arrangements, said Su Yuan. Also, find Farala and tell her that the territory might not be safe from now on to play around. He closed his eyes. They prepared to go explore. A chunk of the troops was left behind to defend the territory. Yuan's territory faced danger both from the other lords and the light types. Yuan wanted to blame Su Yuan for all the gloom. If it wasn't for the plantation area, most residents would have believed they were living in hell. n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. In the underground, Su Yuan's dark flames burned a little to illuminate the way. His dragon aura spread in all directions. Some underground creatures fled in fear. Behind Su Yuan, the red-eyed black dragon followed closely. The night devil bees were next. The night flame archers and the dark knights rode behind with their weapons ready in their hands. Yuan rode on Su Yuan's back and watched the surroundings vigilantly. The underground areas were too dark and gloomy for her taste. However, they needed to explore it and get as many resources as they could. 310 An invitation from Dark Region City. Yuan reached the underground dungeon. Su Yuan was right. The underground dungeon really had abundant resources. The city that collapsed had been built again. The underground world hadn't lost its defenses. Instead, it seemed they had gotten stronger. There were a few arrow towers left behind. They hadn't been repaired yet. Yuan was surprised that the underground area's defenses hadn't weakened. The most eye-catching thing in the area was the twin-legged flying dragon in heavy armor. There were more than 30 of them. Their aura was strong. Before Su Yuan and the rest could get any closer, the dragons noticed them. The twin-legged flying dragon, which was larger than its companions, flew over to them. As it got closer, its hostility toward them disappeared. The dragons lined up in 2 neat rows and pressed their fists on their chest in respect. Su Yuan's gaze swept past them indifferently. The twin-legged flying dragon was feeling brave because it didn't pee its pants at the sight of the dark demon dragon. The Nagas watched the new troops enter. Their leader looked furious. The lord of the Dark Region City had told him that no one was allowed to enter the underground city from the outside. I want to ask why we aren't allowed to enter the underground city, but these troops have no such restriction, said the leader of the Nagas with disdain. They aren't from the Dark Region City, to begin with. Let me tell you why, said one of the guards and pointed above. The dark demon dragon even scared the dwarves away from the underground city. Lord Su Yuan is an honorable friend of the Dark Region City. How could the Nagas even compare to the mighty dark demon dragon? The Naga leader was shocked. He is the same dark demon dragon who has a bounty of 10 million units of food on his head. It was placed by the dwarves. He's that terrifying. 10 million units of food was not a small amount, especially in the underground world, where food was scarce. He had never heard of such an entity. If you can kill that frightening entity, you can definitely be accepted as an exception in the Dark Region City. The barbarian raised his head and looked up at the dark demon dragon with awe. If you can't do that, then stop talking nonsense in this place. The Nagas had no right to question the Dark Region City. The barbarian warrior had witnessed how the dwarves surrendered the moment they saw Su Yuan. They even followed him to the surface with alchemy gunpowder and cannons. The Naga leader took a deep breath and didn't dare argue. His skepticism had disappeared. Dark Region City and the City of the Dwarves were two significant places in the underground world that were strong and powerful. The Dark Demon Dragon had defeated the dwarves. The remaining dwarves had put a bounty of 10 million units of food on his head. One could only imagine the extent of the Dark Demon Dragon's power. The basic rule of survival was to respect the one who was strong. Su Yuan didn't know what was happening. He directly landed on the square in front of the mansion. The ruler of the Dark Region City came out of his mansion to greet him. Your Majesty, welcome to the Dark Region City. The barbarian warriors looked at Su Yuan in awe. They had never seen someone so powerful before. Felix, long time no see, said Su Yuan. Yuan stepped forward and exchanged a few polite words with Felix. Felix eagerly pointed at the caravan entering his city. As we discussed last time, we purchased many weapons and equipment from the outside world, said Felix happily. Yuan's eyes lit up. I will buy them all. She hadn't expected Felix to be so efficient. The market was terrifyingly expensive. Even if they sold all their weapons and equipment in the underground world, it wouldn't fetch much price. Hearing Yuan make such a bold offer, Felix was overjoyed. Felix smiled radiantly. Praise the gods. He must have been blessed by the goddess of fortune herself to be able to meet such a person. The two looked at each other and laughed heartily. Although he didn't dare offer his friendship to the Dark Demon Dragon, he had opened a trade relationship with Su Yuan's lord. It seemed that in itself would be most beneficial. n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. Lord Yuan, last time, your hero, the Dark Demon Dragon, cleared away foreign enemies from the underground city. The elders of the Dark Region City have decided to invite you to be the vice president of the Dark Region City. We want to extend a hand of friendship if you would be willing. Yuan didn't realize there would be a follow-up on that. She knew very well that the Dark Region City was extending a hand in friendship so that Su Yuan would help them out in the future. However, Yuan didn't care. This was her chance to gather more experience points and become stronger. Besides, this kind of offer would definitely make her famous. Felix, I gladly accept your invitation, said Yuan. The friendship between my territory and Dark Region City will be everlasting. Her words made Felix grin happily. He knew Su Yuan and Yuan were inseparable. It didn't matter who he invited for the position. 311 The capitalist Yuan. If the other overlords found out that Yuan was now the vice president of the Dark Region City, they would be immensely jealous. Only a few lords were worthy of such a title. Most of them didn't even have the qualification to summon a high-level hero. Congratulations, Lord Yuan. You are now the vice president of the Dark Region City. The underground people hold you in high esteem. You now have a very high status. You obtained one underground world legendary point. Yuan was euphoric. Legendary level, limited to the underground world. Additional characteristic, intimidation will cause fear in enemies whose level is lower than you, making them revere you. There is a small chance of recruiting dungeon heroes to join you. When you enter an underground city, your favorability with them will automatically increase. The attributes were good. Moreover, she had gotten this title for free. If Yuan could obtain more legendary points in the future, the attributes would increase drastically. Maybe one day she could become so legendary that her mere name would make enemies flee in fear. It felt like she was a goddess now. Unfortunately, the legendary points were only effective in the underground world. Felix invited them to his mansion. They made their way to the hall and sat down. Are the remaining dwarves causing trouble here? Asked Yuan. Ever since they were chased away by His Majesty, they don't even dare to approach the Dark Region City, let alone cause any sort of trouble, said Felix. The dwarves had even given up the territories they had seized before. Felix looked a little sentimental. He didn't know how to thank Su Yuan. However, the next moment, his face darkened. Vice President Yuan, the dwarves haven't given up entirely. Some are looking for a way to deal with His Majesty, Su Yuan. They have placed a bounty of 10 million units of food on his head. 10 million units of food, exclaimed Yuan. Su Yuan was speechless. Why is Yuan getting excited? He realized that she coveted the 10 million units of food. That only proves that the dwarves don't have the means to defeat Su Yuan on their own, so they are trying to attract someone else who would be willing to fight Su Yuan. Don't worry. I know how powerful Su Yuan is, said Yuan as she waved her hand dismissively. Felix explained that the dwarves had an alchemy weapon that was hundreds of times more powerful than alchemy cannons. 100 years ago, when Dark Region City was at its strongest, they had once suppressed the dwarves from the Furnace City. However, in the end, they had failed anyway. A powerful creature was buried underneath the terrifying alchemy weapon to seal it away. The dwarves' weapons are indeed powerful. However, they usually make huge weapons that are only suitable for defense purposes, said Yuan reassuringly. There is no need to worry. As long as she didn't go to the Furnace City, everything would be fine. Yuan wondered if the Dark Region City had such a weapon too. If they did, why didn't they use it? That weapon was destroyed. Felix looked sad. It was no wonder they feared the dwarves. The Dark Region City had lost its one weapon that might have defeated the dwarves. She asked for more information on the dwarves and the Furnace City. Felix tried his best to answer her. This underground world had long been considered a forbidden area for outsiders. The Furnace City was the most significant threat to the Dark Region City right now. How many weapons did you order from the outsiders? Asked Yuan. Plenty. I spread the news first, and then bought them in exchange for units of food, said Felix. In these 10 days, dozens of merchant caravans entered the dark region city. Felix hadn't expected such dramatic success in his endeavor. He was excited and nervous at the same time. He was excited because his offered price was accepted willingly by the outsiders. If he sold these weapons at a reasonable price to Lord Yuan, the dark region city would make a fortune. However, Felix was nervous. He had spent a lot of food in exchange for weapons. The food resources were decreasing drastically. If his other part of the plan didn't succeed, the dark region city would face famine and starvation. Thankfully, he had made the right decision. He told Yuan as much. She was happy to hear that everything was working out for him. Yuan also felt that she had made the right decision when she proposed a trade relationship with the dark region city. She didn't need to do anything now. She just needed to pay Felix and watch him do all the work. All she needed to do was sit back and relax. This reminded her of the European nobles of the Blue Star during the medieval voyage era. They exchanged cheap industrial products for expensive gemstones in the New World. They had reaped profit while harming others. Yuan wasn't like that. Her territory and the dark region city benefited mutually from this trade endeavor. Felix, have the weapons ready. We'll pay with units of food, said Yuan. Vice President Yuan, there are still many caravans that have yet to arrive. Shouldn't we wait for them to enter the dark region city first? Asked Felix. Felix, those caravans and the merchants within are here to make a deal with you. Lord Yuan is only here to buy the weapons she needs, said Yuan. Felix's eyes lit up. He looked at Yuan with admiration. The trade would fetch him millions of units of food. Felix was euphoric. Felix wondered if he would have done the same in their place. It would probably be extremely difficult for him to agree to trade in food. This made him respect Yuan and Yuan even more. The goddess of fortune was definitely blessing him. n/o/vel/b/jn.c//om. Felix, our trade relationship will last for a long time. You better set a reasonable price with the merchants so that they don't feel like they are at a loss from this transaction, said Yuan. Yuan listened attentively. She knew Yuan. He wouldn't make such a suggestion lightly. Cheating someone off of their resources or goods right at the beginning would harm the possibility of maintaining a long-term trade relationship. Moreover, most outsiders would be vigilant. They might not even transport all the goods as promised. 312 Nam with fear. You are right, Lord Yuan. Your foresight is very admirable. Vice President Yuan is also very outstanding. Thank you so much for choosing to trade with me, said Felix as he bowed. Yuan didn't respond. He felt that the trade relationship would turn out to be beneficial only if everyone benefited from it. The underground was selling obsolete weapons now. However, the underground world was rich in ores and minerals. They could even sell legendary weapons in the future. If they nurtured and stood by the underground world, there would be endless benefits in the future. Now that Felix had earned some profits, he was willing to open up more trade routes. Yuan found a warehouse in the dark region city and sold her own equipment and weapons that she didn't use. Some lords were surprised to find so many damaged weapons at such a cheap price. When they looked at the seller's ID, they were even more surprised. It was this woman. It was Yuan. Almost all of them knew about Yuan. The forum was flooded with messages and posts. Yuan, you're so fierce. Didn't you loot the dwarves' hometown that was underground? How did you get so many damaged weapons? Yuan smiled as her weapons were bought. She happily accepted the gems in exchange. Zhao Qingrong responded in the forum. This is just the start of a small business. I can help you book a few thousand pieces of weapons if you all want. Zhao Qingrong had come along to help Yuan with her wares because they were good friends. Yuan opened the forum to take a look. She realized that most posts and discussions were about her. The posts had numerous comments. Even through the screen, it was apparent that the others were sour about it. Yu Xiao, I just want to ask Yuan how she got hold of so many weapons. Wow, she sold so many in just a few hours. It must be because she is beautiful, so people are falling over themselves to buy her goods. Her name is going to be immortalized at this rate. Upstairs Khan, I feel like Yuan had used her beauty before to get benefits. I want to report this. Cuckold the fated person, this is unfair. My territory doesn't even have a blacksmith shop. How is it possible that Yuan has tens and thousands of weapons? Some of the lords, who had just bought some weapons from Yuan, commented on the forum too. Big fishes eat small fishes, Yuan is awesome. The quality of the weapons is good. Monkey, she sells it at a reasonable price too. It was so affordable. Dong Ji's spirit, the weapons I just bought are indeed decent. I will never attack Yuan's territory. The lords were divided. Many admired and respected Yuan, and others hated her for her audacity. Anything she did caused a heated debate among the lords. Most felt that the gap of points and strength between Yuan and themselves was just too huge, that it was unfair to them. Besides, whenever she did something, she would spend numerous resources making the others shudder. They felt that they were too poor. What does it matter if she is strong and rich? If we all join hands, can she still win against us? If anyone knows where her territory is, post it on the forum. We will all go together to attack her. We must destroy Yuan's arrogance. The new post attracted people's attention. How can Yuan live so extravagantly? They felt disappointed that they were doing so badly when Yuan was living her best life. Among the commenters, there were the lords who had participated in attacking Xi Linglong and Zhao Qingrong and had faced their wrath. However, out of spite, they pretended to encourage the others wholeheartedly to attack Suan. If these unaware people had ever faced Suan even once, they would know what despair felt like. After a while, some lords formed an anti-Suan alliance. There were quite a lot of them. Suan didn't know whether she wanted to laugh or cry. She had no time to argue with idiots, so she closed the forum and went back to selling her weapons. In the Dark Region City, more caravans entered with their wares. Some merchants found out that the weapons they had sold Felix would be bought by an overlord from the surface. They wanted to bypass this arrangement and trade with Suan directly. Felix didn't dissuade them. He showed them the way to Suan's warehouse. Meanwhile, Suan rejected every offer from the merchants for direct trade. She emphasized that as vice president of the Dark Region City and an overlord, she was willing to trade only with Felix and no one else. So, if they wanted her to buy their wares, they would have to sell them to Felix first. This made the merchants disappointed. However, they didn't dare argue because they knew about Suan's reputation. Besides, they were currently in the Dark Region City, so it would be better not to offend the city itself. The Dark Demon Dragon also stood behind the Lord with a ferocious expression on his face. His aura made them feel numb with fear. Everyone knew that there was a bounty on his head for 10 million units of food. The bounty amount always represented the strength of the target. Everyone steered clear of Su Yuan. The merchants didn't want to try negotiating with the Dark Demon Dragon. In the end, they just continued to trade with the Dark Region City. Suan didn't ask how much Felix paid them for their wares. She bought the weapons for 50 units of food from him and sold them for 100 units. If the level of the weapons were higher, she increased the price accordingly. However, she still kept it at a reasonable price. Looking at her earnings, Suan felt happy. Trading was indeed the fastest way to earn resources and gems. Most importantly, everyone who participated in the transaction benefited in some way. Everyone was satisfied with the price. The weapons and equipment that the merchants sold to Felix were otherwise unusable. So, they were happy they got something out of them. The Dark Region City was also satisfied with the trade. They only needed to collect these weapons and equipment and sell it to Suan. It was an easy job. It earned the Dark Region City great benefits. Suan was the most content from this business deal. All she needed to do was collect weapons and equipment, fix them a bit, and then put them up for sale. The lords practically fell over themselves to buy the weapons because they were decent and affordable. Everyone who was involved in this transaction felt that they had benefited in one way or another. N/O/vel/B/jn.c//om 313 The Greedy Suan. Suan felt that this opportunity was the icing on the cake. Everybody was grateful to her for coming up with the idea. When Felix reported that all the warehouses were empty, Suan could finally take a break. Her mind was filled with thoughts of getting rich. Gold coins, 200 tons, wood, 150 tons, stone 300 tons, iron ore, 170 tons. The total amount of resources was about 820 tons. Suan couldn't be happier. Felix, the Dark Region City is my new best friend, said Suan. Felix, who had also gained a lot today, smiled brightly. Suan was simply too excited to calm down. She took a few deep breaths and composed herself. She wanted to return to her territory and upgrade it as soon as possible. After the upgrade, the lords would tremble in fear at the sight of her territory. Felix looked like he had had something in his mind. Vice President Suan, today's transaction went perfectly. However, I feel like we can deepen this cooperation. How so? Asked Suan. It's a good idea to repair and sell old and damaged weapons. However, I think that they are bound to run out at this rate. What if we buy new equipment and weapons instead of only old ones? Asked Felix. The underground world has no shortage of ores, and every area has its own forging expert. In the past, it was a risky move because nobody knew if weapons would sell much. If we offer to buy newly forged weapons at a higher price, the other merchants will definitely agree. That way we can still sell the old, repaired weapons with the newly forged ones which could be sold at a higher rate. I do need your consent for this, Vice President Suan. Suan looked at Felix with surprise. She didn't expect him to be so sharp when it came to business. If she and Su Yuan disagreed with the idea, then it will be put on hold. Overcapacity was what the Dark Region City was afraid of. They didn't want to invest in something that would just pile up and collect dust while bringing them no profit at all. The underground world had the means of production but no market before. Now, they had the market, so they needed to find the means of production. The lords would definitely buy weapons. They had many troops who would be stronger with better weapons and equipment. Felix, that is a great idea. I promise you that I will buy the weapons and equipment off of your hands as long as they are of good quality. Felix smiled radiantly. That was the answer he wanted to hear the most. Vice President Suan, meeting you and His Majesty, Su Yuan, has been the greatest fortune of Dark Region City. I can even believe that the gods of darkness are looking out for you and me. The two people reached an agreement, and their deal was finalized. The merchants were just getting ready to depart the Dark Region City with their caravans when an announcement made them even more excited. From now on, Dark Region City will continue to purchase weapons and equipment on a large scale. Moreover, we are expanding our trade to include new and better weapons. The price that we can offer you is tempting. The merchants would have doubted such an announcement at any other time. However, their transaction had been good today. Their caravans were full of food. These merchants were from areas that had a massive shortage of food. As long as they got paid in food units, they didn't mind bringing new and better weapons to trade with the Dark Region City. The first thing these merchants did after reaching their own areas was to start forging weapons for the next trip. The news swept throughout the underground world like a storm. The human overlord from the surface attracted everyone's attention. The Dark Region City did not hide Suwan's title. Suwan was now as famous as the Dark Demon Dragon with a bounty of 10 million units of food on his head. There were many who looked upon Suwan with greedy eyes. However, Su Yuan's presence at her side always deterred them. After the transaction was completed, the Dark Region City arranged a grand banquet in honor of Suwan. After the sumptuous dinner, Suwan didn't head to the room that was prepared for her. Instead, she sat in the hall with the various officials of the Dark Region City. She sipped her tea and chatted with them. n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. Su Yuan wasn't interested in small talk, so he returned to the room to rest. Everyone was in a good mood. Suwan thought about the legendary title she had obtained today. She thought of an idea. Felix, can I ask you for a favor? She asked. Felix was red from drinking. Everyone turned to look at Suwan. Her current status in the underground city was very high. No one dared ignore her words. Vice President Suwan, please do so. As long as the Dark Region City has the capability of fulfilling your wish, it will do so unconditionally, said Felix. My territory might be at war in the future. The Dark Region City has just finished a war. We have suffered serious losses, but Vice President Suwan, we will send troops to support you in any way we can. That is the best we can do. The dwarves are still targeting our city, after all. No, I don't need military help. I don't want your troops. My territory doesn't lack troops, said Suwan with a smile. Felix was confused. Then, what do you seek? Felix, you mentioned the alchemist last time. He has been doing wonders for the territory. I want more heroes like him who can help with research and development. Vice President Suwan, heroes are the pillars of power. We don't have extra heroes to spare in the Dark Region City, said Felix bitterly. 314 not even letting the corpses off. I don't need the heroes of Dark Region City. Suwan waved her hand. Then what is it that you request? I need you to help me spread a message throughout the underground world, said Suwan. You can spread the message that I am recruiting heroes to my territories from the underground world. As long as they can offer what I seek, they will be given a place in my territory and will have to live on the surface. Felix was relieved. Leave it to me. I will make sure everyone hears about this. The influence of Dark Region City in the underground world was huge. Suwan smiled. She would definitely find some heroes who would be willing to join. The next day, the Dark Region City spread the news far and wide. To the people from the surface, the underground world represented a wealth of resources. To those in the underground world, the surface represented safety, food, clean water, and fertile lands. The possibility of being able to live on the surface was a very attractive prospect in itself. Suwan's offer of recruitment spread like wildfire. Suwan was still unaware of how much of an effect her words would have on the underground world. That day, Suwan was woken by Felix. Although there was no sun in the underground world, the residents still divided their time into day and night. The glowing moss dimmed after 12 hours, which signaled to the residents that it was nighttime. Vice President Suwan, I remember you saying that you wanted to buy corpses of wild beasts, asked Felix as they were having breakfast. Yes. Some of the underground troops went on a hunt and brought along many corpses of the wild beasts if you want to have a look. They have been preserved in the south of the city. Would you be willing to take me there? I'll buy those that I need. One of her troops, the rotten cavalry, could devour corpses to become stronger. These corpses could also nurture the night devil bees. Felix was more than willing to show her the way. After breakfast, he led the way to the south of the city. As they headed out of his mansion, Suwan looked around curiously. This was the first time she was strolling in the streets of the Dark Region City. The buildings here were completely different from the ones on the surface. n/o/vel/b/jn.c//om. The houses on both sides of the street were built with stones. They were as strong as fortresses. Even a catapult might not be able to blast through. The roof was like a small awl with an arc, and the sharp blade was of steel. It wasn't a roof to block the rain, but a weapon to defend against enemy invasion. The houses were connected to each other very closely. They looked like teeth. Long, narrow, and sharp. If the enemy launched an attack from the sky, the residents could avoid injury and hide in their homes. Moreover, the houses were attached to caves, which functioned as shelters. The residents could escape to the shelters directly from their houses. This place was designed to withstand a war. They had thought of all kinds of possibilities. Suwan was curious. In such a place, it was no wonder that the dwarves couldn't attack using their cannons. Even if the enemies were many, they couldn't do much damage here. While Suwan looked around with curiosity, the residents also stared at her. With Felix personally accompanying her through the streets, they felt that she was someone important. Besides, the aura was apparent enough to show them that she was from the surface. She looked and felt different. Have you heard? That human overlord is recruiting heroes. If she takes a fancy to them, they will be taken back to the surface. I heard the surface is full of vitality. They have food and clean water. It might be just a rumor. Why would humans be willing to recruit underground heroes? Aren't they afraid? Did you see the dark demon dragon with the human lord? Do you think the humans will be afraid of underground heroes with someone like him on their side? That's true, but who knows what we will find at the surface? What if they want to take us to the surface and murder us? Are you an idiot? Do you know how powerful that lord is? Why would she take so much effort to recruit heroes from here just to murder them? The residents talked and discussed. They were very curious about the surface world. However, no one dared to step forward and pester Yuan. They respected and feared Felix. They stood at the side and watched. Felix, our trade shouldn't just be limited to weapons and equipment. Important and legendary items dropped by beasts could be traded too. Felix nodded. He promised to spread the word through the underground world. He was sure that other areas would be happy to hear this. It also benefited Felix. As a middleman, the more striking things he could find for her, the more his city would benefit from it. After a brief discussion, they arrived at the place, where the corpses of the beasts were preserved and stored. Crisp white grasses covered the corpses. Yuan had seen this type of grass before. It seemed to be native to the underground world and prevented the corpses from rotting. It was called flowing light grass. The monster's corpse was faintly discernible from among the leaves. This is the monster we hunted. Felix scrunched his nose. The stench was unbearable. The underground monsters were poisonous and inedible, which really frustrated him. He was only here to show it to Yuan, in case she wanted to buy it. Otherwise, he wouldn't even look at it. The monsters were of no use in the underground. They were also very difficult to hunt. If not for the depleting food resources, Felix wouldn't have agreed to trade corpses of wild beasts with Yuan. It just wasn't worth it. The hunters often got killed by the monsters in the process. Yuan looked at the dead beast with interest. The monster seemed to be at least level 10. 315 who can withstand Lord Su Yuan's wrath? There were many corpses piled onto each other. It was a waste of time. It was better to exchange some of them for resources, but taking everything with them would be troublesome. Moreover, Yuan didn't want her territory to be filled with so many corpses. There was a difference between having dark types as troops and having piles of corpses. Her territory already looked gloomy, and she didn't want to add to that image. Yuan asked the soldiers to count the corpses. One by one, she listed them all on the market for sale. The corpses were transported to the warehouse. They sold out very quickly. When the other lords saw what Yuan was up to, they became even more jealous of her. They cursed her name. The anti-Yuan alliance gained popularity on the forum as they discussed methods to bring down Yuan. Some even posted clues about her territory location. Others didn't participate. They had tangled with Yuan before and knew how powerful she was. They didn't want to end up dead. Meanwhile, Yuan earned a net profit of 300,000 units of resources after paying the Dark Region city their due. She was now only 500 tons away from being able to upgrade her territory. Yuan was content. As long as Su Yuan was by her side, she could venture out into the underground world and obtain a wealth of resources. Yuan thought about whether she should seal off the entrance to the underground world on the surface. The only entrance left would be from within her territory. That way, she would have power over the underground and anyone who wanted to venture here would have to seek her permission. After the last transaction was completed, Yuan was in a very good mood. All she needed to do now was return to her territory and put the resources to good use. She needed to finish the territory's construction. When the soldiers closed the warehouse, Yuan suddenly thought about the flowing light grass that had a cooling effect and could preserve corpses. Felix, can you give me some of those magic plants that keep things cold like ice? Asked Yuan. Sure. I'll have some soldiers dig out 200 units of the grass for you. Felix didn't care about such a small matter and agreed to give the grass to Yuan. Right at that moment, a notification appeared. The sandworm in the backyard has successfully hatched. Please feed it on time. An atavism option has appeared for the hatched sandworm. It has successfully reverted to void sandworm. Please pay extra attention while raising it. Yuan was surprised. The sandworm had finally broken out of its shell in a month. Should I start preparing the plans for transportation using these sandworms? Yuan was excited. She had huge expectations when it came to the sandworms. She specifically wanted to use them for transportation. I wonder what attributes the sandworms will have. Vice President Yuan, there are many light flowing grass in the back of my mansion. I'll make some soldiers dig them up for you. Felix saw Yuan smile and thought that she really wanted to have those grasses. Thank you so much for your generosity, said Yuan. She realized that Felix must have misunderstood her smile to mean that she was really interested in the grass. I should be the one thanking you, said Felix. This human overlord had indeed changed the Dark Region city for the better. Food was hard to obtain in the underground world. However, because of this trade relationship, the Dark Region city didn't need to worry about food. Felix only hoped that they could cooperate for a very long time to come. He felt that it would be even more beneficial if he could maintain a good relationship with Su Yuan. He was the reason why Felix had extended a hand of friendship towards Yuan. After all, the power of the Dark Demon Dragon was unparalleled. Under Felix's orders, the soldiers had also managed to dig up other kinds of magical plants common in the underground world. The smile on Yuan's face widened. She happily accepted his hospitality. After that, she didn't stay in the Dark Region city. n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. Although she wanted to stay and explore more, she had to leave in a rush to see the sandworms. She rode on Su Yuan's back with a pile of grass. Su Yuan spread his wings and flew away over everyone's shocked gazes. There were some people who even wanted to follow along. Suan didn't care. She enjoyed riding on Su Yuan's back. She hadn't even slept well because Su Yuan had decided to go back to the territory at the last minute while she stayed back in the Dark Region City. When Suan and Su Yuan disappeared from sight, the officials of the Dark Region City surrounded Felix. Aren't we going to send someone to spy on them? We know how powerful Suan's territory is. What can we do? Asked Felix as he looked up at the sky. They didn't know whether they should attack her territory or let her be. We can't sit around and do nothing. But they didn't have the power. Suan could collude with others and attack the Dark Region City and destroy it if she wanted to. Your worries aren't unfounded. However, do you know why Suan has the power to make decisions as she pleases while the Dark Region City cannot? Asked Felix. He turned to them. Strength determines which party gets the first say on things. Maybe you're right. Suan is nothing. But the Dark Demon Dragon is by her side. The Dark Demon Dragon made the dwarves evacuate their own homes. The dwarves left the area that had been previously annexed. Tell me, who can dare go against the Dark Demon Dragon from the Dark Region City? If you make a move against Suan, are you sure you can withstand the Dark Demon Dragon's wrath? Everyone fell silent. If only they had the strength to deal with the Dark Demon Dragon, they would have unified the underground world a long time ago. We need to take this time and opportunity and get stronger to finally unify the underground world. Felix let out a sigh. Strength ensured survival. They needed to get stronger to regain their power to have the first say in important matters. 316. The God of Light. The matter at hand was not how strong Suan was and how many forces she had under her control. The most important thing was for them to get stronger so that they could become the rulers of the underground world after unifying it. We need more information on the terrifying weapons that can be found in the Furnace City, said Felix. After the officials left, Felix calmed down. The fire in his heart still burned. The Dark Region City will eventually become my territory. Bader headed to Suan's territory. Her territory was already marked. The God of Light, Bader, was also the god of spring and joy. As one of the most important gods, Bader could completely dominate the entire light types. Suan and Su Yuan had expected the light types to retaliate, but they hadn't expected that it would be so soon. The red-eyed black dragon soared into the sky. His dragon's breath corroded and injured a dozen light types. The red-eyed black dragon swooped down and trampled on 2 light types. It was as though a huge mountain had descended on them. They couldn't move. The terrified light types screamed hysterically under the dragon's might. Suan frowned. She watched from afar. State your purpose for trespassing on my territory, light scum, n/o/vel/b/c/om. Blasphemer, the great god has already meted out divine punishment for you. Your territory will be destroyed. Your soul, along with the dark demon dragon, will be nailed to the wall of pain by our god. The 2 creatures went limp where they stood. They floated in the air. It sent a chill down Suan's spine. The corpses opened their eyes and stared at her. Human, no one dares to defy my will. You will receive divine punishment. Destruction and doom will rain down on your territory. Under Bader's divine power, the enemy would definitely fall on their feet and beg him for forgiveness. Or so he thought. Trash. Su Yuan flew up to the city walls. It was just the god of light. He wasn't afraid at all. The dark energy surged like lava. The moment this energy touched the corpses, they swelled up. They exploded with force. Broken limbs flew everywhere. The fear that Suan had felt before disappeared. Su Yuan retracted the dark energy, and it dissipated as though it had never existed at all. Su Yuan, I love you, cried out Suan in joy. Facing a living god with all their might was not something everybody could do with ease, but Su Yuan managed somehow. Suan knew that her current level wasn't enough to withstand a god's wrath. Fortunately, she had Su Yuan by her side. Her face darkened the next second. A god appearing in the Overlord plane wasn't a small matter. After dealing with the group of crazy fanatics and their god, Su Yuan and Suan headed to the back of the territory to check on the sandworms. The sandworms grew healthily. All magic plants nearby had been uprooted. The space had been cleared for the young creatures. In time, we can set the sandworm free to hunt monsters around the territory. A void sandworm, with dark golden runes engraved all over its body, devoured void energy to grow. So, it needed void monsters for nourishment. Don't let them eat just any food. It'll affect their potential, said Su Yuan. He gestured to the remaining magical plants. These were the magical plants Suan had gotten from the underground. One was the light-flowing grass, which had a cooling effect and could prevent the corpse from rotting for a month. The other one could create hard ice. These plants are important. When we find high-level monsters, these could keep them fresh. The corpses of high-level monsters were very nutritious. Some troops fed on the flesh of these monsters for nourishment. However, these magic plants required a specific type of environment to thrive. Suan had cleared the area and expanded it underground to make space to plant these magical grasses. Suan asked Su Yuan to bestow the demonic dragon's blessing on the newly hatched sandworms. Su Yuan did that and communicated with the sandworms. He told them to obey Suan as their lord and consider the territory as their home. After that, the sandworms drilled into the ground and disappeared. Su Yuan vastly ignored these creatures. Even though they were powerful, he couldn't use them right now. They could only be used more efficiently after they grew into adult sandworms. Suan opened the attribute panel of her territory. The night devil bees had grown in number in recent days. Their numbers almost exceeded 2,000. Most roamed in the wild and didn't stay in the territory. Yuan was quite satisfied with how things were going. She wanted to speed up their reproduction rate until their population reached 3,000. Yuan knew that there would be another battle. The god of light wouldn't let the matter slide so easily. Yuan was her main power. Yuan was in awe of Yuan. He wasn't just the strongest, but he also never got exhausted from using his power. Unfortunately, the sandworms couldn't be used in the upcoming battle. Yuan took out the blueprint for the special city walls. She needed 200 tons of stones to build them. It definitely wasn't cheap. Fortunately, she had obtained enough resources from the underground to make up for it. Consume 200,000 units of stones to build the special city walls. Yuan approved the prompt. The stones in her territory's inventory decreased by 200 tons. The ordinary city walls shattered like glass and disappeared in a burst of light. Under the shocked gazes of the residents of the territory, the earth rumbled. Black walls rose from the ground. Was this some kind of trick? They thought. This was only the beginning. The walls rose rapidly after emerging from the ground. They only stopped when they reached a height of 20 meters. The black city walls towered over everything, blocking the outside world. 317 The war is coming. The residents ran out of their houses at the commotion. Their mouths fell open at the sight of the enormous walls. What's this? Gods above, am I hallucinating? How is this possible? The city walls can be built out of thin air. A miracle? This is a gift from the gods. The residents turned to see Yuan standing a few paces away from the city walls and admiring the great infrastructure. They really felt that Yuan was no less than a god. They bowed to her in respect. No one said anything, but the admiration in their eyes was apparent. This was their lord. The residents had watched the territory grow into the formidable place it was now. The pride they felt when they called this place their home couldn't be described in mere words. Yuan saw the residents and waved to them. The city walls represented safety. They were the first line of defense. The city walls were the shield of her territory. Yuan opened the attribute panel. City wall, special. Level, beginner, able to level up along with the territory's level. 1 million units of stone material required for the next level. Characteristic, 20 meters tall, 10 meters wide, 30 points of sturdiness. Abilities, tenacity, 20% increase in strength, and 20% increase in defense. Note, a city wall with decent defense capability. The attributes weren't very remarkable. However, these were much better than the ordinary city walls. Yuan climbed the city walls and looked into the distance. The walls enveloped the territory from all sides. The crisscrossed battlements were half the height of an average person, and the soldiers could shoot from the dents to stop the enemies. Even a ballista would not be able to pierce through the sturdy city walls. There were 4 gates in total. They were so tightly closed that nobody could pry them open. To open the stone gate, a clever mechanism needed to be turned to make the gates retract. Yuan smiled as she stood on the city walls. With the new city walls, the territory felt different. She thought of an idea and immediately summoned Timo. Timo, get someone to move the giant cannons up the city walls and set them here. The rest of them would set up a camp behind the city wall. Cannons weren't like bows and arrows. Their impact was far stronger. If possible, Yuan wanted to set up the cannons in all 4 directions on the city walls. Unfortunately, they only had a few of those. Yes, my lord, said Timo. He felt happy to be assigned such a responsibility. How's the progress of the alchemy bombs? Asked Yuan. The alchemy workshop will be completed tomorrow. It is estimated that the workshop can produce 50 bombs a day. All right. You focus on doing the necessary and increasing production. This is an order, said Yuan sternly. Timo swallowed the words he wanted to say. He nodded. You can apply for as many resources or manpower as you need, but get it done, said Yuan. Timo heaved a sigh of relief. This was his opportunity to make a contribution. He was also wary because he didn't want to make a mistake and lose his job. After Timo left, Yuan looked at the planting area. The territory was fine for now. However, the agricultural section without any defense in place was a problem. If the war reached its climax, there won't be enough time to send the troops to defend the area. Yuan felt much more at ease while walking around the newly built walls. She returned to the dark castle after a while. Spending 200 tons of stones was worth it. Now, she needed to upgrade her troops. He opened the attribute panel of the troops. Upgrading to a rare class took 50 tons of resources. Upgrading to a higher level than that costs around 100 tons of resources. She upgraded some of the troops to higher levels. Yuan's eyebrows twitched. It took too many resources to upgrade them to even higher levels. The battle-axe warriors that she had chosen to upgrade changed. Their weapons glowed faintly. Their aura soared. The rotten cavalry was different too. Their attributes were significantly higher than before. The range of attack had increased from a 40 to a 60-meter radius. The improvement in their attributes was just too remarkable. A 60-meter attack range was more than enough in a serious battle. If the battle-axe warriors imbued their battle-axe with fire, it could cause a significant explosion. n/o/vel/b/jn.c//om. Yuan looked at her newly upgraded troops and smiled in satisfaction. Yuan summoned other troops and upgraded them accordingly. She now had enough resources at hand. Yuan's troops and her territory were at a level that the other lords couldn't even dream of. Yuan felt proud of herself. Which lord could even compare to her? Besides, she still had Su Yuan. The rewards and resources she had obtained from the underground world were abundant. Yuan felt good about where she was in her life right now. Urgent report, said a soldier who had run all the way to her. He was panting. The light types are gathering. The enemy had hidden beyond the hill and used magic to mask their trail. They might not have been detected if it hadn't been for the crowd. Su Yuan slowly opened his eyes. He looked into the distance and smiled sinisterly. The enemies had arrived just in time for them to test the changes they had recently made. Sound the alarm? Tell everyone to stay on high alert. 318 The Holy Light Society Army N/O/Vel/B/JN.C//OM. As the Holy Light Society's president, Seven Shackles remained cautious, especially since their territories seemed to have become part of the Overlord Plane, and dying was no longer permanent. Seven Shackles remained even more alert. The Seven Shackles always preferred to leave the area than to fight. However, this time he was tempted. That was because the God of Light, Vader, had offered a reward to all creatures of light. If anyone could attack the Dark Demon Dragon's territory and offer his and the Lord's soul to the God of Light, they would receive an unprecedented reward. This was a mission of an S rank. This was the first time Seven Shackles had accepted a mission on the Overlord Plane. He was skeptical at first because Yuan's territory was just too far away. It would take months to travel with all the troops. However, 2 days ago, the Holy Light Society had obtained a special teleportation treasure that could open a dimensional portal and transport numerous troops. He had approached the God of Light, Vader. Vader had strengthened the treasure to make it even more strong. All they needed to do now was advance to Yuan's territory. The God of Light had also given Seven Shackles another treasure. With that treasure, he could command the light types under his wing. Moreover, the territory they were going to attack wasn't even built by the natives, which usually proved to be far too strong to storm into. It was just a simple territory bestowed by the Overlord Plane to a human lord. The lord had offended the God of Light, and now Vader wanted revenge. To Seven Shackles, this was icing on the cake. The mission was just too simple. The light types that were commanded to follow him were of very high levels. Seven Shackles didn't believe that the human lord could withstand the oncoming troops. So, what if the lord had the Dark Demon Dragon by her side? Even an entity as strong as that had to abide by the Overlord Plane's rules. He was definitely not at his peak right now. No matter how strong Yuan was, she couldn't survive against such a massive army even with Zhao Qingrong, Shi Linglong, and Lin Yao's help. In his opinion, this mission would be over in no time. Besides, he had the support of the God of Light. He didn't think he could lose. Guild leader, this time we're going to reap benefits for doing practically nothing, said one of the lords. How difficult could it be to destroy a lord when we have 10 lords fighting together? The light types have already gathered. They are now under our command. Under this joint effort, no one can win against us, not even Yuan. These lords had accumulated a huge number of troops in recent months. All the troops were of high level. They had even recruited several S-class light type heroes. They wondered how much more powerful the Holy Light Society was. The God of Light wasn't like other gods, who were vastly unapproachable. He often sent down miracles to the lords he supported. Many lords had accepted missions from him before and received precious rewards. With such support, the lords were confident that they could defeat Yuan. The Seven Shackles smiled. Not bad. No one can stop us. Let's go. The lords and the troops passed through the dimensional portal. They were confident and well prepared for the upcoming battle. They all coveted the S-rank reward. The war horn sounded in Yuan's territory. The residents were so used to frequent attacks that they hardly panicked. The ones in the territory did what they were assigned. Those outside returned to the territory as soon as possible. The person in charge of the plantation area completed her work and led the staff away through the towering gates. Praise the Lord! This is unbelievable. I didn't even hear the walls being built, said one of the residents when she saw the new city walls. This is a miracle. They weren't worried about the enemies because they had the Dark Demon Dragon on their side. No one would dare enter the territory with him around. The residents of the territory were truly united in opinions and thoughts. No one even thought about fleeing the territory. They had full faith in their lord and the Dark Demon Dragon. At this moment, the troops were preparing for the upcoming battle. The Night Devil Bees were ushered into the territory. Yuan frowned. Whenever her territory was attacked, the plantation area was the first target. The Seven Shackles was excited. 10,000 troops made their way towards Yuan's territory. They noticed that something was different under their feet. The light types, on the other hand, didn't feel anything. The troops advanced one after the other. The treants sniffed the air and roared. When Seven Shackles saw this, he was even more sure than before that victory was theirs. He appraised the treants, but he could only see their name. Dark Withered Treants. The name was a little unusual. However, the creature seemed to have extraordinary melee abilities. 319 The Dark Withered Treants. Note, these Dark Withered Treants don't have any long-range attack abilities. With the use of long-range attacks, the treants have a lesser chance of survival N/O/Vel/B/JN.C//OM. Seven Shackles discovered the weakness of the treants. Close combat troops, retreat. Archers, attack. The surrounding troops retreated a few steps, while the bright creature archers moved forward as they readied their bows and arrows. Fire, shouted Seven Shackles. He felt an indescribable fear in his heart, as though an ancient creature was watching him closely. Every cell in his body warned him of danger. He was bewildered. He lowered his head to look at his feet. The ground around his feet was slowly sucking at his feet. The soft ground couldn't hold him up. His feet were slowly getting submerged as the ground tried to swallow his legs up to his ankles. Dark swamp. Everyone, retreat immediately. This is a dark swamp, said Seven Shackles. A light-type hero that had followed him to attack also found its feet slowly submerging into the ground. The hero was so scared that he tried to flee. However, every step took a lot of energy and force to pull out from the soft ground. The next step sank deeper than the previous. The more they struggled in their panic, the deeper they sank. The troops were scattered all over the land. It was chaos. At this moment, the treants moved toward the area with more troops. Their wooden limbs flailed. They exploded among the light-type troops. Blood and limbs flew everywhere. The light types attacked the treants, but they couldn't pierce through their wooden hides. As the treants moved, the swamp churned like a vortex. The treants controlled the dark swamp. Yuan replaced the area with lots of dark withered treants and turned it into a dark swamp a long time ago. The dark withered treants controlled the vast area of the dark swamp. When faced with a natural disaster like this, most of the troops lost their courage. The light types were never known for their strong willpower. The light types even pushed away their own allies in a hurry to escape. The dark swamp extended to almost 10 kilometers in all directions. This was the dark withered treants' domain. No one could enter or leave as they pleased. The swamp gurgled and surged. The more the light types struggled to get away, the faster they were pulled into it. Seven Shackles felt a chill run down his spine as he watched the dark withered treants drown the light types one by one. These monsters were too strong. Seven Shackles had thought that these treants had nothing to do with Yuan's territory. However, he was suspicious now. How had Yuan managed to conquer such powerful creatures? Seven Shackles was gripped by a feeling of helplessness as he watched numerous light types being pulled down and drowned in the swamp. More light types and a few lords were swallowed by the swamp right in front of him. Seven Shackles had been so confident a few seconds ago, but now he was only filled with fear and hopelessness. The dark swamp churned like a vortex and swallowed more troops. It didn't give a chance for the enemies to escape. The entire troop that had stepped into the dark swamp was swallowed whole. In the end, only a few survived. When the last of them was swallowed whole, the dark swamp slowly returned to its original state. The forest looked lush with dragon fruits hanging above them. Nothing seemed wrong. Seven Shackles was terrified. He didn't want to venture into the dark territory. Guild leader, what should we do? Asked one of the lords. That brought Seven Shackles back to reality. The lords were unwilling to give up. They still had many troops they could use. Seven Shackles felt distressed, but he couldn't show it in front of the others. He was the leader. Gather the army and prepare to attack the territory. His voice was hoarse. Their mission was to capture Yuan and the Dark Demon Dragon. As long as they could do that, everything would be okay. The God of Light would make up for the losses. The dark withered treants had caused him hopeless despair. He decided to wait until the treants calmed down to launch an attack. The second wave of attack was about to begin. The night devil bees flapped their wings and approached their enemy. Yuan turned into her demonic dragon form. She flew high above the clouds to keep an eye on things. She smiled when she saw the horde of enemies. She had ordered the red-eyed black dragon and the night devil bees to stay hidden. The light types had some troops that could fly. When the light types finally launched an aerial attack, Yuan would release the night devil bees on them. Yuan stayed back in the dark castle and watched everything. There was no need for him to go out. The battle would end as soon as it started. The territory had fortifications in place. Yuan looked at the dragon fruits hanging on the trees. No one could resist the temptation to become stronger. The dragon fruits offered a chance to strengthen the troops. The fruits were also bait for the troops to fall into Yuan's trap. 320 The Dark Swamp. As long as the bait was tempting, anyone would willingly walk into the trap. Yuan ordered the treants to stand down until the enemies had stepped into their domain. Then, they were allowed to devour them. That plan was a success. This hunt had given her ideas. How many night devil bees could be nourished from the corpses of the heroes that had just fallen? How much power of the dark withered treants could be restored from the bodies the dark swamp had swallowed? Yuan realized that if she could efficiently harness the nourishment from the corpses in her area, she could really turn her territory into a real dark territory. The sound of a horn interrupted her thoughts. She turned around. Under the moonlight, light types were launching another attack on her territory. Her territory was only at level 3, so it wasn't very huge. When tens and thousands of troops converged from every direction, her territory was entirely covered. Yuan perched on the city walls and watched. Numerous troops surrounded the territory. The sight would have been enough to scare any lord. The horn sounded again, and an evil aura filled the sky. Many of the residents, who had returned to their houses, peeked from their windows. The oil lamps had been extinguished. The residents had been trained well. Any light could easily be targeted. The residents weren't scared. Instead, they looked determined to do their part. Many people held simple weapons in their hands and crouched in the dark. They had made their choice. They wouldn't let the Lord fight alone if the territory was breached. They would rush out and help the Lord as much as they could. The residents didn't claim to be fearless. They were scared out of their wits but still willing to fight. The light types and their lords weren't weak. This alliance was indeed stronger than most. However, they were facing Yuan. Her name alone struck fear into the hearts of many lords. Seven Shackles didn't dare take this fight lightly. The heroes around the boundary of the territory formed a defense line. If they weren't prepared, the enemy would take them by surprise. Seven Shackles didn't have the time to check the attributes of the territory, so he didn't know exactly how strong the territory was. Lord Seven Shackles, what should we do now? Asked a light-type hero when he saw that the Lord was lost in thought. Seven Shackles let out a weary sigh. He raised his head to look at Yuan's territory. It didn't matter how strong the enemy was. If they could somehow breach the boundary, they would have an advantage. Prepare the troops. We need to restrict and restrain them, said Seven Shackles. He raised his sword. Blow the horn. We attack. For the glory of the god. They had come this far. Turning back was not an option. The only choice was to attack with all their might. As long as he finished the mission, he would get that reward. He didn't think the enemy could withstand the troops he had brought along. The horn sounded for the third time. The troops charged. The pressure on the city walls increased. Seven Shackles clenched his fists in anticipation and smiled. He had faith that they would succeed. He heard a buzz from somewhere. Something felt wrong. Seven Shackles turned to look. Under the illumination of the moon, a dark mass was approaching quickly. He opened the attribute panel to check. Night Devil Bees. Seven Shackles was frozen in fear. How could this territory have such powerful troops? The dark mass swooped down at them and engulfed everything. The light types who had been attacking the city walls stopped in fear. They didn't know what to do. The Night Devil Bees shot forward like arrows, leaving afterimages in their wake. Their stingers flashed in the light before they impaled it deep into the skin of their enemies. The parts of the enemy's skin which weren't protected by their armor suffered deep, poisonous wounds. Blood splattered everywhere. The area where they were stung turned green. The poison spread quickly, and many troops dropped dead where they stood. Wherever these bees ventured, troops dropped like flies. The Night Devil Bees were relentless in their attacks. They didn't give the enemy a chance to recover. It was as though a natural disaster had cleared out a portion of the enemy's population. The remaining troops were scared out of their wits. In the blink of an eye, the situation had turned from bad to worse. n/o/vel/b/jn.c//om. Seven Shackles was still frozen. He was trying to figure out a way to fight these creatures. He looked at the Night Devil Bees and then at the light types who were fleeing. His body felt numb, and his head buzzed. His heart was pounding out of turn. What are these bees? Are these Yuan's troops as well? He couldn't believe how Yuan had managed to nurture one powerful troop type after another. What should I do? Their determination and courage shattered with the appearance of the Night Devil Bees. The poisonous bees couldn't be stopped unless they had a mage who could cast an AoE spell and clear them out. Guild leader, should we retreat? The two lords by his side panicked. They no longer wanted to attack the territory. They only wanted to get out of this place alive. Seven Shackles was unwilling to accept this fate. They had a huge army. They even had light types to back them up, and yet, they had failed miserably in bringing down this one territory. How could he just accept defeat? Yuan looked at the scene below. The Night Devil Bees had done their job wonderfully. However, Yuan didn't let her guard down. She sensed that the enemy was like a venomous snake lying in wait for the right time to attack. However, she was ready. If they made any sudden moves, she would unleash the heavy blade warriors upon them. 321 The God of Light's Revenge Plan n/o/vel/b/jn.c//om. The situation surprised Yuan. The Night Devil Bees had killed a chunk of the light types. However, the God of Light still wasn't making a move. What's he waiting for? Her uneasiness grew. As the attacks weakened, she summoned the Rotten Cavalry. The troop charged amidst the remaining light types and attacked them. The Rotten Cavalry was a formidable troop. The light types were hacked and slashed. They were akin to livestock that were slaughtered without mercy. On one side, the troops were destroyed in droves at the hands of Eliza. She struck fear into their hearts. The remaining light types fled from the scene. The Hydra attacked from another direction, not allowing the light types to get close to the city walls. The enemy was no threat at all. The situation changed. The fight was completely one-sided. The revenge plan of the God of Light was useless. Seeing that they were losing, the lords had already surrendered. They quietly retreated with their remaining troops. The fight seemed to have come to an end. Yuan frowned. This made her uneasy. The battle had been just too simple. She had won, so why was it that she still felt like something was not right? She suddenly raised her head to look at the sky. The sight terrified her. The corpses of the light types melted into puddles of blood and shot up into the sky in the form of a pillar of light. Every fallen light type shot up into the sky. The residents of the territory saw the red light that kept rising up outside the city walls. They gathered at a point in the sky and radiated reddish light, turning the whole world a shade of scarlet. The face of a hideous creature appeared in the light. It opened its mouth and spoke in anger. Lowly ant, I will burn you for 1,000,000 years. You will bear the agony of my wrath forever. That was the God of Light. Yuan was frightened. She understood now that the light types and the troops that had fallen were nothing more than cannon fodders. Those troops were left here to die? It was no wonder the fight had been one-sided. The enemy hadn't planned to breach the territory in the first place. The pressure from the face in the sky was immense. It was as if a mountain weighed their souls down. Everything felt too heavy. This was a god, and he was angry. Yuan's face darkened. She could feel the god still devouring the dead troops to gather strength. If the god descended upon the territory, everything would be destroyed in an instant. Yuan. Yuan didn't have a choice but to call Yuan for help. This was something that was beyond her control. Seven Shackles, who was preparing to flee, saw the face in the sky. He was overjoyed. The god of light, Bader, was here to help him. Seven Shackles laughed maniacally as though he had gone completely crazy. He knew that it was over. It didn't matter whether the enemy had S-class heroes or Venus Night Devil bees. When the god descended, everything would be over. The dark demon dragon appeared before Seven Shackles. He was shocked to see the creature. What is that? He opened the attribute panel, but the only thing visible was the name of the hero. Legendary Dark Demon Dragon. Level: Strength, Spirit, Agility, Constitution. Seven Shackles was stunned. How had Yuan managed to get such a powerful hero? He was envious. He watched as the dark demon dragon flew into the air directly at the huge face that had metamorphosed into the sky. His jealousy turned into delight. The dragon seemed to have a death wish. It was as though the dark demon dragon was willingly flying toward the belly of the beast. Every cell in his body warned him of danger. He knew that the god would completely annihilate the territory. He had to get away before it happened. The swamp surged. The world seemed to shatter. Yuan rushed to the face in the sky. His claws swung wildly. A light flashed and pierced the scarlet light. No matter how he attacked, the light corroded his being. His claws were giving off smoke. The scarlet light and the face superimposed on the sky didn't change. The attacks didn't make a difference. The scarlet light was immune to all forms of attack, no matter how powerful. Yuan still looked indifferent. After a while, he smiled. Dark Dual Domain, drag the enemy into the dual domain and engage in a fair one-on-one duel. There is no interference from the outside world during this period. The winner will devour the soul of the loser and absorb the power. Yuan smiled in satisfaction. The Dark Dual Domain offered a fair chance for a fight. The god, no matter how strong, would have to abide by the rules. The enemy had no physical body, so he couldn't fight in the first place. Meanwhile, Yuan devoured the red energy rapidly. The rules of the place changed. The god of light was impossible to deal with in that enormous form. However, something had changed. Although his light corroded Yuan's body, it didn't inflict damage in the same way as before. 322 defeat. Yuan continued devouring the divine energy, as the entity resisted with all his might. Both sides were at a stalemate. Although Yuan's plan might just work, it was still not easy for him to face the might of a god. The divine power sought to ensnare his soul. The power of the dark dual domain began to subside rapidly. He watched as the timer decreased. Yuan was surprised. He used his might and continued devouring the red energy. Seven Shackles was shocked. The dark demon dragon blocked the attack of a god. He watched in disbelief. That was a god. Even if the god of light had used only a portion of his power, it was still enough to suppress everything. The aura and the energy were terrifying. In the face of that vast and expansive divine might, Seven Shackles felt his legs tremble. He almost turned around and fled. However, the dark demon dragon had somehow flown directly toward the god and blocked his attack. Seven Shackles was unable to understand how that had happened. How is the hero so powerful? This was what it meant to be ranked at the top? His heart sank. The other lords weren't feeling as hopeless as Seven Shackles. Guild leader, it's okay, said one of the lords. Don't worry. The god of light is here. He will definitely win. Yeah, how can a mere dark demon dragon stop a god? That's right. How is a hero comparable to a god? If they still resist, they will die in a tragic way. Mortals could never survive against a god's wrath. Even if gods couldn't descend onto the overlord plane, a portion of their power was enough to annihilate any lord or hero. On the ground, the corpses of the fallen light types still melted and flew up to feed the enormous face superimposed in the sky. The night devil bees couldn't stand the overwhelming pressure and had to fly away from the territory just to be able to breathe. It was rare for a troop to venture so far away from one's territory, but the night devil bees had no choice because the pressure had almost crushed their soul. All the troops were like candles in a storm. Their soul flames swayed as though they would be extinguished any minute. The troops had lost their will to fight. The spiritual aura was just too oppressive. Sensing that Yuan had blocked most of the energy, the face twisted in the sky and spewed obscure scriptures from his mouth. The oppressive aura increased tenfold. It felt as though this was the end of the world. It was difficult to imagine how Yuan must have felt being so close to the face. By any ordinary standards, his soul should have shattered. However, the dark energy radiating from his body became even more intense. It devoured the red energy intensely. Yuan single-handedly stopped the god from descending onto the territory. The face of the god of light gradually dissipated. It twisted and churned as though it couldn't keep its form. All that was left was a muddy scarlet stain in the sky. Nonetheless, the oppressive aura had no intention of diminishing. Those with weaker willpower fell into despair. The night devil bees retreated even further from the territory. Endless light surged, and a power tore the sky apart. Space became distorted. The god was injured. This enraged the god of light further. There was an explosion. Dragon's breath burst out of Yuan's throat, and the black flame scorched the sky. The flames enveloped the scarlet thing in the sky. The two energies collided and erupted. The scarlet, hideous thing began to bubble as though it was boiling. How could a dragon humiliate a god so brazenly? The god was furious, but this was the overlord plane. The rules didn't let him unleash his full power. No matter how angry he felt, the god of light couldn't do anything at the moment. Yuan looked at the boiling red stain in the sky. His face was indifferent. The red thing was almost won. However, there was still a chance for the God of Light to descend on the territory and destroy it. Su Yuan didn't want to take any chances. He unleashed his dark energy to the fullest. Loneliness and despair enveloped everything. Nothing mattered. The aura surged as the voice of the God of Light became more infuriated. The dark energy soared until it enveloped the red stain and devoured it whole. The terrifying divine light disappeared without a trace. It was replaced by loneliness and despair. The power seemed to see beyond everything. It was so despairing that the people found it more terrifying than the red energy that had made them lose their will. The aura dimmed and the feeling of loneliness and despair dissipated. Fortunately, his consciousness had not completely awakened. Otherwise, he couldn't tell how much of an effect it would have had on his body and his mind. Moreover, if that had happened, he wasn't sure he would be allowed to stay on this plane. The Overlord plane had its own rules. Su Yuan looked up at the sky. This world was no longer under threat. He calmed himself. It had been difficult for him to face the God of Light. The pressure he had felt was indescribable. The territory was right below him. If it had been destroyed, he would have lost everything. It was unbearable to even think about it. Seven Shackles looked around solemnly. He had never expected to be defeated so utterly. An army of tens and thousands of troops was gone just like that. In the end, only a few people managed to escape. How was the Dark Demon Dragon so powerful? How could a hero fight against a god? Seven Shackles couldn't understand it. He could accept it if the dragon had won against his troops. That was still something that he could comprehend. But the dragon had fought against a god. The God of Light had been defeated by the Dark Demon Dragon in front of their eyes. n/o/vel/b/jn.c//om. Seven Shackles was in disbelief. The other lords looked lost and helpless. He had been so confident in this mission. He was sure he would win and get a reward from the God of Light himself. He couldn't understand how everything had changed. How did he reach this state? He had even used up his treasures when he was trying hard to escape the fight. 323 Su Yuan is comparable to a god. The fight was over. Su Yuan finally allowed himself to relax after the God of Light had disappeared completely. He had been worried. He wasn't in a state to face a god directly. In the future, if he had to face a god in their full power, he needed to develop the territory and level up. He didn't have that kind of strength yet. The moon was visible in the sky again. The bright moonlight shone on Su Yuan's scales and illuminated them. Suwon's face flickered with many emotions. Su Yuan had heeded her call and blocked the attack from the god. She was grateful to him. The residents clutched at the windowsills of their houses. They were in awe of Su Yuan. Their eyes burned with fierce emotions of loyalty and devotion. Nov. L. B/JNN. His Majesty defeated a god, some whispered, scarcely believing it. They had seen the face of the God of Light, Bader. His name had resounded in their minds with a force. It had felt as though the red energy was trying to enslave their will. They had felt fear and suffocation until Su Yuan had freed them. Their hero had freed them from that oppression. Even Suwon couldn't compare to him. Su Yuan was powerful enough to defeat a god? If someone claimed that Su Yuan was the supreme god of them all, the residents would have believed it. Suwon heard a notification appear. Congratulations, Lord Suwon. Your initial hero has stopped the descent of the God of Light. You have received 1 legendary point. You and your hero's charm has increased. The charm could be used to persuade subordinates and to gain trust. At the same time, it could be used on wild troops and heroes to convince them to be recruited. Suwon was stunned. Is that possible? She smiled. The legendary point received after defeating the God of Light wasn't restricted to a certain area, like the one she had received in the underground world. This was universal. She could use it anywhere. She was happy to receive the point. In the future, she could make her subordinates follow and obey her more willingly. Suwon watched Su Yuan. She was happy with the new attribute. If Su Yuan could attract more heroes from the wild, it would obviously benefit the territory. Su Yuan noticed Suwon staring at him. He didn't know what she was thinking. He flapped his wings and prepared to land. As he neared, he saw many residents staring up at him with glittering eyes. The residents had witnessed the battle. It was normal for them to feel sentimental. Citizens of my territory, today the God of Light has shown what he wants, said Suwon. He wants to destroy everything we have. However, this territory isn't helpless. I and Su Yuan will do everything in our power to keep you safe. It's not up to the God of Light to decide what happens to this territory. Today's victory belongs to us, to each one of you. No one can harm our territory. Su Yuan had to admit that Suwon had grown a lot since he had first met her. Hooray, cried Su Yuan. His voice encouraged others to cheer. Everyone forgot the fear they had felt and rejoiced at the moment. The deafening cheer swept across the territory and uplifted them. Everyone looked at each other with pride and loyalty in their hearts. They were united and safe because their hero, the Dark Demon Dragon, had defeated a god today. Su Yuan and Suwon stood on the city walls. We are proud of you. Thank you for your service. Their gratitude was directed toward the red-eyed black dragon, the white dragon saint, Eliza, Farla, and the Hydra. They had fought with all their might. Eliza looked up at the Dark Demon Dragon with devotion in her heart and tears in her eyes. She could not bear to look away. Suwon moved to block her line of sight. The succubus eyes looked too hungry. Any casualties? Asked Suwon. The losses weren't great. We had the geographical advantage and the enemy didn't have any heavy siege weapons, said Eliza. Siege weapons usually caused heavy damage. Thankfully, the lords hadn't used them at all in today's battle. Yuan was in a good mood. Have you identified the lords involved? Asked Yuan. Eliza shook her head. The battle had been too chaotic. All right. Please take care of the escaping light types, said Yuan. She didn't dwell too much on it. 324 The Curious Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce. Yuan heaved a sigh of relief. The light types were still trying to attack the territory, so they ignored the fields. However, she was still worried. What if enemies targeted the fields in the future? Yuan thought of a way to protect the fields. It was one of the most important areas in her territory. Su Yuan didn't care about the fields, but Yuan couldn't ignore the matter. The fields had taken too much effort and energy to create and maintain. She couldn't let it go to waste. A buzz interrupted her thoughts. The night devil bees were back after slaughtering the enemy troops. Yuan felt sorry for them. The night devil bees had worked so hard and defeated the light types. However, the god of light had taken advantage of their effort and devoured those corpses. Yuan felt a little sad that no matter how hard she tried, her territory wouldn't be left in peace. The god of light would definitely retaliate more aggressively. The future was uncertain. However, Yuan felt that Su Yuan and she could defeat the god of light if they worked together. Kanglin City, Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce. As soon as he approached the door, he could not help but shout excitedly as he walked in. President, I came back with the 100 night flower honey and a special treasure that can automatically adjust the temperature. He suddenly stopped. There was a long table in the center of the wide hall, and two beautiful women sat opposite each other. On the left was a woman in her late 20s. She had a beautiful and solemn face. She wore a purple evening gown embroidered with blooming roses. On the right sat a young girl in her early 20s. She was filled with life and bright energy. Her eyes twinkled like stars. She wore a silver crown on her head. The maids were just serving tea to the ladies when Zoro excitedly entered through the door. President Nami, Zoro bowed respectfully. Your Highness Balin, I greet you most humbly. Nov, L, B /JNN. The woman in the purple evening gown smiled at Zoro. Zoro, how much 100 night flower honey did you say you brought with you? 200 cans. Zoro smiled brightly. The woman with the crown on her head perked up at the news. Sister Nami, is that the same honey we tasted last time? President Nami nodded. Yes. She turned to Zoro. Was there a problem with the territory? Usually, she wouldn't care for the territory of the lords, but she adored the honey this particular territory provided. Sister Nami, is it a dark territory? Asked Balin. Yeah, Nami was lost in thought. But they are still very weak. The 100 night flower honey was valuable, and that particular territory was not strong enough to protect such a treasure. President Nami could fund the Lord to move to Kanglin City if needed. The Lord would be safe and could guarantee a steady supply of honey as well. Maybe I should offer the Lord some help. I'm sure she won't refuse an invitation from the Qingyu Chamber of Commerce. Nami sounded confident. President Nami, I don't think we can help them move so easily, said Zoro cautiously. Are you serious? Nami narrowed her eyes. Balin also looked at Zoro in surprise. As the largest chamber of commerce in Kanglin City, the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce had more power than most countries. We can't even help them move to a desert, asked Balin curiously. No, Zoro shook his head. We lost 30 giant lizards, 25 battle axe warriors, 35 night elf archers, 45 rotten cavalry. The casualties of this battle had reached up to 200 soldiers. Some soldiers had been contaminated by the light types and couldn't be resurrected by Su Yuan's power. The same was true for the light types. Those soldiers tainted by darkness couldn't be resurrected as well. Yuan stared at the bright moon that hung outside as a soldier read the casualty report. Her face was solemn. Many troops had died. It was such a waste of life. However, when compared with the enemy's losses, the ratio was almost 100:1. Their victory had been glorious. The biggest contributor was Su Yuan and his demonic dragon's blessing, which had made the troops very powerful. There was no doubt about Su Yuan's strength. The demonic dragon's blessing was an invincible ability that the enemy didn't have. It proved to be very useful. Even if the troops were injured in the battle, the demonic dragon's blessing helped them heal very fast. Yuan sighed in relief. It was a great thing to have an ability like this. The reason why her territory developed so fast was partly because of this ability and the way it had helped when fighting enemies. Although there weren't many casualties, this battle has shown us many loopholes in our own territory, said Su Yuan. The shooting range of the night archers was not very high. The front and the back of their military formation were not efficiently connected to each other. The coordination of the troops in battle still had some room for improvement. Su Yuan rarely talked seriously about these matters. The fact that he was paying attention to it now meant that the battle hadn't gone as smoothly as he expected. Although the alchemical cannons and hurricane arrow tower were not used this time, the territory had much to do to improve when it came to combat. The defense and deployment of the troops needed to be optimized. This battle had shown them many shortcomings. I'll make some arrangements and improvisations, said Yuan. She understood that it wasn't time for them to gloat, even if they had won the war. If Su Yuan hadn't intervened, the territory would have been destroyed completely. She looked up at the bright moon in the sky. Her territory faced many challenges. The hostility and the possibility of damage by the god of light when he couldn't even descend to the overlord plane left them all reeling. 325 Farilla fainted. Aside from that, they still had the Divine Kingdom to explore. The divine body of a god was hidden there. If they succeeded in conquering that place, they could retrieve the god's body. The dwarves in the underground world were busy planning ways to take down Su Yuan. The remaining bronze doors in the mythical ruins had yet to be explored. Previously, Yuan had planned a trip to Kanglan City, where the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce was located, but she didn't have enough time for that. She needed to find a way to protect the fields from future battles. Yuan felt a headache coming. She wished she could exchange her responsibilities with Su Yuan so that she could sleep and level up all day while he worked to better the territory. Yuan took a few deep breaths to calm herself. Right now, the biggest threat was the God of Light. The God of Light was defeated this time. However, he would gather a more powerful army to attack them again. Yuan needed to strengthen her troops and summon more powerful troops that could even resist the gods. Yuan had an idea. Points could be exchanged for rare equipment. If she could obtain powerful weapons, maybe that would help in fighting the God of Light. My lord, Miss Farilla has fainted. A maid ran to her. What happened? Asked Su Yuan. Miss Farilla said she felt very frail when the God of Light appeared in the sky and she collapsed. Looking at the flustered maid, Su Yuan and Yuan rushed to find Farilla. They really liked Farilla and cared for her like she was their daughter. They were especially worried about her mental state. Yuan planned to let her be for a while till she could feel stable enough to level up. Farilla had a bright future ahead of her. In the room, Farilla lay on the blankets. Su Yuan sensed that her aura was stable. He heaved a sigh of relief. He opened her attribute panel. Some special power had stimulated her too much, which caused her to fall into a coma. Did the God of Light cause this? Thought Yuan. Was the oppressive force too much for her to bear? Yuan crouched down to check on the centaur. She felt angry when she looked at Farilla's unconscious face. That D***Ned God of Light harmed my daughter. Farilla's soul had been injured twice. First, by the Divine Kingdom, and then by the collapse of the lake in the sky. Judging from her attributes, she should be okay. However, Yuan wondered if this would affect her in other ways. Soon, the Dark Enchanter rushed into the room. When she saw that Farilla was okay, she sighed in relief. Eve, could you look after her for a while? I'm worried that something might happen to her, said Yuan to the Dark Enchanter. Ever since Farilla had recovered her horrible memories of her childhood, Yuan's heart ached for the young centaur. The Dark Enchanter, Eve, felt the same. Are you and His Majesty going somewhere? Our enemies are dangerous. Our territory needs a stronger army. We can't rely on Su Yuan all the time. Yuan looked out the window with a solemn face. Under the moonlight, the towering Hurricane Arrow Tower was illuminated. N/O/vel/B/jn.C//OM. We'll go to the underground world again, said Yuan. The Dark Enchanter had gathered the dark types, but when they had reached the territory, it had been too late. The Dark Enchanter nodded. I'll keep you updated about the dark types, and I'll take good care of the territory. Yuan didn't say anything further. She had never entrusted her territory to another person before this. However, she felt that Eve was more than capable. Besides, she needed to do this. Whether the dark types arrived to defend the territory or not was of no consequence. Footsteps at the door interrupted Yuan's thoughts. Have the residents calmed down? Asked Yuan. They don't seem to require much support, said the flower fairy. She looked at Farilla in concern. The victory had made the residents excited. The hero you assigned for internal affairs from among the refugees, said the flower fairy. She is very adept at her job. She found an internal prison. We can't let her handle the confidential matters for the time being, said Yuan. Suddenly, a stream of light floated up from the magic crystal ball. When the white light dissipated, a hollow crystal ball with a mysterious pattern appeared in front of her. The surrounding space rippled like water. Yuan couldn't understand how the hollow core had appeared suddenly. It was absorbed within the crystal ball? Yuan sensed that the crystal ball was empty. It was no longer as hot as the sun. Moreover, there were tiny cracks on the outside. She opened the attribute panel. Space crystal. Level, special. Status, heavily damaged, will shatter in 3 hours. Remark, can strengthen and upgrade spatial treasures below S-class. The crystal ball contained a huge amount of energy in the beginning, but more than half the energy was gone. Yuan was surprised. The object in her hands wasn't as simple as she had thought. It could only be used on spatial-type treasures and would shatter in 3 hours. She only had one spatial treasure at the moment. That was the two-way portal she had obtained last time. Yuan took out the treasure. Two-way teleportation gate. Level, S. Special characteristics, a pair of two-way portals can be placed within 50 kilometers. Note, extremely rare treasure. She had planned to use this treasure to make an entrance from her territory to the underground world so that the two would be connected. However, the distance between her territory and the underground world was almost 80 kilometers. 326 upgrading the two-way teleportation gate. She put the thought aside for the moment. Right now, she only had one spatial treasure. If the magic could strengthen it so that it could cover longer distances, it wouldn't entirely be a waste. The underground world was a land of treasures. The resources she had obtained recently from there had allowed her to develop her territory to the extreme. She now had more understanding of the type of resources found in the underground world and how to get them. Yuan and Su Yuan discussed for a while and chose to strengthen the two-way portal. The hollow crystal ball shattered and fused into the two mini arch doors in Yuan's hands. Many inscriptions appeared on the mini arch doors. Nov. L. B //JNN. As the light dissipated, a system notification appeared. Two-way teleportation gate has been strengthened. Yuan opened the attribute panel to check again. She smiled. Two-way teleportation gate. Level, SS. Special characteristics, a pair of two-way portals can be placed within 100 kilometers. Note, extremely rare treasure. Yuan was delighted. She let the mini door fall from her hands. A huge door materialized in front of her. The opening had something like a water curtain that glowed with fluorescent light. Yuan reached out to touch it and could feel some resistance. She needed to place another door to be able to pass through. Yuan went with Yuan to place the other mini door in the underground area. They flew to the underground world and placed the mini door in a tunnel. After the portal was placed, Yuan and Yuan stepped through the portal in the tunnel and appeared in the territory. They appeared in the area where the dark withered giants stood tall. Yuan placed protective barriers around the area. They didn't need to worry too much. If any enemy tried to enter the territory, they would have to pass through the dark swamp first. Kanglan City, Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce, Main Hall. Nami sat at the head of a long wooden table in her luxurious evening gown. She looked elegant and graceful. Her gaze and her demeanor had a certain authority that nobody dared to provoke. President Nami, many Oracle Lords have mysteriously disappeared. Their territories are shielded by a terrifying power. It's impossible to enter. The middle-aged man sitting at the end of the long table stood up to report his findings. Some Oracle Lords had reappeared. When the man had asked them about those who hadn't returned yet, he got a strange answer. The sudden disappearance of the Lords had a huge impact on the world. Although most of them were not as strong and influential, such phenomena attracted significant attention, and with good reason. Something was wrong and they all felt threatened. As the president of the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce in Kanglan City, Nami was no exception. Find out more about it, she said. Report back to me if you find anything new. Although the Lords were often unpredictable, they had extraordinary potential. The Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce often recruited them. Nami thought about Lord Yuan, who traded honey with the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce. The 100-night flower honey was coveted by many. This was the first time President Nami had tasted something so delicious. It was nothing like she had ever seen before. The trade with Yuan was what had convinced Nami of the potential of the Lords, and she decided to recruit them to work for her. She recalled Zoro telling her that the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce did not have the right to recruit Yuan and invite her to Kanglan City. Was Zoro exaggerating, or did the Lord really have the strength to resist them, thought Nami with a smile on her lips. President Nami, Her Highness, Balin, requests an audience. The room fell silent as everyone stared at her. This meeting is adjourned, said Nami as she dismissed everyone. The officials didn't waste any time. They got up, bowed to her, and left. Soon, a woman with a silver crown on her head appeared in the hall. Her radiance seemed to brighten up the whole room. Sister Nami, the woman stepped forward and greeted President Nami. She gestured to another woman beside her. This is Tristana, the eldest daughter of the Frost Wolf, Grand Duke of the Ice Empire. It's an honor to meet you, President Nami, said the woman in a blue dress. Nami nodded to her in acknowledgement. Welcome, Miss Tristana. I hope you will have a pleasant stay in Kanglan City. Sister Nami, Tristana is not an outsider. She is a friend of the Imperial Royal Academy. Balin laughed. Nami's smile widened in familiarity. President Nami, you're my inspiration, said Tristana. You became the president of Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce at the age of 17. You only took a year to set your footing until everyone recognized your authority. That's amazing. Miss Tristana, it's very kind of you to say so. Balin will show you around Kanglan City, I hope. Tristana isn't here for a vacation. Balin smiled sweetly. She turned to Tristana. It's okay. You can tell Sister Nami about what you said before. 327 Tristana wants to cooperate. President Nami, Balin gave me a special robe some time ago, said Tristana as she took out a robe woven from spider silk and held it in front of her. The robe was made from the silk of the Scarlet Flame Demon Spider. It was an exclusive product of the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce. I heard that the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce has a long-term trade relationship with the Lord who supplies spider silk from the Overlord Plane, said Tristana. That raised Nami's curiosity. It reminded her of Lord Yuan again. Zoro had said that the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce had no right to recruit that particular lord. She wanted to see if the lord was as strong as Zoro implied. That's correct, said Nami. We have established a long-term trade relationship with the lord who supplies us with the spider silk. Why would that be of your concern, Lady Tristana, n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. Tristana's eyes lit up. As you already know, the weather in the Ice Empire is extremely cold and brutal. It snows for 8 months and almost makes the condition unbearable for the people living there. This robe that Balin gifted me works wonders in keeping me warm. Somehow, the cold doesn't penetrate through it. This kind of clothing would do wonders for the people of the Ice Empire. Unfortunately, there are no Scarlet Flame Demon Spiders in the Ice Empire. They are found in deserts where the temperature is very high. President Nami, this desert crown robe is extremely precious to us. I came here to ask if you can supply robes like these to us. Tristana's gaze was probing for an answer she most needed to hear. Even if you can supply us with Scarlet Flame Demon Spider silk, we would be willing to buy it at a price that you set. Tristana was well aware that the spider silk that could resist the cold could be used to do more than create ordinary robes for the people. It would have high strategic value for the military. If they could obtain enough materials, this could be an opportunity for her family to rise to power. In a country of ice and snow, if she could raise an army that could resist the cold, her family would have an advantage. Even as the eldest daughter of the Frost Wolf family and the next in line for inheritance, the elders of the family didn't favor her. If she wanted to inherit the title of the Grand Duke, she needed to make a contribution that the others couldn't ignore. She had been waiting for an opportunity like this for a long time. Tristana being able to inherit the title and having control and power over the family had been her mother's last wish. She would definitely fulfill it. You want to have control of the Frost Wolf family. Nami saw Tristana's resolve, and her heart softened. Yes, I promised my mother. Tristana hadn't expected Nami to be so direct. She responded in all honesty. Nami fell silent. The Qingyu Chamber of Commerce can give up the partnership with the Lord who supplies us with spider silk and offer it to you, but what do you plan to give to us in exchange? Tristana was pleasantly surprised. She hadn't expected Nami to agree so easily. We found a blue steel mine in the land of eternal frost last year. I can offer you 50% of the shares. Blue steel mine. Nami was surprised. Yes. Your boldness has me convinced that you would be the right candidate to take over the Frost Wolf family, said Nami as she looked at Tristana more carefully. Nami summoned Zoro into the office. Good day, President Nami, he said in greeting when he arrived. Your Highness Balin, I greet you most humbly. Honorable lady, I welcome you to Kanglin City. No need to be so formal, Zoro, said Nami. Lady Tristana is the eldest daughter of the Frost Wolf family. She's here for the Desert Crown robe. Zoro looked at Tristana in surprise. How many Scarlet Flame Demon spiders are there in the territory? Can they steadily supply spider silk for a long time to come? Asked Balin. There were dozens of them, said Zoro. I didn't think it would be quite enough to supply spider silk, but Lord Yuan did say that she could provide it for a long time to come. I asked her if she had found a way to breed more spiders. Lord Yuan didn't deny it. Lord Yuan. She is the owner of the territory that supplies us with spider silk. Tristana was excited. It was a publicly acknowledged fact that Scarlet Flame Demon spiders could not be bred. It wasn't like the Ice Empire hadn't tried it before. However, no matter what they did, the spiders ended up dying in the cold. When she heard that the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce could provide a long-term supply of robes made from the Scarlet Flame demonic spider silk, her first reaction was disbelief. Her trip to Kanglin City hadn't been a waste, after all. Is that true? Tristana asked. Well, Lord Yuan didn't admit to something like that, but she didn't deny it either. I don't know for sure, but you can always visit her in her territory to ask for more details, said Zoro. The president didn't seem to mind. Lord Yuan. I knew when I came here that this trip would be fruitful. I would even cross the desert of death if needed. Mr. Zoro, can I ask what Lord Yuan lacks the most? Is there anything she needs right now? I want to visit her and discuss the matter with her, said Tristana. Lord Yuan lacks resources. Presumably, there is a big gap between what she has and what she needs to better her territory, said Zoro. Tristana was surprised. The Ice Empire had no lack of resources, so it wouldn't be a problem to provide those. She felt that that was nothing compared to the Scarlet Flame Demon spiders. 328 on the road. What kind of territory is it? Asked Tristana. To her, a territory that could raise and breed Scarlet Flame Demon spiders was an extraordinary territory. However, when she heard that such a territory lacked resources, she was stunned. It is a magical territory, said Zoro excitedly. I can't find a better word to describe it. The first time I went there, there were only a few dozen troops and about 200 residents. The territory was a little barren. However, this time, Lord Yuan erected city walls, and the population of the territory is more than 2,000. She has also designated an area for agriculture. Zoro eagerly told her about the territory. Everyone seemed happy. The territory is full of life. His Majesty, Yuan, can do things that even gods can't. There is a giant treant living there. It might be stronger than a dragon, too. Zoro thought that Lord Yuan had so much potential. He believed that her name would be known throughout the world one day. Nami, Balin, and Tristana exchanged surprised glances. Was the territory really that extraordinary? When they appeared in the dark swamp through the two-way portal gate, the dark withered treant was slaughtering the void creatures. The void sandworm was also involved. The void sandworm and the dark withered treant's teamwork was impeccable. These two top-notch combat powers could make any lord wish for a similar troop type. Even the native creatures trembled in fear. Every time Yuan saw her troops in their most efficient state, she felt proud and grateful to have them. She opened the treant's attribute panel. The treant was at 90% progress. Its evolution was a success. Yuan couldn't wait for it to evolve completely. She wondered how strong it would become after its complete transformation. Yuan returned to the dark castle. She was speechless when she saw that Yuan was still sleeping. Yuan had an ideal life. He leveled up by sleeping all day, and he didn't even need to care about the matters of the territory. Yuan sighed in defeat. She checked on the resources that the dwarves had brought to the territory. The total amount of resources in her territory exceeded 1,500 tons. She was one step away from being able to upgrade her territory. She upgraded the Rotten Cavalry and Night Devil Bees to S-Class. This required 50 tons of resources each. Yuan looked at the powerful troops before her and felt a sense of pride. They were practically invincible. Their combat power was not inferior to the 9-headed Hydra. Yuan recruited some more troops to her side. After everything was done, she still had 1,400 tons of resources left. She was not in a hurry to upgrade the other troops, so she let them be. She wanted to observe the other troops a while longer, so she could choose which one she wanted to upgrade for maximum benefit. Yuan asked the dwarves to set up the alchemy cannons at different points in the territory. She and Yuan had obtained so many resources from their visit to the underground world that the territory didn't lack anything now. Besides, the dwarves had created so many alchemy bombs that they would be enough for a large-scale battle if things reached that state. n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. Yuan felt a little regretful that she hadn't found any powerful weapons and equipment when she visited the abandoned furnace city. Most of the mithril ores had been used to repair the heavy blade warriors. After confirming that she was done with the day's work, Yuan prepared to head to Kanglan City. She had put it off for quite a while now. However, before Yuan could leave, she saw a group approach her territory. The leader of this group was the eldest daughter of Frost Wolf, Grand Duke of the Ice Empire. "How far is it?" asked Tristana. She rode a camel and stared at the distance with a tied face. The swamps had been especially difficult to travel through. "It'll take half a day to reach," said an old, white-haired man. "Yes, we're finally here." For Libe, this warm weather made the journey feel like a summer vacation. Although the journey through the swamps had been difficult, she still enjoyed traveling in warm weather. She was well prepared. There had been many wild beasts, bandits, and strange creatures they encountered on their journey. Tristana didn't know how the territory could survive in a place like this. From the distance, they saw the huge territory. Tristana was glad this journey wasn't a waste of time. "Uncle Claude, do you think that territory is really as extraordinary as Zoro made it out to be?" Although Tristana didn't think that the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce was lying, it was still too unbelievable to believe everything they had said. "We'll know when we get there," said Claude. Tristana frowned in dissatisfaction. Claude smiled. He had seen her grow up into the formidable woman she had become. He had cared for her like his own daughter. "The Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce is not as simple as we think," he said. "Especially President Nami." Nami took over the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce as a minor. She had worked hard and expanded its influence as far as the Ice Empire. She was certainly a force to be reckoned with. 329 terrifying swamp devourer. The information they had received from the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce was too exaggerated. Claude frowned. According to them, Lord Yuan supplied them with so many things and her territory was bountiful. However, Lord Yuan had only appeared in the Overlord Plain a few months ago. No matter how fast she might have developed her territory, the gain was simply too unrealistic in such a short time. There were other lords near the Frost Wolf family estate, and they were considered pretty powerful. Yet, they couldn't even compare to Lord Yuan. Moreover, Yuan's territory was beyond the Dark Swamp. This confused Tristana. In such a location, it would pose a lot of difficulties for a territory to develop properly. Although the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce had told her of the territory, she didn't believe it entirely. As they got close to the territory, a scout rushed toward them on a horse. Tristana noticed that the soldier was terrified. "Nov. L. B //JNN. There's a swamp devourer ahead." Tristana looked into the distance. She could only see dark clouds. It was difficult to see if any creatures in the swamp ahead would pose a threat. Although there was still some distance between them and the territory, they could already feel the ferocious aura. The swamp devourer was the worst thing to run into. "How far is it from us?" "Not very far. Build a protective wall." "We can't run away after coming all this way," said Claude. The soldiers worked meticulously, trying to create a protective barrier. Sand and dust flew into the air. Fortunately, the swamp devourer wasn't very fast. When they were done creating a protective barrier, they hid inside and waited for the swamp devourer to arrive. A few hours later, Tristana glanced into the distance again. Why is it still not here? Seeing that there was no movement anywhere, she came out of hiding. "Are you sure it was a swamp devourer? Maybe you saw something else." "It was a swamp devourer? It was as clear as day. Maybe it stopped on the way." Tristana heaved a sigh of relief. Either way, they were safe for now. "Send some scouts to investigate," said Tristana. Some scouts went ahead to check for the swamp devourer, while the rest waited anxiously. They did not dare to leave the protective barrier. The scout returned half an hour later. They looked confused. "What is it? What did you find?" asked Tristana. "The swamp devourer isn't moving." "It isn't moving." Tristana was confused. "Take me there," said Claude. "Uncle Claude, don't worry. I'll be safe." Claude went with the scouts. "This is extraordinary," said Claude as he returned from his search. "I've seen nothing like this before. This territory indeed is magical. The swamp devourer isn't moving to attack anyone." Tristana was intrigued. "Zoro didn't mention that there was a place like this near the territory." "Are you thinking what I'm thinking?" said Claude. "Maybe this place belongs to the territory and Lord Yuan." "Impossible," thought Tristana. Even legendary lords couldn't own and control something like a swamp devourer. Lord Yuan had appeared a few months ago in the Overlord Plain. She couldn't really have surpassed the legendary level in such a short time. Tristana was in disbelief. The whole swamp area was dangerous. How could it be created and controlled by a single lord? It all seemed impossible. She had met other lords before. Even if they were considered strong, they weren't powerful enough to manage something like this. Even if Yuan was strong, she couldn't possibly control the whole swamp. Tristana was stunned. If Lord Yuan had such power and strength, why would she choose to live here of all places? Since the swamp devourer wasn't moving, they set off toward the direction of the territory. It was better for them to arrive as soon as possible. They avoided the swamp devourer and made a beeline toward the territory. Even then, they could sense the terrifying danger of the whole swamp. Tristana was frightened and impressed. If a lord could create a swamp around the territory, then that would make the territory invincible to some extent. Finally, they arrived at the territory. Tristana smiled in relief. If she could convince the lord to trade Scarlet Flame Demon Spider Silk with her, there would be nothing standing in her way. I'll definitely fulfill your wish, mother. Tristana vowed. I'll have full control over the Frost Wolf family like you wanted. She would make her mother's wish come true, no matter the cost. The group stopped a few paces away from the territory and didn't try to barge in. Tristana sent a soldier to report on their arrival and to request an audience with Lord Yuan. Meanwhile, Tristana looked upon the territory with some interest. The territory was not very big. In fact, it would be considered tiny when compared to the Frost Wolf estates. However, she was surprised to see numerous alchemy cannons placed on the city walls. It sent a chill down her spine. Judging from the aura, the weapons were all above A class. They could even be of S class. This territory is developing alchemy technology. 330 The shocked Tristana. The soldiers on guard at the city walls looked at the group warily. They all wore black armor, which went well with the dark swamp aesthetic. What surprised Tristana was the aura these soldiers radiated. They all seemed to be at a high level. Even the strengthened troops of the Frost Wolf territory might not be as strong as these sentries. Suddenly, a dark demon dragon encased in black flames flew up in the sky. Tristana was shocked. Such a small territory has a dark demon dragon. Her shocking discoveries knew no end. She watched as the dark demon dragon flew to the soldiers, who looked ferocious. They had battle axes in their hands, which glowed with red patterns all over. Long chains were wrapped around the hands of these soldiers, which then connected with the massive battle axes. Cold blue soul flames glowed in their hollow eyes. The troops were terrifying. Tristana was stunned. How could the troops be so strong? She had thought this was the end to all surprises. However, she saw movements within the three tall towers. Several crossbows were slowly aimed at them. From the magical energy that surges from these massive crossbows, Tristana was sure they were SS class. She realized that these crossbows were usually used to hunt dragons. She broke into a cold sweat. If the trigger was pulled, it would be enough to tear them apart. Tristana's hands instinctively reached for her sword. She finally understood what Zoro had meant. He hadn't exaggerated the details. Tristana took a few deep breaths to calm herself. The fear in her heart wouldn't go away. It was as though she was facing a grim reaper who was here for her soul. Claude looked solemn. His aura surged. He was ready to attack or defend at a moment's notice. Tristana gasped for breath and looked up at the sky. A dark figure descended. The Lord rode on the dark demon dragon's back. This dark demon dragon was different from the ones she had seen before. He had golden eyes like an eagle. His aura was oppressive. It felt as though a massive mountain pressed down on their hearts, making it difficult for them to breathe. Tristana turned around to say something to Claude. She noticed that he had gone pale in fright. The mysterious dark demon dragon hadn't even made a move, and they were all on the verge of collapse. Tristana was in disbelief. The power of the Lord and the dark demon dragon made her feel helpless. She couldn't believe that this was a mere lord in the overlord plane. If they could get out alive from this situation, it would be a blessing. The guards at the back moved forward and surrounded Tristana to protect her. These guards were handpicked for their power and strength. Yet they looked so tiny in front of this massive force. They dared not act rashly. Claude stared at the dark demon dragon. His heart pounded in his chest. Although the dragon made no move, his aura was so oppressive that it felt like they were suffocating. If they tried anything stupid, the dragon would definitely launch a fatal attack. The air was tightly strung. Just then, something flitted past and a night elf appeared at the dragon's side. Claude's face darkened. He could sense that the night elf was also mighty. What kind of freaks are these? Crisp footsteps followed, and a centaur appeared with a great sword in her hands. Claude was stunned. Did all these troops belong to the Lord? Previously, he was intrigued and curious about the territory. Now, he felt that no ordinary lord could have accumulated troops like these. Tristana felt the tension in the air. She looked at the woman who had gotten off the dragon. She must be the lord that Zoro practically worshipped. Respected lord, I am the eldest daughter of the Frost Wolf, Grand Duke of the Ice Empire, said Tristana in greeting. Mr. Zoro and President Nami of the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce suggested that I should meet you personally to talk about a trade exchange that I want to offer. Tristana rummaged in her bag and took out the letter from the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce as proof. N/O/vel/b/in.c//om. Yuan accepted the letter and read it. She glanced at Tristana. Lady Tristana, welcome, said Yuan. For safety, might I suggest that your army wait outside the city? I'll provide them with food and water, of course. You can enter my territory with your guardian. Although the letter proved that Lady Tristana meant no harm, it was reckless to allow soldiers to enter the territory. It was always best to be cautious. Tristana had no objections. It was not like she had a choice. Leaving the army outside, Tristana and Claude passed through the city gate and entered the territory. Tristana looked around in curiosity. 331 shockingly efficient territory. Although Zoro had told them about the wonders of this territory, they were not prepared for what was in front of them. The streets were clean and tidy. The residents looked happy. Everyone smiled and greeted them as they passed with Lord Yuan. It was a tranquil place. They thought of the Frost Wolf territory. Although it was rich and could be considered powerful in the Ice Empire, the environment wasn't as peaceful as this territory. The difference was too great. Tristana followed Lord Yuan to the Dark Castle while listening to the conversation of the residents they passed by. Nobody looked dissatisfied or unhappy. The residents always talked and laughed as they walked. Whenever the residents mentioned their lord, they did with respect. They looked at the Dark Demon Dragon with reverence and loyalty in their eyes. It was completely different from the way residents treated the Grand Duke in the Frost Wolf territory. The people here seemed to love their lord from the bottom of their hearts. Tristana followed Claude to the Dark Castle. She was conflicted. She had met so many beautiful and powerful lords in the Ice Empire. However, compared to Yuan, they felt unsightly to her. Lord Yuan's temperament toward her residents made her worthy of their loyalty. Tristana could see the way she smiled and greeted them. She treated them like her family. Tristana looked behind to see two dragon eyes staring at her indifferently. She took a deep breath to steady herself. Lord Yuan, she said, you have a wonderful territory. I greet you most humbly on behalf of the Frost Wolf family. The territory, its lord, and its troops were enough to humble her. She held no pride or arrogance at this point. Lady Tristana, there is no need to be so formal, said Yuan. Since Zoro and President Nami sent you here, that makes us friends. Tristana smiled. She was led to the hall of the Dark Castle. She sat down at the table with Claude. You came from the east, so you didn't pass by the swamp devourer, right? Asked Yuan. These words shocked both Tristana and Claude. We avoided that and took the long way, said Tristana. That's good. I set it up so that it attacks enemies. We don't want to be ambushed here, after all. Tristana was stunned. So, you created the swamp devourer. That's right. It was originally meant to clear out monsters in the wild. Tristana's heart thumped. She turned to look at Claude and saw the same horror reflected in his eyes. The swamp devourer was an extraordinary force. It was close to impossible for a lord to control it. Yuan watched Yuan from a few paces away. God, Yuan indeed knows how to be pretentious. Yuan didn't expect the swamp devourer to cause such an impact on Tristana and Claude. It wasn't like it was something rare. Why were they so shocked? Yuan was reading the letter that Tristana had handed to her before. There was nothing new. The letter told her that Tristana and Claude were friends with the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce and reinstated their titles at the end. It also told her of Tristana's offer for a trade relationship in exchange for Scarlet Flame Demon Spider Silk. She was very satisfied with the information. She could use this to her advantage since the Frost Wolf family needed the Spider Flame Demon Spider Silk. Zoro had given her an opportunity. Lady Tristana, Zoro has stated your purpose in this letter, said Yuan with a smile. She was always glad to do business with friends. Tristana took a deep breath. Yes. You might already know about the condition of the Ice Empire. The Frost Wolf family and the residents of the Ice Empire would greatly benefit from the Scarlet Flame Demon Silk. Tristana looked at Yuan. So, I want to buy spider silk from you. I'm willing to buy it at any price that you set. Yuan nodded. I don't mind selling the spider silk to you, but we need to discuss the details of the transaction. Now that Yuan had the upper hand, she wanted to squeeze as many benefits from this deal as possible. Of course, said Tristana. How much spider silk can your territory supply each month? That was the most important part of the deal. Yuan turned to a guard by the door. Go to the spider breeding area and call the supervisor here. Yes, my lord. Yuan had assigned people to take care of different areas of her territory since she couldn't be everywhere at all times. Nov. L. B /JNN. A stout woman entered the hall and knelt in front of Yuan. Rise, said Yuan. Auntie, how many Scarlet Flame Demon Spiders are there in total? Currently, there are 800, my lord, said the supervisor. The young ones are expected to reach adulthood in the next month. Yuan acknowledged her with a nod. The reproduction rate of the spiders was unprecedented, but it seemed the young spiders were decreasing in numbers this time. Why are the young spiders fewer in numbers this time? 332 bargaining chip. The supervisor quickly said, the Scarlet Flame Demon Spiders can reproduce at a rapid rate, but they slow down once they reach their peak. The slow reproduction rate indicated that the Scarlet Flame Demonic Spider King was about to be born. This was a good thing. If no Spider King was born, the Scarlet Flame Demon Spiders would reproduce in a frenzy until they reached a state of self-destruction. Tristana wasn't too happy to hear that. She was a bit disappointed. The number of spiders wasn't enough to provide the amount of silk she wanted. Yuan waved her hand and dismissed the supervisor. Lady Tristana, my territory can provide you with 1,000 Scarlet Flame Demon Spider Silks per month, said Yuan. 1,000? But you only have that many spiders. Can they really produce 1,000 Scarlet Flame Demon Spider Silks per month? We use extremely precious treasures and special methods to raise them. The scarlet flame demon spiders can produce that much for now. They will be reproducing anyway. Tristana's disappointment turned to joy. The territory wasn't set in a cold region. The spiders could indeed reproduce and multiply because of the warm weather. Lord Yuan, we are ready for the deal? No matter how much silk you can supply, we want it all. This was her first step in taking control of the Frost Wolf family. It was worth it no matter how high the price was. The spider silk of the scarlet flame demon spider was rare. Spider silk was mixed with other clothing for the rich in the Ice Empire. Of course, but first, we need to talk about the price. What do you offer in exchange? Asked Yuan. The scarlet flame demon spider was half the height of a human and weighed more than 100 pounds. The spider silk produced by an adult scarlet flame demon spider every month was about 10 caddies, which was 10 units. Nov. L. B /JNN. When the next batch of flaming demonic spiders matured, they would be able to produce tens and thousands of units every month. Including the consumption, the materials needed to make the robes were about 5 units. They could create 200 robes per month for sale. Each robe was a rare resource that could be sold for thousands of units of resources. So, the income of the territory from the silk and robes alone could reach 200,000 units per month. Yuan marveled at the unlimited business opportunities the silk contained. This thing was a gold mine. Tristana turned to look at Claude. Claude didn't say anything. Lord Yuan, I'm willing to offer you an ore vein in exchange. There are many veins in the eternal land of frost that have a massive output of frost ore. I can offer you 1 vein in exchange for 5 years' worth of silk production. Yuan was intrigued. She turned to a soldier by the door. Call Eliza. This was the first time she had heard about frost ore. Eliza hurried into the hall. Lord Yuan, greetings. Ever since Eliza had seen the magic crystal, she had buried herself in research to find out more. She researched magical weapons and tried forging them. Eliza practically lived in the blacksmith's shop. Tristana and Claude curiously looked at Eliza, who was covered in dust. Claude looked shocked. This woman was very powerful? Yuan told Eliza about the deal. Lady Tristana wants to offer a frost ore vein in exchange for 5 years' worth of flame magical spider silk. What do you think? Eliza's face lit up. Frost ore vein? Is it the same ore that is filled with ice magic? Asked Eliza. That's right. Tristana nodded confidently. Frost ore can be forged into weapons with ice magic. The attacks from such a weapon will freeze your enemies. Other than the Ice Empire, there is no other place where such an ore can be found, said Eliza. But the scarlet flame demon spider is equally precious to us. Unless it's a giant ice mine, the offer is not enough, said Yuan. It's indeed a very huge frost ore vein, said Tristana. Eliza glanced at Yuan as if to say that the deal was beneficial. Yuan ignored Eliza. Lady Tristana, your offer is sincere and quite beneficial, but I don't think it's enough when you compare it to what we are offering you. The Ice Empire was very far away from Yuan's territory. Moreover, the frost ore vein would be very difficult to reach. It was also not a necessity for now. The troops had their own weapons, and Yuan rarely needed to have them forged. Only races like elves, beastmen, and humans needed extra weapons. Barracks were used to help normal residents change their classes, but the development path of the territory was different. There was no need to turn normal residents into soldiers and hand them weapons. The weapons obtained from the underground world were all exchanged for resources. Lord Yuan, when you see the frost ores, you'll consider this deal, said Tristana. The frost ores weren't her bargaining chip in the beginning. However, after visiting this territory, she was forced to choose that because nothing else would be enough. The weapons and equipment forged using the frost ores had extraordinary attributes and great power. 333 Happy Cooperation N/O/vel/b/jn.c//om. The previous offer was not good enough. Tristana could see that the territory was not as simple as she had imagined. However, there was a new problem now. She was embarrassed that she hadn't brought any frost ore with her to show the Lord. Eliza was anxious. She would have agreed on the spot. Lord Yuan, what if I add this treasure as a bargaining chip, said Tristana as she placed a treasure on the table. Yuan looked at it. It was a statue of a girl carved from ice. It was almost transparent and exuded an icy aura. The statue was so vivid and lifelike that it seemed it would move at any minute. She reached out and picked up the treasure. Yuan could sense the magic contained within it. She opened the attribute panel to check. Ice elf statue. Able to freely adjust the territory's temperature. The maximum temperature cannot exceed 27 degrees Celsius, the minimum temperature cannot be lower than -20 degrees Celsius. Can be maintained all year round. Summon 100 snow spirits with it. Snow spirits possess normal intelligence. This can be used in battle to cause ice damage to the enemy. It can also create an ice sealing shield to protect the entire territory. Duration, 1 hour. Cooldown time, 24 hours. Able to inject mana into the statue to extend the duration of the shield. Note, summon the coldest ice to use. The abilities and benefits of the statue were very practical. In other territories, it might be of no use, but her territory was a dark territory. The dry and hot weather was simply unbearable some days. This treasure would be very useful in adjusting the temperature. Moreover, it could summon snow spirits. The most important benefit was the ice sealing shield. The shield made up for any weaknesses in the defense of her territory. Yuan was interested. This bargaining chip was far more desirable than the ore vein. For this treasure, I can grant you half a year's worth of silk. The other terms will be agreed upon only after I see the mine. Eliza beamed. She looked happier than anyone else present. Tristana smiled as well. Although the treasure was precious to her, having control of the Frost Wolf family was more important. Of course, Lord Yuan. This is a happy cooperation, at least on my part. May the Ice Goddess bless this agreement. Lady Tristana, how do we make sure that both sides will uphold the agreement for a long time to come? Tristana looked at Yuan. Have you heard about the ice contract? Yuan shook her head. The ice contract was the initiative of the Ice Goddess. Signing an ice contract means that the goddess herself would be the witness. Whoever violates the term will be punished by her. Many merchants come to the Ice Empire to buy ice contracts to have the goddess as a witness. Yuan nodded thoughtfully. She felt that the Ice Goddess was indeed very smart. She earned fame and money by selling the contract while expanding her influence. Tristana took out a translucent ice contract. Yuan opened the attribute panel and confirmed that the effect of such a contract was legitimate. She was relieved to know that Tristana was not lying. After writing down the terms, both people signed their names. The moment the contract was signed, there was a feeling of being watched. A holy aura radiated from it, making them sigh in awe. According to the contract, the spider silk produced by the territory for 5 years would be supplied to Tristana. Within half a year, at least 10,000 units of silk should be provided to Tristana. Yuan wasn't allowed to sell the silk to anyone else from the Ice Empire besides Tristana. As for Tristana, she had to offer the statue of the Ice Elf to Yuan and the Frost Ore Vein in the Eternal Land of Frost. Both sides agreed that if the territory did not accept the ore vein, only half a year's worth of silk would be offered to Tristana. The terms were simple and clear. There was no complicated nonsense. It was witnessed by a goddess, so both sides didn't dare violate the terms of the contract. After the transaction was complete, Yuan picked up the ice statue and examined it closely. This treasure was precious. Only after taking huge risks could one hope to obtain something like this. In the future, Yuan didn't have to worry about enemies sneaking in and attacking the territory. She could use this treasure to make up for the loopholes in her territory. After discussing business, Yuan took Tristana to the breeding grounds. Tristana was delighted to see the scarlet flame demon spiders scurrying around. There was hope for the future. Tristana saw 2 goblins carrying roots from a magical plant. The roots gave off a massive magical aura. Is this what is fed to the spiders? Tristana and Claude glanced at each other. The goblins hurriedly hid the roots behind them. Tristana and Claude felt a little disappointed, but they didn't show it. They understood. This was Yuan's asset, and it was only natural to hide the secrets of her territory. Claude was smart. He had memorized the shape of those roots. He wanted to send someone to look for the plants the moment he got back. Yuan told them about the spiders and the difficulties she faced while raising them. After they finished the tour, Yuan took them to the fields to show them the 100 night flower honey. She offered it to them. The flavor of the honey blew their minds. The sun soon disappeared from the horizon to be replaced by a full, bright moon. Yuan took her guests to have dinner. Lady Tristana, how do you grow crops in the Ice Empire if it's so cold? How do you prevent them from being destroyed by the weather and from wild beasts? Yuan asked them after they were offered warm tea after dinner. 334 Ice, snow, and blood. We mostly grow ice fruits. They are native to the land and can take root even in the cold, said Tristana. She was surprised at Yuan's question. She answered everything honestly. The Frost Wolf territory had dedicated a small area, especially for the plantation and rearing of the ice fruits. It fed millions of people in and around the area. Wild beasts couldn't enter the fields because the only opening was through the main entrance, which was always guarded. Yuan was a little disappointed. Her fields were open from all sides, so anyone could attack the fields once they got close to the territory. Yuan explained the problem she was facing in her territory. I have yet to find a way to protect the fields. The terrain is too difficult to manage. Forget the fields, it takes enormous effort to develop the territory in this terrain. Lord Yuan, I feel like you can develop your territory even more if you leave this terrain and choose somewhere else to settle, said Tristana. Yuan didn't know what to say. She didn't really like this area, but it was perfect for the dark demon dragon and other dark types. She couldn't just leave. Yuan had expected Tristana to give her some advice. She hadn't expected her to tell her to choose another place instead. Although having a dark territory had its disadvantages, it had its advantages too. If it wasn't for the dark types and Yuan, she wouldn't have gotten this strong. How do the human cities outside deal with similar problems? Asked Yuan. It's hard to say. The problems faced by different cities are different in nature, said Tristana. However, the people outside try to find a way to adapt to the problem and use it to their advantage instead of trying to solve it entirely. They also make more allies to make up for any drawbacks. Some sign contracts with other lords to use a portion of their land because it might be safer. The last sentence made Yuan think. She had gained a magic statue and an ore vein. Perhaps she could use that to solve her problems. Yuan was deep in thought. However, in the end, she couldn't come up with any good ideas. She wanted to discuss it with Yuan later. Yuan forced out a smile. She needed to get stronger. Yuan still had a long way to go to reach level 100. She wanted to explore the Divine Kingdom, but it would have to wait for now. Suwon had heard about blood coffins buried under the roots of the ancient god Sin tree. The blood coffin was supposedly in the vampire castle near the Ice Empire. Coincidentally, Suwon had found it, but the transcendent vampire duke was still asleep. Lady Tristana, I heard that there are many vampires in the Ice Empire. I wonder, have you heard about those evil things? Asked Suwon. Claude couldn't help but smile. The lord was surrounded by dark types, yet she called vampires evil. Vampires. Tristana didn't understand why Suwon suddenly wanted to know about them. That's right. There are traces of vampires near my friend's territory, so I want to find out more about them. Uncle Claude knows more about vampires than I do. He fought in the Blood War. A blood war? Asked Suwon. What is that? Can you tell me about it? Suwon wondered if there were hidden secrets or treasures that she could find where the war had taken place. Claude looked at Suwon. Many vampires lived in the Ice Empire in the past. They ruled over a huge chunk of land. They always collected a large amount of blood as taxes. Back then, the Ice Empire cooperated with the vampires because they were too strong to offend. The situation changed after a massive earthquake that caused the ancient ruins to merge with our mainland. That ruin is the eternal land of frost, especially known for its frost ores. The vampires wanted to occupy the territory that had these ore veins. A conflict broke out between them and the residents of the Ice Empire. The anger and resentment built up as the two sides couldn't come to an agreement. Eventually, a war broke out. The Ice Empire won the war in the end and gained control of the eternal land of frost. The vampires were all killed, even their demigod-level vampire prince. The vampire population dwindled and eventually, they disappeared. Their traces can be found in some remote places, but that's all. Nothing remains of their race. Suwon was deep in thought. Could the vampire duke have survived the war? Lady Tristana, to tell you the truth, my friend and I have captured a vampire that seems to be asleep. He is not weak, and I want to recruit him. Do you have any ideas on how to wake him? That was one advantage of having dark types as heroes. They could recruit anybody and everybody. They didn't have to be as cautious as the light types. If the light types recruited a dark creature, the morale of their troops might shake. The Ice Empire was neutral. They were at war with the vampires, but they were mostly peaceful people. Lord Suwon, could I ask about the strength of this vampire you found? Asked Claude. N/O/vel/b/jn.c//om. The vampire is asleep in a coffin. He is estimated to be no lower than level 50, said Suwon. 335 Mary of the Dark Knight. If Suwon could recruit the vampire duke, then Suwon's combat power would increase rapidly. Her territory will be more stable. Claude's heart skipped a beat. The vampire duke might really be a hero unit. He was envious. Had the lord recruited the other troops in this way too? If they could somehow recruit heroes, it might not be so difficult for Tristana to take over the Frost Wolf family. Tristana was thinking the same thing. The souls of vampires above level 50 have completely integrated into their bodies. This evil being will have terrifying power. It's extremely difficult to recruit or subdue them, said Tristana. Ordinary methods will now work. You will need the power of the gods. How do I obtain the power of the gods? Asked Suwon. From a soul contract with the Ice Goddess, said Tristana. With such a contract, you will be bestowed with enough power to subdue a vampire. Even someone at level 100 will be no match for you. Lady Tristana, do you know how I can initiate a soul contract? Does the Frost Wolf family know of a way? Asked Suwon. Lord Suwon, a soul contract is extremely powerful and exorbitantly expensive. The Frost Wolf clan has no such treasure, said Claude. I think nobody has something like that except the king. If you want a soul contract, you'd have to befriend the king. Suwon thanked him for the information. She could gather more information regarding this since she had a lead now. Even if she couldn't obtain a soul contract with the Ice Goddess, maybe she could obtain it from the Dark Goddess? She had Su Yuan with her, so she could work at it one at a time. Lord Suwon, was the vampire captured from the Ice Empire? Tristana asked curiously. Yes. I went to help a friend guard her territory and accidentally discovered the sleeping vampire, said Suwon. This must be fate. Since you're from the Ice Empire too, I wanted to ask you if there was a way n/o/vel/b/jn.c//om. Suwon wondered if Zhao Qingrong had managed to get more information regarding the vampire. If the beastman could break through the vampire castle, the four sisters could reap lots of benefits. Tristana turned to look at Suwon. She took out something from her bag and handed it to Suwon. It was a token with a giant wolf engraved on it. Lord Suwon, this is the Frost Wolf clan's keepsake. It can be given to your friend. You are so far away from your friend that it must be difficult to take care of her from here. If she ever is in need of help and runs to the Frost Wolf territory with this token, she'll be treated as a friend. Suwon smiled and thanked her. Although this token wouldn't be much help, it was equal to an S-class treasure for an ordinary lord. The token of the Frost Wolf territory was a special treasure that many coveted. Suwon was grateful anyway. Tristana was driven and ambitious, but she also knew how to treat people well. After talking for a while, Tristana and Suwon became good friends. Tristana liked Suwon. She was very diplomatic and polite in how she carried herself. A maid rushed to Suwon and reported that Elder Andy of the Hell Demon Wolf clan was seeking an audience. Suwon didn't hesitate. She told the maid to show him in. After the Hell Demon Wolf clan took over the winemaking workshop, the winemaking business finally flourished. They had reported that Mary of the Dark Knight, a special wine recipe, would be released in a few days. Andy, who looked like an old cat, stepped into the room. A young female demon wolf followed behind him with a tray covered by a black cloth. When they arrived at the long table, Andy bowed respectfully. "Good evening, distinguished guests." He turned and bowed to Tristana and Claude. Tristana and Claude stood up to return the greeting. Yuan ignored these courtesies and looked at the tray in curiosity. "Mary of the Dark Knight is done." "Yes, my lord." Andy lifted the black cloth to reveal a bottle filled with dark liquid. The liquid glittered like stars. "We've successfully brewed it. This is Mary of the Dark Knight." Yuan was delighted. It hadn't been easy. After so many trials and errors, it was finally done. It had taken almost half a year, and now, the territory had its own top-notch wine. "Pour it for all of us. Let our guests also have a taste of it. They've come here from very far away," said Yuan. "Also, bring a bucket for Su Yuan." Su Yuan was obsessed with wine. Yuan put an effort into brewing wine in the territory, mostly for his sake. Claude curiously looked at the wine. Tristana didn't care much for it. The Ice Empire was located so far away, and the weather there was cold and brutal all year around. Alcohol was coveted in every household. It helped people keep warm in the cold nights. Good wine was hard to come by in the Ice Empire. They highly depended on hard liquor. However, as someone of significant status in the Frost Wolf territory, Claude occasionally enjoyed good wine. With wine, it didn't really matter how sparkly it looked if it didn't taste good. The Frost Wolf territory also had a winemaking department that had produced wine for 100 years. However, the quality of wine had improved only in the past decade or so. Although this territory was extraordinary, it lacked resources. So, Claude and Tristana didn't put much faith in the wine that was displayed that night. 336 Wine Trading. As guests, Tristana and Claude didn't want to refuse and appear rude. Claude smiled politely. Andy did not notice anything. He excitedly placed the jar on the table and opened the lid. A maid poured the wine for everyone. Claude lifted the glass up to his nose. He was stunned at the rich fragrance of the wine. It was unlike anything he had come across. He couldn't wait to take a sip. The fragrance of the wine made him feel as though he was in a forest and a gentle breeze was blowing on his face. "This is good," said Claude. Although he had yet to take a sip, the fragrance alone made him feel happy. n/o/vel/b/jn.c//om. He slowly took a sip. The flavor exploded and melted on his tongue. He savored every drop of it. The wine made him feel warm and comfortable. It was like soaking in a tub full of warm water after a tiring day. The fatigue from the day's incident melted away. "Mary in the Dark Knight, you said." Claude placed the glass back on the table. The aftertaste lingered in his mouth. He looked at Andy in amazement. "That's correct. This is the final result of hundreds of years of research by the Hell Demon Wolf clan. No one in this world can brew this wine like we do." Andy was proud of what he had accomplished. Even the Hell Demon Wolf clans who have joined other tribes don't know how to make this. Claude praised Andy and his wine recipe. "Praise be to the Ice Goddess. This is the best wine I have ever tasted." Tristana smiled radiantly. As a person born and raised in a noble family, wine tasting was part of aristocratic etiquette. Tristana knew how to spot a good wine when she tasted it. The wine she had tasted in her own territory didn't taste half as good as this. Tristana placed her glass on the table. "Lord Yuan, do you plan to sell this wine? If you do, I'll gladly buy them from you." "I'm thinking about it," said Yuan. "But it's a completely new recipe that has just been developed. Besides, it's difficult to make and certainly isn't cheap. Of course, I'm willing to trade 50 units of rare resources for 1 unit of Mary of the Dark Knight. How about that?" The price offered was great. A mini or vein usually provided around 100 units of resources. Although Yuan had some rare resources in her inventory, they were difficult to obtain. Usually, they needed to plunder and raid barbarians and dwarves to find them. Who knew how many resources Tristana had accumulated over the years if she was willing to trade that much for a wine? Yuan turned to Andy. "How much of this wine can we produce in a month?" "With our current production capacity, we can manage 5,000 units per month." Yuan nodded. The production of Mary of the Dark Knight hadn't been easy. In fact, Yuan had felt that it was a very unrealistic and unattainable goal in the beginning. Once she gave it a go, she realized that it had cost her 10 units of rare resources to produce 1 unit of the wine, including the cost of labor and raw materials. If their monthly output of wine was 5,000 units, it would fetch them 250,000 units of rare resources. After deducting the production cost of about 50,000 units, Yuan would still earn a profit of 200,000 units of rare resources. Yuan felt that that was good enough. She had planned to use the Scarlet Flame Demon Spider Silk to earn more resources. However, now that she had made a deal with Tristana, she couldn't sell it to anyone else. Mary of the Dark Knight was her other asset for earning more resources. After she upgraded most of her troops, summoning them now required rare resources instead of ordinary ones. As she went on upgrading her troops level, more and more rare resources would be needed to summon them. Yuan felt that she was definitely earning the resources faster than before but spending them even more quickly. She still lacked the resources to improve her military power. In this world, power and strength were everything. If she wasn't already powerful, Claude and Tristana wouldn't be sitting here and trying to negotiate terms of trading with her. Yuan and Tristana discussed and agreed on 60 units of rare resources for 1 unit of Mary of the Dark Knight. Both sides were satisfied with the terms. For Yuan, this meant that 300,000 units of rare resources could be earned in a month. After deducting the production cost, the profit would be 250,000 units. That would massively help with the shortage of resources in the territory. To Tristana, this wasn't just about the wine or the spider silk. These were the two most important weapons in her arsenal for taking over the Frost Wolf family. With the wine, she would have control over the massive wine sales of the family. The spider silk would allow her to have power over the military. Lady Tristana, I'm planning to go to Kanglan City in a few days, said Yuan. If I find a suitable location, I'll set up a chamber of commerce for my territory there. That way, it'll be easier for you to buy my wares. You wouldn't need to cross the swamp and suffer a long, arduous journey. Yuan had already discussed it with Su Yuan. The territory needed to expand its influence and trade with the outside world if it wanted to remain strong. The swamp posed difficulties for those who wanted to trade with her. It discouraged others from venturing into her territory. The dwarves were already developing better transportation facilities to travel to different destinations. When the sandworms grew up, they could be used for deliveries of wares. It was the logical next step to set up a chamber of commerce in Kanglan City to make it convenient for trading. At Kanglan City? That's great, said Tristana. The long journey had tired her too much. She wasn't accustomed to warm weather. If possible, she never wanted to travel through swamps again. Lord Yuan, I have a manor in Kanglan City. It's not very big, but it's decent. I can give that to you so that you can set up the Chamber of Commerce. It'll be a token of my friendship, said Tristana. Yuan looked at her with emotion. Tristana was very ambitious and generous. Nobody could say that the eldest daughter of the Frost Wolf family hadn't tried her hardest. 337 Tristana's determination. Yuan couldn't find any fault in Tristana. She had given her a lot more than was necessary. First, the Frost Wolf clan token, and now, a manor? Lady Tristana, thank you so much. May our friendship be forever blessed by the Ice Goddess. Yuan lifted her wine glass in a toast to their friendship. Tristana raised her own glass in acknowledgement. To our friendship. They drank a lot that night. When Yuan finally placed her glass down on the table, she noticed that Tristana was a bit red in the face from the alcohol. Lady Tristana, I don't understand why you made the arduous journey yourself. You could have sent anyone on your behalf, said Yuan. From what she knew, Tristana was an aristocrat with power. She didn't need to travel all the way to make a trading deal, and yet she had done it anyway. Tristana smiled. True, but there are some things I need to do myself. I want to take control of the Frost Wolf family. The competition in her family was fierce. You're the eldest daughter, right? Asked Yuan. Wouldn't you be first in line for the role anyway? It is indeed better that I am the eldest, but it doesn't work that way. Anyone who can prove themselves capable can take the mantle of the family. Tristana was clearly an ambitious and driven woman. Lady Tristana, I'll do my best to support you in your endeavor. I look forward to you being accepted as the Grand Duke of the Frost Wolf family, said Yuan. Tristana smiled radiantly. Yuan's words made her feel happy. Getting the Lord's recognition made her burdens feel lighter. Thank you, said Tristana. While I'm still alive, I'll not let anybody else take control of the Frost Wolf family. Yuan nodded. She was moved by Tristana's determination. Although the Ice Empire was too far away, Yuan felt that having a powerful ally was always useful. Moreover, both sides had already laid down the foundation for future cooperation. The Ice Empire seemed to have many precious things that could be traded in exchange for something that Yuan's territory had in abundance. There was also the soul contract that only the royal family of the Ice Empire possessed. That was the only way to subdue the Vampire Duke. Right now, Yuan knew nothing about the Ice Empire. However, if she befriended Tristana, she would have an opportunity to travel there. As the family of the Grand Duke to the King, the Frost Wolf family had remarkable significance. If Tristana could take over the title in the future, it might not be impossible to get the soul contract somehow. Moreover, their friendship would mean that Tristana wouldn't harm Yuan's territory and would provide help if needed. Although Yuan felt that she was overthinking about the future, she understood that it wasn't a bad thing to plan ahead. Her territory would keep growing, and she could provide more support to Tristana to strengthen their friendship. Although my territory isn't very big, it has its own strength. What do you lack right now? If I can provide that, I would be most obliged, said Yuan. Claude was moved by Yuan's offer. He didn't expect her to help. Lord Yuan, what you have offered is the greatest help to us, said Tristana. You don't know how important the spider silk is to me right now. Yuan nodded. May I ask why it's so important to you? Are you planning to make them into weapons and armor? n/o/vel/b/n.c//om. Yes, said Tristana. Some parts of the Ice Empire are so cold and brutal that no one can venture there. Almost no life can thrive in such places. However, these laces are rich in ore veins that can provide top-quality ores. With the spider silk, I hope to develop top-tier equipment and armor which can resist cold so that venturing into these places would no longer be impossible. However, it's difficult to mass-produce that for now, but I think I can still manage to turn the spider silk into something that can equip ordinary troops. Moreover, the spider silk has some magic that neutralizes the cold. It can be used to develop weapons and equipment to reduce ice damage. The possibilities are endless. I see, said Yuan as she understood why the Scarlet Flame Demon Spider Silk was so important in the Ice Empire. It was no wonder Tristana had journeyed all this way to make this deal. Lady Tristana, if you can find the time after you return, please help me find out more about the soul contract, said Yuan. It seems that this vampire is very important to you. Yes, it is a bit important to me. Having a top-notch hero made all the difference, especially if a territory had made gods their enemies. Tristana nodded. When I return next month, I'll ask His Majesty if he can bestow the soul contract on me. However, I don't think he will. I'll try for your sake, but please don't hold on to any hopes. Yuan was touched by her offer. She didn't expect Tristana would go to that extent for her. Thank you so much, said Yuan. If it succeeds, it's great. If not, that's okay too. I'll try to find some other way. Thank you anyway. I know you don't have to do it, but still. Lord Yuan, you're too polite. Friends do things to help out each other, after all. I'll try my best. Thank you. I'll also extend my support to you in any way I can. After much talking and drinking, the night came to an end. Yuan waved at a maid and instructed her to show Tristana to the guest room. Claude insisted on returning to his soldiers, who were outside the city gates. Yuan asked a soldier to accompany him to the barracks where the soldiers were stationed. The maid showed Tristana to the guest room on the second floor of the Dark Castle. She also helped the lady change into a night dress. The maid was about to leave when a small head peeked through the door. Tristana sensed her presence and looked toward the door to find a shy centaur standing at the threshold. 338 Ice Elf statue. Is that the formidable centaur from before? Hello, said Tristana as she bowed. I'm Lady Tristana from the Ice Empire. She didn't know why the hero was here at this hour, but it was essential to show basic courtesy. As an aristocrat, etiquette was everything. Farilla shyly walked into the room and stared at Tristana. Sister Tristana, I'm Farilla. Farilla couldn't contain her curiosity anymore. Are you really from the Ice Empire? Mother said it always snows there. Is that true? What does snow look like? Tristana was a little stunned by so many questions. The centaur was like a young, curious child. It does snow all the time, said Tristana kindly. The snow is like cotton, except it's very cold to the touch. When it falls on the ground, it covers everything in white. Like a cotton blanket. Tristana knew that elves lived for a long, long time. So, they only reached adulthood after living for 200 or 300 years. Is it the same for centaurs? She wondered. That's great. I'll ask father and mother to take me to the Ice Empire to see the snow that looks like cotton blankets. Who is your father? Asked Tristana. She assumed that the centaur referred to Yuan as her mother. She hadn't seen a man besides Yuan when she had dinner with her. The dark demon dragon. He is my father. Farilla nodded as though this was common knowledge. Tristana was surprised. Lord Yuan definitely knew how to live her life to the fullest. Yuan and a dragon. Tristana was confused. How could a dragon father a centaur? Who was Farilla's biological mother? Maybe Farilla is adopted and Yuan and Yuan aren't really her biological parents. Tristana talked to Farilla at length. She realized that the centaur had the mind of a child. She was simply too young. Farilla was too flighty. She jumped up. Sister Tristana, I'll meet you some other time. I completely forgot about the class. I need to leave, or I'll be late. That's all right. Is it a private teacher? Teacher Mon teaches everyone. If I am late, I won't be able to find a good seat in the square. Tristana was stunned. The hero with unlimited potential and strength went to study in a class with other people, n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. She recalled Zoro's words. He had said that the territory was unlike anything he had seen before. Can I come with you to class? Sure, said Farilla eagerly. Teacher Mon's lessons are very interesting. You'll like it. Let's go. Tristana made her way downstairs with Farilla. They walked out of the dark castle toward the small square packed with people. Farilla pulled her along to find a seat near an old, white-haired man, a middle-aged woman, and a burly man with calloused hands. Tristana was stunned. The students were from all walks of life and of every age. They were well-dressed and always polite. In the middle, there was a raised platform. A middle-aged man scribbled something on a blackboard. He then turned around and looked at his audience. Today, I'll teach you these words. I hope it'll be of use to you in the future. Repeat after me. The man read the words aloud and the audience followed suit. Tristana looked at the people who were seriously participating and jotting down notes. The faces of people, who were so different from each other, were united in this lesson. They read aloud and helped their peers who were having difficulties. Tristana finally understood what made this territory so different from others. The lord of the territory treated everyone like sentient beings and not only as cannon fodders to be used when needed. The lord made it so that the residents would have an opportunity to gain knowledge, no matter what age or race they belonged to. Tristana thought about the Frost Wolf territory. Only members of noble families were given an education. They didn't think the poor would need it. When Tristana saw the eagerness and seriousness with which the residents were lapping up the knowledge offered to them, she had a revelation. It was no wonder that the lord of this territory had advanced and developed so much. Tristana was honored to be here. She participated in the class and felt good about it. She had no doubt that this territory would be famous throughout the world one day. During lunch the next day, Yuan realized that Tristana looked a little tired as though she hadn't slept well. When she asked her if everything was alright, Tristana just smiled and nodded. Yuan thought that Tristana was still unfamiliar with this environment, so she might not have slept well. After lunch, Yuan left to place the ice statue somewhere in the territory. She placed the statue in the square in front of the dark castle. Do you wish to place the ice elf statue here? Note, if you do, the statue will return to its original size and cannot be moved again. Yuan made her choice. The small statue grew in size. It grew into a 5-meter tall statue of a beautiful woman in a long dress. The blue light radiated from the statue in all directions. 339 eaves growth. In the areas where the light spread, the temperature dropped sharply. The scorching heat was replaced by a refreshing chill. The residents stared at the statue in disbelief. This feels nice and cool. That statue is really something. It feels so refreshing. n/o/vel/b/jn.c//om. How is this possible? The rich people could afford to buy appliances to make ice to cool themselves in the summer, but ordinary people had no such luxury. The blue light enveloped the territory and adjusted the temperature. Everyone could enjoy the drop in temperature in this scorching heat. Many residents came out of their houses to see what the commotion was about. They were delighted to find a statue that adjusted the temperature to make the heat bearable. When they found out that Lord Yuan had made this happen, they rejoiced. Long live the Lord! The air was filled with praises for Yuan. Yuan looked at the crowd in front of her and smiled. The 3 most precious things in a hot summer were the air conditioner, watermelons, and iced cola. Yuan didn't have a workshop that could mass-produce iced drinks, but she could replace them with iced wine instead. The air conditioner was taken care of. She had acres upon acres of land that could be used to cultivate watermelons. The only regret was that she didn't have a department in her territory dedicated to arts and entertainment. However, the excitement and praises of the residents made up for anything that was lacking. Yuan looked at the ice elf statue. The blue light condensed into the shadow of a beautiful woman with wings on her back. The residents were in awe of it. The wings on the figure's back were carved out of ice. It looked like a fairy from the myths and legends. Yuan was just glad that the statue had other uses. It could summon snow spirits during battle. Yuan wanted to give it a try. She summoned the snow spirits. Moments after, the blue light surged and condensed. 100 snow spirits appeared in the air. The snow spirits looked around at the territory and the people in it. They flew down to the ground and watched the residents whisper among themselves. The residents liked the snow spirits. They talked and teased these life forms. The snow spirits flapped their wings and played along. A chubby snow spirit flew towards Yuan. It tilted its face and looked at her closely. Chapter 340 Heading to Kanglan City. Yuan was puzzled. She couldn't understand whether Eve had grown this strong or if the shield was just weak. 1. Yuan directed her mana at the statue. The cracks on the shield began to heal. The ice shield was good as new again. Yuan was satisfied with this. If she had enough mana, she could keep the shield intact for a long time. With Yuan around, she didn't have to worry about mana running out. Yuan gathered some troops and instructed them to attack the shield from inside the territory. She was delighted to find out that the shield stopped attacks from outside but didn't hinder the attacks launched from inside the territory. It even added ice damage to the arrows as they shot through the air. Yuan was happy. This treasure was indeed extraordinary. After spending 2 days in Yuan's territory, Tristana decided to return to the Ice Empire. She had achieved what she came here for, so she didn't see any further need to stay. Next, she needed to figure out the most efficient use for the Scarlet Flame Demon Spider Silk to establish her authority. Yuan smiled and nodded. She needed to go to Kanglan City anyway, so she decided to come along to Kanglan City. Tristana was surprised and delighted when she heard that. Lord Yuan, you have no idea how happy that makes me. The journey to Kanglan City was long and arduous. It would definitely be nice to have someone to talk to. Tristana had Claude and her soldiers with her, but they had nothing new to talk about. The journey occasionally got really boring. Yuan gathered her troops. Tristana liked Yuan's company. She could also show her the manor in Kanglan City that Yuan could use to set up her chamber of commerce. Yuan only took aerial troops with her. She hoped the dwarves would develop means of transportation soon. It was simply too tedious to travel by land through the swamps. This time, Eve and Eliza stayed back in the territory. Yuan couldn't care less about the Chamber of Commerce or Kanglan City, but he wanted to travel. If the territory ran into some problem, they could solve it themselves or wait for him to arrive. Besides, the light types wouldn't cause trouble for a while because of the last incident. Half an hour later, Tristana's caravan arrived in the square. Everyone loaded it up with food and water. Uncle Claude, can the Dark Territory use flying troops for the journey? Asked Tristana. The laws of the Overlord Plane were strange. Flying couldn't be used as a means of transportation for long journeys. Many had tried and failed to make aerial transportation in the plane. The flying troops used as transportation either lost their minds or were struck down. I don't think so. Dark territories can only use their power till a certain range. Their power loses effect when the troops leave that area. Tristana nodded. Yuan was unaware of Tristana's doubts. She loaded the wares on the red-eyed black dragon and the white dragon saint. Yuan offered for Tristana's goods to be loaded up on the dragons too. Tristana didn't refuse. She ordered her soldiers to do it. With the supplies hanging from either side, the dragons crouched low so that Tristana's soldiers could also get on them. Tristana and Claude were arranged to ride on the back of the white dragon saint. After everything was settled, Yuan instructed the dragons to rise. Black wings unfurled from Yuan's back, and she flew alongside them. Under the watchful eyes of the residents below, the troops flew away. Tristana found that the horses that Tristana had brought along were still tied up in the corner of the square. She looked at Yuan. Lord Yuan, our camels and horses are still in the territory. I know. Yuan looked down. But, how will we journey without horses and camels? Lord Yuan, although the flying troops can send us off halfway, it's still a long distance to walk to Kanglan City, said Claude. He thought the flying troops were going to take them halfway, and then they would have to journey ahead. Halfway? Who said we'd be stopping halfway? Both Tristana and Claude were confused. Was Yuan planning to fly all the way? Lord Yuan, don't tell me you want to ride the flying troops all the way to Kanglan City. Tristana was shocked. Yuan nodded. But, I thought that flying troops couldn't be used away from the territory, said Tristana. I know, said Yuan. But we don't have to worry about that. Tristana was stunned. Yuan flew silently alongside Yuan. Claude was even more shocked. So many lords had spent their time trying to bypass the rule. They had tried their best and lost many troops along the way, but Yuan didn't have to worry about it. Many people only dreamed about possessing power like this. Claude's respect for the territory increased. He had seen so many shocking things in the territory. Maybe some people were gifted from birth? n/o/vel/b/jn.c//om. I must tell Lady Tristana to maintain a good relationship with Lord Yuan. We mustn't miss an opportunity to be friends with a territory with so much potential. Chapter 341, On the Way. Claude had a feeling that Lord Yuan would be an important and powerful ally in Tristana's fight for power over her family. 1. He turned to Tristana beside him. He saw that she was as impressed as he was about this. She looked at Yuan with admiration. Yuan was excited to visit Kanglan City. When Zoro had come to visit her in the territory, he had talked at length about the glorious city. This was Yuan's first time venturing so far away from her territory to another city. She had seen some lords mention the city before. However, the information they had posted wasn't enough for her to form an image in her mind. The first thing she wanted to do was set up a chamber of commerce in Kanglan City to expand her trading business. The Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce had taken the initiative to open trade with her before. If Yuan could set up her own chamber of commerce, she would get the choice to initiate trade relationships with others from the outside. Setting up a chamber of commerce came with lots of benefits. The extra wares could always be sold via the chamber of commerce, and it would be easier to exchange them for the materials that Yuan lacked. The online market in the forum wasn't nearly enough. Yuan had planned to fortify the agricultural area in her territory, but what Tristana had said had discouraged her. It was a luxury to have treasures like the Dimensional Stone and the World Tree Seed. If she could make use of it, she might be able to solve the problem in her territory. Thinking about all this gave Yuan a headache. She also needed to worry about obtaining the soul contract to recruit the Vampire Duke. Currently, only the royal family of the Ice Empire possessed the soul contract. It was difficult to obtain it. They couldn't put all their eggs inside one basket and wait for them to hatch. Yuan took a deep breath to calm herself. She needed to get stronger. The God of Light must already be planning his next step to destroy her territory? Although her territory had grown in size and strength and was more powerful than any other territory in the Overlord Plain, it was still not enough. When facing someone like the God of Light, her territory was weak and tiny. Besides, the future was uncertain, and it made Yuan even more stressed out. On the surface, the Overlord Plain looked peaceful. The lords went about their way and developed their own territory. However, the truth was far from that. As the lord got stronger, they wanted to attack other lords for power and resources. Yuan knew that she was a target for many other lords. She needed to get stronger. Among everything, there was something else that made Yuan's heart race. The Divine Kingdom. The Divine Kingdom and the possibility of obtaining treasure tempted her to no end. Farilla had said that the divine body of a god was sealed in that kingdom. Yuan had refused to venture there because Yuan and the rest of the troops weren't strong enough to face whatever might be in that place. Yuan needed to upgrade the territory. That way, Yuan could upgrade his level too. It was a god they would have to face, after all. If only Yuan could obtain the soul contract, she could recruit the Vampire Duke. Yuan was deep in thought throughout the journey. The troops flew at a good pace. They were already halfway there. During the flight, Tristana requested the True-Eyed Black Dragon to fly near Yuan. Tristana was anxious. Lord Yuan, there is a special ore vein in front of us. It's better if we take a detour and avoid the area. Ore vein. It looks like ordinary glass ore, said Tristana. Then, what's the problem? Asked Yuan. When we journeyed to your territory, we encountered a desert dragon in the area, said Tristana solemnly. Nearly 30 of my soldiers died fighting it. Desert dragon. Yuan was excited. Yuan had once killed a level 45 dragon as though it was an ant. Yuan was intrigued. Who didn't like dragons, after all? How many of those desert dragons are there? How strong are they? It was always good to recruit dragons. They were the most efficient means of transportation, and they were good in combat too. It wasn't good to always rely on the red-eyed black dragon and the white dragon saint. If she had more dragons, she could assign them specific jobs. Tristana saw that Yuan was very eager. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry at her enthusiasm. Most people would avoid dragons because they were dangerous. Why was Suwon so reckless? However, when Tristana glanced at Su Yuan, she understood. Maybe Suwon was so courageous because she had a dark demon dragon to rely on. n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. Chapter 342, Enticed by Su Yuan's Charm. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. There are more than 60 desert dragons. They are between levels, and the leader of the pack is a level 57 dragon hero. Because they dominated the sky, we could only attack from the ground. We suffered so many casualties. The desert of death could not be flown over. The air above it was restricted for outsiders. The dragons would swoop down and attack anyone who tried. Do they have a nest? Asked Suwon. No, they fly around the glass or mine. Tristana shook her head. The dragons were attracted by glittering things. It was believed that the goddess of creation created the perfect being. These were the dragons. However, when the goddess of creation disappeared, these perfect beings were filled with negative traits like greed and bloodlust. Suwon frowned. Are the dragons there now? She couldn't see even one dragon in the distance. The glass or mine is new. Those greedy dragons will definitely come to plunder it. They will occupy it for a few more months. Suwon marked the area on the system map and instructed the troops to take a detour. Suwon's priority right now was to reach Kanglan City as soon as possible. The mine and the dragons would have to wait. She didn't want to waste precious time. Tristana was glad. She didn't want to take any risks when she was so close to her goal. If she died here fighting the dragons, all she had worked for would go to waste. Tristana was delighted when Suwon listened to her. She felt like she could trust Suwon. After leaving the dangerous area, the rest of the journey was easy. There were no other dangers like the desert dragons. They flew for 3 days. Suddenly, an icon appeared on the map. They had finally arrived at Kanglan City. Lord Suwon, we're here. The most powerful city in the whole empire. Suwon looked in the direction where Tristana pointed. The city was so huge that Suwon was shocked. She couldn't imagine how many siege weapons would it take to bring down a city like this. Even though they were a few thousand meters away, the size of the city made them feel tiny. The red-eyed black dragon and the white dragon saint looked like ants in front of the massive city. They could see many enormous crossbows and cannons neatly arranged on the city walls. There were many tall towers everywhere around the border. The towers had a magic crystal ball that surged with magic. It looked like the crystal balls could do massive damage. The arrow towers rose in every direction. They formed a three-dimensional firepower net. The towers could unleash a torrential attack if enemies got close. Above Kanglan City, a group of Pegasi were patrolling the skies. Suwon took a deep breath to calm herself. This was the city of the natives. The power they possessed was definitely not something she could compare to, or any other lord, for that matter. Even if the lords had 5 more years to develop, they might not be able to catch up. Suwon was even more determined than before to get stronger now. She looked at Kanglan City with admiration. Her heart was filled with motivation to try to match up to it. One day, she would make her territory greater than this city. When Suwon stopped to observe, the Pegasus Knight above Kanglan City flew straight toward them. The formation was so neat as though they were made out of a perfect mold. They also looked very intimidating. The leader got off the Pegasus and approached them. Kanglan City was a peach-loving place. It hated people who caused trouble. After sizing them up, the knight on the Pegasus stared at Suwon. He could also sense the aura of the dark demon dragon near her. His stern face softened. The dark demon dragon looked formidable and had a majestic aura. He might not be a simple entity. Esteemed guests, welcome to Kanglan City, said the knight. However, I regret to inform you that no troops are allowed in the city, except the lords and their heroes. We do have a place outside the city where your soldiers can stay comfortably n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. Suwon nodded. Tristana had already warned her of this. It was similar in every city or territory. Most of them didn't allow soldiers inside for safety reasons. The knight led them to the space gates. Dozens of enormous space gates stood on the ground. Many creatures went in and out of these space gates. The gates led to places from almost all around the plane. Suwon saw Kanglan City's inner secrets. These space gates were supposed to function like parking lots. Suwon paid the gemstones to book a space gate. She instructed her troops to stay inside. She was given a token that she could use to get her troops back. Tristana did the same. However, Tristana was a special guest, so she was allowed to take some of the soldiers into the city. Su Yuan transformed into his human form. Everyone was shocked to see him in that form. Su Yuan turned into a handsome man with fair skin and thick, black hair. He had delicate eyebrows and dreamy eyes. If Su Yuan smiled, he would have looked charming. Tristana was stunned. Chapter 343, Lavender Manor. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Suwon cleared her throat deliberately to bring everyone back to reality. If it hadn't been for the fact that a dragon couldn't enter the city, Suwon would never have allowed Su Yuan to reveal his human form. He was just too irresistible. Let's go. Tristana turned away from Su Yuan. Suwon and Tristana hired 10 decent carriages to head into the city with their wares. Kanglan City was very prosperous when it came to trading and business. There were many different industries at work. They passed through the enormous city gates. Suwon looked out of the carriage window. Kanglan City was huge. There were many glittering buildings close to each other near the streets. The roof of some buildings was a glass dome. They looked so beautiful. Crowds of pedestrians walked along the streets. Su Yuan looked at the crowd in curiosity. The people were dressed in all sorts of outfits. Sometimes, someone would let out a few vulgar words before hurrying along. Su Yuan felt a sense of familiarity. The roads and streets were neatly separated. There were numerous shops and taverns along the line. The road was so wide that 2 carriages could easily fit side by side. The wheels of the carriage squeaked on the stone slabs. N/O/vel/b/jn.c//om. Tristana, Suwon, Claude, and Suwon rode in one of the carriages. Tristana did her best to inform Suwon and Su Yuan about the buildings and shops. Su Yuan listened with great interest. After crossing the bustling streets, the convoy headed straight for the city center. Lord Suwon, let's head to the manor first. Tristana avoided Su Yuan's gaze. She was red in the face. Tomorrow, we can pay a visit to the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce. Zoro and President Nami are still waiting for the 100 Night Flower honey. Also, they might be able to help you more with setting up the Chamber of Commerce here. They have more knowledge of such things than me, said Tristana. You seem to be already familiar with them. I'm sure they'll be more than happy to help. The black market in Kanglan City will also be open for 3 days. If you are interested, I can take you shopping after you visit the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce. Suwon knew that black markets had all kinds of stuff for sale. Maybe she could find something there which might help her subdue and recruit the vampire duke. After all, Su Yuan also seemed eager about the idea. The carriages stopped in front of the majestic manor. Su Yuan and Suwon got out of the carriage with Tristana. They looked up at the beautiful manor. The manor was huge. It had tall walls surrounding it and was domed. Suwon glanced at Tristana in surprise. Tristana had said that her manor wasn't huge, but it would serve her just fine. This was simply extraordinary. Tristana was also in a good mood now. She was finally back. Traveling through the swamp and the harsh environment had tired her out. She needed rest. Tristana turned to Su Yuan and Suwon. Lord Suwon and Lord Su Yuan, this will be your home in the future. It's called the Lavender Manor. I'll have it transferred to your name. In a big city like Kanglan City, even owning a small shack costs an arm and a leg. This manor was simply too lavish. Tristana was eager to prove her friendship and goodwill. So, she wanted to give this to Suwon as a gift. She had witnessed the power and potential of Suwon's territory. It would be good to maintain a good relationship with her. Suwon didn't have enough money and resources to buy a manor like this. Yet Tristana was giving it away as a gift. Suwon was grateful, but she also realized the extent to which Tristana was willing to fight for what she wanted. This elegant woman with a professional smile on her face was not someone to be trifled with. Some people were indeed born to be rulers, and Tristana was one of them. The gates of the manor opened. Maids and servants shuffled out and formed a neat line to serve them. A white-haired man walked forward. He was dressed in a suit and looked very smart. He bowed to the guests. Welcome back, Lady Tristana, he said. Welcome to Lavender Manor, esteemed guests. George, no need to be so formal, said Tristana. She gestured to Suwon and Su Yuan. Lord Suwon and her hero, Lord Su Yuan, will be staying with us in the manor. Please have everything arranged for their comfort. Of course, Lady Tristana, said George. And again, a very warm welcome to you, Lord Suwon, and to you, Lord Su Yuan. Su Yuan was amused. He wondered if this was some noble etiquette that he was unaware of. Suwon and Su Yuan returned the greeting with courtesy. Tristana led Suwon and Su Yuan through the door into the main hall. The path to the house was lined with blooming lavender bushes. Suwon felt that this was so in contrast to the dark and grim nature of her territory. Su Yuan looked at the flowers strangely. They followed Tristana into the manor. Behind the manor, 2 lords hid behind an alley and peeked through the dense vegetation. Did you see that? Who were the guests? Chapter 344, George is shocked. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. I didn't see them clearly, but George received them. They're definitely not ordinary people. Maybe they are of high statuses, like Tristana, the eldest daughter of the Grand Duke of the Ice Empire. Yuan saw her very clearly. It was her. We have to take advantage of this opportunity. Anything that slips through her fingers is enough to make us rich. But why was she accompanying 2 people? How are we going to meet them, though? George chased us away and didn't even allow us to enter the hall. We've done so many missions here before. We'll always find an opportunity. We can even go in to pretend to serve tea. Be careful, though. They seem to be very important people. Since the daughter of the Grand Duke is showing them around, I feel that they might be someone of high status. If they could get a mission from someone like that, they would definitely be rich. All right. I'll find a way to the kitchen. One met those footmen in Jasmine Street yesterday. They might let us in. One was wondering why I couldn't find you yesterday. Did you go to that despicable place alone? Why didn't you tell me? In the largest living room of Lavender Manor, a long wooden table was placed in the center. Tristana sat in the main seat. Su Yuan sat on her left and Suwon on her right. The others stood a little away at the back. Claude stood behind Tristana while George instructed the maids and the servants. After about 10 minutes of talking, Tristana turned to George. George was as impeccable as ever in his black suit that didn't have any wrinkles on them. George, please get the deed and transaction documents here. Miss Tristana, the title deed is in the secret room. A magic array needs to be activated to retrieve it. May I ask why you need it now? From today onward, the title deed will be handed over to Mr. Yuan for safekeeping. I have given the Lavender Manor to them. Two people holding the tea tray entered the room. They gasped. They couldn't believe their ears. The Lavender Manor was extremely valuable in Kanglan City. How powerful was the person who had just arrived that Lady Tristana was willing to give them the Lavender Manor? The two people couldn't even get the chance to talk to Lady Tristana, let alone get to know her enough to build goodwill. They could only try to get along with the servants and the maids. The two strangers were appalled. If only they could talk to the two people who had arrived just now, they would have the chance to accept missions from them and earn some money. They approached the long table and poured tea for the guests. They couldn't just outright ask the guests for a mission, so they decided to be patient. If they interrupted the nobles, they would be chased out of the manor. A servant wasn't allowed to talk to the masters, after all. They poured the tea and stood at the side. They just wanted to learn more about them so that they could talk to them later when the guests were alone. Tristana looked at the two people who poured the tea. They were dressed in strange attire. However, she didn't question them in front of her guests. She decided to bring this to George's attention. Yuan recognized the two people. However, they were only at level 38, so she ignored them for the time being. The two people left the living room. Were you able to find things out about them? No, it's strange. The man's aura is too great, and it masks his attributes somehow. What about the woman? She looks familiar. Really? Are you sure? Yeah, I think she's Yuan. The person looked at his accomplice in disbelief. Yuan, n/o/vel/b/jn.c//om. Tristana's guest was Lord Yuan. I know it was. Tristana brought Yuan here. It's no wonder she was gone for a long time. Isn't Yuan that lord from the Dark Territory? Yes. Tristana is giving her the whole manor. The two people looked at each other with envy and jealousy. They couldn't even get the chance to talk to Tristana, but Yuan was a guest of honor. Tristana was even giving Yuan the Lavender Manor. George was equally stunned by the news. Lady Tristana, the Lavender Manor was a gift from the Grand Duke to you. If you want to give it away, you will need to ask the Grand Duke first. Also, this is our residence in Kanglan City. Where will we stay if you give away the Lavender Manor? Tristana smiled. George, this was a gift from my father, so I can make decisions regarding it. Please make the arrangements. Uncle Claude, please help George with this. George seemed to want to say something, but he held himself back. He had to keep his cool in front of the guests. After Claude and George left the living room, he couldn't stay silent anymore. Claude, why didn't you stop her? The guest is just a lord. Did you see the two strange people pouring tea? They are lords too. Why is this lord valued so much? George, if Lady Tristana was giving away the manor to anyone else, I would have objected. However, Lord Yuan is different. Claude smiled. Chapter 345, to get on Yuan's good side. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. I know this comes as a surprise. Lord Yuan rules the Dark Territory, and her hero, the Dark Demon Dragon, has unfathomable abilities. You didn't see the wonders of that territory, but I did. Believe me, Lady Tristana knows what she's doing. If you had been there with us, you'd willingly give Yuan the deed. Lord Yuan is worthy of such a gift. George was stunned. He really couldn't understand what had happened on their journey which had changed their minds this way. If he didn't know better, he would have assumed they had been bewitched. George nodded. I'll serve Lady Tristana to the best of my ability, but as a butler, it is my duty to point something out if it looks strange. Claude didn't argue. He understood George completely. It was rather hard to believe, after all. George stopped in his tracks. He frowned. Who allowed you to enter the main hall? Look at what you're wearing. The servants of the Frost Wolf clan shouldn't be this shabby. The two lords remained quiet. They didn't dare argue. George, we just wanted to help. We respect Lady Tristana and want to work for her. That's right. Besides, Lady Tristana seemed to be working with Yuan now. We should get a chance to. George was indifferent, but he perked up when he heard the name. Yuan. Wait, so the lord that Lady Tristana brought along with her is the powerful Lord Yuan? Asked George. The two lords looked at George in confusion. Yes. Didn't Lady Tristana introduce her? Speak when you are spoken to, said George. How do you know this lord is the same Lord Su who was ranked first among the lords? We have seen her before. George was stunned. Lady Tristana is wise indeed. He finally realized why Tristana was being so generous. Claude was a little confused. He hadn't paid attention to the lords and their rankings. He had been busy strategizing the family business with Tristana. George smiled. Lord Yuan is the most powerful lord right now. She has progressed rapidly through the ranks and stood out among her peers. This relationship with the lord will be very fruitful. Claude was surprised and delighted. He hadn't expected Yuan to be so renowned. As expected, he hadn't misjudged the lord. She was indeed extraordinary. The two lords smiled widely. They knew this was their chance. However, their faces fell when George and Claude completely ignored them and turned away to leave. George got the deed and met the guests in the living room again. Lord Yuan, this is the title deed for the Lavender Manor. Please forgive me for my previous rudeness. You can send someone with me later to have the ownership changed to your name in Kanglan City Hall. From today, this manor is yours. Su Yuan didn't say anything, but he found George's change of attitude very amusing. Did Suwon really have that kind of charm? n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. Tristana was also confused at George's change of opinion. He had been so reluctant, but now, he was willingly welcoming Suwon. She glanced at Claude. He nodded at her. Uncle Claude must have convinced him of the benefits of getting onto Suwon's good side. Lady Tristana, your vision and foresight are extraordinary. To be able to make acquaintance with Lord Suwon is indeed a blessing from the Ice Goddess. He looked at Su Yuan. Who's this man and how is he related to Suwon? Claude walked forward and whispered into Tristana's ears. Tristana looked delighted. She turned to look at Suwon and Su Yuan even more respectfully. The strongest lord and an entity who was acknowledged as ethereal by all heroes. She hadn't expected Suwon to be this powerful. Most lords were mediocre, but Suwon had already made her name in the Overlord plane as one of the strongest lords. Tristana understood that this was indeed fate. She had been guided to Suwon's territory for a reason. This is unbelievable. Suwon is actually the most powerful lord in the Overlord plane right now. Su Yuan had recognized the two lords who poured tea for them. He didn't dwell much on it. The Overlord plane was vast, and the lords were scattered all over the plane. However, Suwon's ranking was not unknown to them. The lords wouldn't come here to seek death. He didn't need to worry. Moreover, Suwon had Su Yuan by her side. The two lords decided to get on Suwon's good side. That way, they could convince her to let Tristana give them some missions to fulfill. It would all work out fine. Chapter 346, The Big Lord is indeed extraordinary. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Tristana teased Suwon about her achievements. It's nothing. I just got lucky. Suwon smiled. n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. Tristana didn't tease her any further. She was confident that their friendship would only grow from here. Tristana talked at length about Kanglan City and important things that they should be aware of. It was almost dinner time by the time they finished talking. Su Yuan and Suwon enjoyed a sumptuous dinner with Tristana. Suwon felt that the food she served her guests in her own territory couldn't even compare to a feast like this. After dinner, Su Yuan and Suwon headed to their rooms to sleep. Su Yuan, do you sense anyone powerful in Kanglan City? There is a powerful entity in the east, but it's not as strong as the God of Light. Su Yuan had felt it the moment they had stepped into Kanglan City. However, the entity that emitted the aura hadn't tried to make a move. Suwon nodded. She didn't want to get tangled up in a fight in Kanglan City. Her territory wasn't comparable to Kanglan City right now. Is there anything you need to buy? We can go to the black market tomorrow. Su Yuan stretched. He wasn't used to being a human. Suwon felt touched. He still thought about her despite everything they needed to do here. She smiled. Su Yuan reached out his hand and patted her on the head. A maid knocked on the door. She informed them that some lords requested an audience with Suwon. Suwon knew they were the two lords she had seen before. She really didn't want to talk to them here in Kanglan City. Suwon sighed. Su Yuan had mentioned the black market. She thought that maybe the two lords knew about it and could give them some information. She let the two lords enter the room. The two lords had only ever visited the servant quarters. This huge room left them speechless. They were even more appalled when they realized that this manor now belonged to Suwon. Lord Suwon, how nice to meet you here, said one of the lords. They were nervous. A single word from Suwon could change their fate. The gap of strength was already huge between them. Don't be nervous. I don't eat people. Please sit down. Suwon waved her hand. Seeing other lords in Kanglan City made her feel a bit at ease. We won't reveal your location to anyone, said the other lord. What purpose do you have in the Lavender Manor? Asked Su Yuan. We knew that the Lavender Manor wasn't just any manor. Then, we did some digging and found out that it belonged to Lady Tristana, who happened to be the eldest daughter of the Grand Duke of the Ice Empire. We tried to get on her good side, hoping that she would give us missions to fulfill. We just wanted to obtain decent treasures. What about your territory? Why do you waste your time here? Asked Suwon. Lord Suwon, not everybody is as talented as you in managing their territories. They had gone bankrupt. Moreover, the residents had rebelled against them. So, they sold their territory and arrived at Kanglan City to make a living. Suwon knew how difficult it was to manage a territory. She had read about so many lords abandoning or selling their territories because they could no longer afford to keep a territory. Her heart softened. How long have you been in Kanglan City? What do you know about the black market? The black market is a high-level location in Kanglan City. Only players with 1,000 contribution points can enter. We only have slightly more than 100. We can't enter it. The lords also told Suwon that sometimes high-level treasure appeared in the black market. Last week, there was some rumor about a legendary item. Ordinary lords couldn't even dream of entering the black market. Lord Suwon, what do you plan to buy from the black market? Maybe we can help you get some information. One know a lot of friends who have been to the black market. I want to buy a treasure that can enslave evil heroes, specifically something called a soul contract. Do you know anything about it? If you can get me information on it, I'll reward you well, said Suwon. The two lords were excited. We'll try our best. Can you give us a little more detail about this item? The higher the level of treasure, the better it would be. It should be strong enough to subdue an evil hero. The target is above level 65. If the treasure is of a low level, it'll be useless against the hero, said Su Yuan. The two lords gasped. Level 65. They were far from achieving level 60, but Suan was already thinking of subduing a level 65 hero. I have 2 A-class treasures with me. If the information you find is useful to me, I'll give them to you, said Suan. You can tell your friends to find more information. They'll be rewarded well. An A-class treasure. The two lords were even more excited. The best treasure they possessed was of B-class. They had only obtained that after taking on numerous missions for a month. Chapter 347, Visiting the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce for the first time. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Lord Suan, is there anything else you need? It would be helpful if you can find more information on special treasures, especially armor. After a short discussion, the two lords left. Did you notice the man beside Suan? He seemed to be very powerful, said one of the lords. I've never seen him before. They decided to put every effort into helping Suan. If they made a good impression, it would work in their favor in the future. Besides, Suan was so generous. She was willing to give them A-class treasures. For lords, A-class treasures were very precious. Suan hadn't lied to them. She did have a few useful treasures she had obtained from the dwarves. If the two lords found her the information she needed, she would reward them generously. Subduing the vampire duke was of the utmost importance right now. If Suan could subdue and recruit the vampire hero, the strength of her territory would soar. Although Suan herself wasn't strong, she was smart enough to make up for it in other ways. The next morning, the carriage with the Frost Wolf family's coat of arms drove out of the gates of the Lavender Manor. At the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce, Nami looked at the eager Zoro with amusement. President Nami was dressed in a red gown today. There were blooming roses embroidered on the helm. She looked beautiful. No one dared to stare at her. President Nami, despite her feminine charms, wasn't someone to trifle with. She had killed the enemies of the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce until the land was awash with blood. You're saying that Lord Suan and the Dark Demon Dragon are here in Kanglin City? Are you sure? Zoro smiled brightly. Yes, President Nami. Lady Tristana brought them along with her. A maid had informed them that the guests would be visiting today. Nami smiled radiantly. Zoro's words uplifted her mood. She was always curious about Suan after they had made a deal of the 100 night flower honey. Nami was curious whether Suan was as extraordinary as Zoro made her out to be. She still recalled what he had said when she wanted to recruit the Lord to her Chamber of Commerce. He had said they didn't have the authority to do something like that. Tristana gestured out of the window. Su Yuan turned to look. The buildings were densely packed. Unlike the Lavender Manor, the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce was a cluster of buildings. The road branched out to the entrance of the buildings. Many carriages went in and out. The place was bustling with activity. The guards wore crisp uniforms. The managers seemed to wear medals on their lapels to set them apart from others. The carriage slowly drove through. It finally reached a wide open space in front of the main building. They saw Zoro ready to receive them. Lord Su Yuan and Lord Suan, you're finally here, said Zoro excitedly. One can't believe you are finally here in Kanglin City, n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. Zoro, it's been so long since one last saw you, said Suan. Alas, Lord Suan, one can't visit you as often as one want to. It takes 2 months to go back and forth between this city and your territory. I sometimes wish your territory was closer. Zoro really admired and respected Suan for being able to develop her territory so much despite living in a harsh and secluded place. A dry and barren place was not suitable for ordinary people. Lady Tristana, forgive my rudeness. I was ignoring you. It's just that it has been so long since one saw Lord Suan and Lord Su Yuan. Zoro bowed to Tristana. I understand, said Tristana. One would like to thank you for helping me establish contact with Lord Suan. If it hadn't been for you, one might have never known about them. It seems your meeting has been fruitful, said Zoro. One wish you the best in becoming the successor of the Frost Wolf family. Tristana had never hidden her desire to become the heir of the Frost Wolf family. Her goal was always firm, and she was always truthful about it. After exchanging greetings, Zoro led them through the huge front doors. There was a giant blooming flower in a glass dome in the center of the hall. This flower was built when the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce was founded. It's the symbol of our Chamber of Commerce. The building had a temperature-adjusting mechanism. It reminded Suan of the ice elf statue that Tristana had given her. Su Yuan turned around to look. The place was exquisite. There were paintings on the wall. The decorations were luxurious and elegant. It was clear that this was old money. Nobody could collect so many paintings and antiques in just a few years. The staff members were meticulous. They went about their jobs efficiently. Other lords passed them, but they didn't dare approach them here. They only watched from afar. Su Yuan found the elevator amusing. The world's technology had advanced so much. Although it wasn't as advanced as Blue Planet's technology, it was still remarkable. Zoro pulled open the door of the alchemy elevator with a flourish and let them step in. Chapter 348, Conversation. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. This is the recent advancement in alchemy technology, said Zoro. Su Yuan and Suan were intrigued. Zoro closed the door. There was the sound of chains being pulled taut. The elevator then rose. When it stopped, Zoro opened the elevator door to let them out. This is President Nami's office. There were 2 guards posted on either side of the door. Zoro, Tristana, Su Yuan, and Suan walked past them and into the office. A beautiful figure in a red gown greeted them. She was as white as snow. She looked as though she was sculpted by an artist. President Nami's purple eyes lit up in delight as she saw them. Suan opened Nami's attribute panel. She was much more interested to know about President Nami's strength level. Suan took a quick glance and her face darkened. President Nami of Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce looked very young. She looked like she was only 27 or 28 in age, but she was actually at the legendary level. President Nami wasn't as simple as they had thought. Respected President, it's nice to finally meet you, said Suan with a diplomatic smile. Su Yuan remained silent. He was as indifferent as ever. Nami's eyes lit up as she turned to look at the dark demon dragon. In the entire Kanglan city, there weren't many people who could compare to him. President Nami, I'm very grateful for your help. Tristana stepped forward. Nami looked at Tristana in surprise. She understood that she had gotten what she wanted. To have something to offer to the esteemed daughter of the Grand Duke of the Ice Empire, this lord wasn't ordinary. Nami looked at Suan with interest. There is no need to be so formal when hope you take the reins of the Frost Wolf clan and raise your family's name to new heights. It will be my honor to see that happen. President Nami then turned to Suan and bowed. Lord Suan, it's indeed an honor to welcome you to Kanglan City. Please be seated. She gestured at the white chairs and tea table on one side of the vast office. Suan nodded and sat down between Su Yuan and Tristana. The maid poured them tea and laid out some snacks. Lord Suan, Zoro holds you in high esteem. He constantly says that no lord can hold a candle to you. Suan laughed. You flatter me. Although I have tried my best at being a lord, I'm far from perfect. Besides, there are so many lords who keep a low profile but are very talented. That was true. No one knew what the lords might encounter in their expeditions that might just make them the strongest. Even so, you have risen dramatically in ranking. You have worked so hard to win. I haven't met anyone with such fortitude yet. You fought with the light types and 10,000 enemies. You defeated them spectacularly. President Nami looked at Suan in admiration. Suan indeed deserved respect. Tristana looked at Suan. She looked very proud of the new friend she had made. She didn't know the details of Suan's achievements before. Suan suddenly thought of something and opened her attribute panel. Additional characteristic, intimidation. Lords and heroes at a lower level will revere you. An increase in personal charm has a chance to attract heroes voluntarily. When entering an underworld city, people will revere UN/O/vel/B//in.C//OM. The legendary point that she had obtained had already been activated when she became the vice president of the Dark Region City. However, that point was only applicable in the underground world. Suwon didn't know that some traits could manifest even above ground. She was excited to develop the skill further. One day, she would be able to recruit many heroes to her side without trying so hard. President Nami, I and Su Yuan are here for important work, said Suwon and hesitated. Lord Suwon, please speak openly. The Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce has always been friendly to our partners. You don't need to hesitate. It's very difficult for my territory to trade with the outside world. In order to carry out better and easier transactions, we are planning to set up a Chamber of Commerce here in Kanglan City. I would be very grateful for any information or advice that you could bestow on us. That's great. I am genuinely happy because I don't have to wait for months to receive my share of the 100 night flower honey. Nami chuckled. She turned to Zoro. Zoro, please help Lord Suwon with the matter on behalf of the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce. Chapter 349, Upgraded Honey. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Lord Suwon, establishing a Chamber of Commerce requires a location and a fixed address. If you don't have a place in Kanglan City, Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce is willing to provide you with a house for free. You can move out if you find a suitable place in the future if you want to. Suwon felt that President Nami had shown her kindness even when she didn't have to. However, with Tristana's help, that problem was solved. You don't need to worry about that, President Nami. I gave Suwon the Lavender Manor as a token of my friendship, said Tristana just as Suwon was about to politely decline Nami's offer. Nami's eyes narrowed slightly as she looked at the smiling Tristana. She was a little surprised. The Lavender Manor was the Frost Wolf family's only base in Kanglan City. Although it wasn't an extravagant manor by the standards of the Grand Duke, it was still a very expensive and lavish place. Tristana had given it away just like that? Moreover, Tristana had never met Suwon before she traveled to Suwon's territory. Nami wondered if Tristana had found something important in the territory for her to try so hard to establish a good relationship with Suwon. Nami knew that Tristana wasn't an idiot. Suwon was definitely worth investing in. Although the Scarlet Flame Demon Spider Silk was precious to Tristana, she wouldn't have given a whole manor away just for that. All right. I'm happy to hear that is taken care of, said President Nami. I'm still grateful for your kind intentions, President Nami. In the future, I'll definitely remember your kindness. Hopefully, my territory and Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce will have mutual goodwill in the days to come. Suwon smiled. Suwon took out 2 bottles of 100 night flower honey from space. The honey glowed golden and was thick as amber. This is the latest premium honey produced by the Night Devil bees after they advanced to a new level. There are only 2 bottles for now. Her territory was not as wealthy as the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce, so she could not offer too many extravagant gifts. This was all she could manage. The 100 Night Flower Honey was a project Yuan was working on and supplying to the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce. After Yuan had plundered the underground city, she had upgraded the Night Devil bees to a special grade. The honey that they produced now was also of higher quality. Although the bees and their honey had increased by only one level, it had made a massive difference in the honey's taste and benefits. The current 100 Night Flower Honey was the best of the bunch. Nami picked up one of the bottles and looked at it carefully. Even though the bottle was sealed tightly, the fragrance was unmistakable. She looked at Yuan questioningly. Yuan nodded. Nami then opened the lid on the bottle. The fragrance of the honey was richer than the previous batch she had received from Yuan. "It smells so nice," said Nami. Nami picked up a spoon beside her cup and scooped up the honey. She put it in her mouth to taste. Nami loved the honey so much that she closed her eyes to enjoy the taste. She looked like a small child who had found a delicious snack. She was surprised when she felt her spiritual energy surge within her body. Nami looked at the honey in surprise. Not only was the honey even more tasty than before but also had an improved effect on the body. She carefully closed the lid on the bottle and looked at Yuan. "This is simply great. The Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce would like to update the pricing of this new type of honey. Previously, we paid you 200 units of rare resources for 1 unit of honey. This time, we offer 1,000 units of rare resources for the same unit of honey." The price had increased by 5 times. Yuan and Yuan hadn't expected this. The price had increased by 5 times. Yuan opened the attribute panel to take a look. Night Devil Bees n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. Level, Special. Bee Queen, Special, upgraded to Transcendent Bee Queen. The hive can produce better quality honey. Characteristic, able to produce a special grade darkland honey with a special fragrance. After consumption, it can immediately recover 30% of stamina and mana and can heal from injuries. In the next hour, it will greatly increase the recovery speed of stamina and mana and heal rapidly. Number of bees, numerous. Secondary bee nest, can have 2 advanced, 4 intermediate, and 8 beginner secondary bee queens. Production, 30 units of premium honey per week, currently available storage, 20 units. High-level queen bee produces 15 units of premium honey per week, 30. Middle-level queen bee produces 10 units, 40. Beginner queen bee produces 5 units, 40. Note, the bees are extremely rare and found only in dark territory. The total honey produced by all the beehives currently present would amount to 130 units per week, which meant 520 units per month. If each unit fetched 1,000 units of rare resources, that would mean the total income would be 520,000 units of rare resources per month. The profit from the honey was even more than that from the Scarlet Flame Demon Spider Silk. Yuan didn't have to worry about the lack of resources in the future. Yuan was very satisfied with the offer. He realized that farming for honey or other materials had low returns in the early stages. However, once the business took off, it was the most profitable. "Lord Yuan, I hope you'll consider it. Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce never mistreats its partner. If it is not enough, you only need to say so," said Nami when she saw that Yuan had gone silent. "I have full faith in you, President Nami. That is the reason why we came here in the first place. We need some help from the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce. If you can provide the said help, we are willing to provide you with 3 or 5 years' worth of honey for free. If it is within my power, I'll do anything I can to help," said President Nami. Yuan said solemnly. "One recently obtained an evil hero. The strength of the hero is above level 65.1. Need a treasure that'll help subdue the hero so I can recruit it to my territory." Yuan had come to Kanglan City to fulfill many of her goals. She first wanted to establish a chamber of commerce, find a way to subdue the vampire duke and discover a way to use the dimension stone. Setting up a chamber of commerce was the easy part. The latter two proved to be the most difficult. Chapter 350, Do you want to get on their good side? Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. If the matter had been easy, Yuan wouldn't have accompanied Yuan. "I'm sorry," said President Nami. "The Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce would have helped you if we could. However, we have no such treasure. Treasures like that aren't even found in the main market." Nami was deep in thought. A treasure that could subdue and recruit a hero would be immensely rare and valuable. It was not easy to obtain something like that. Today is the opening day for the black market. Perhaps you can try your luck there. You might just find something, said President Nami. In the black market, there is a shop called Red Dragon Store. The shop sells all kinds of strange items. Maybe you can find something there. If you are barred from the shop, you can mention my name. They'll let you in. Yuan was delighted. President Nami was a great help already. Thank you so much. Yuan and Yuan bid her farewell and prepared to visit the black market. Yuan decided to be more subtle about the whole thing. She wouldn't ask about the treasure outright. She first wanted to observe the things in the black market to make sure it was safe to mention the treasure. Even if she had Yuan by her side, she wasn't willing to risk it. Zoro led them out. He saw them off at the door and returned to the office. The Lord doesn't disappoint. Lord Yuan was smart and got straight to the point. There was also the dark demon dragon who had transformed into a human man. Also, the fact that Tristana had given away the manor so easily meant that she saw some value in the lord that would come in handy later. President Nami, you told them about the Red Dragon store. Isn't that a little? The lord is extraordinary, is she not? Hopefully, she'll find what she's looking for. The Red Dragon store doesn't eat people. The owner is good and honest. Maybe Soan will be able to get the treasure she needs, after all. Nami looked at the bottles of honey on the table. Soan had risen so fast through the ranks even if she didn't look that intimidating. Who knew what kind of power the Dark Demon Dragon held? The two lords went straight to the Dragon and Snake Inn. The two players left Lavender Manor and arrived at the Mixed Dragon and Snake Inn. Is he here? Asked one of the lords. On the second floor, said the maid solemnly as she stared at their shabby clothes. The two lords smiled at her and headed upstairs. A bald man sat by the window, sipping at his drink. Brother Knight. Hey, I haven't seen you two for quite a while, exclaimed the bald man. So, how's it going? Got anything out of the Lavender Manor yet? Brother Knight, everything is good. We have managed to snag a high-level mission from some very important people. We hope you can help. As you already know, Lavender Manor is owned by the Frost Wolf family. The eldest daughter of the Frost Wolf Grand Duke, Tristana, has returned, said the other lord. Wow, so you received a mission from the eldest daughter of the Frost Wolf Grand Duke? Not bad, said the bald man. One of the lords shook his head. Not her? Then, the butler, said the bald man. Not from the butler, either. Then who? Said the bald man impatiently. When Tristana returned, there was someone else with her. Do you know the first thing Tristana did when she returned to the manor? Asked one of the lords. What? She gave away the Lavender Manor to the guests. The bald man's impatience disappeared. He was finally interested in knowing more. Is that supposed to be a joke? Why would she give away her manor just like that? We heard it with our own ears, said one of the lords smugly. So, you received this mission from that person? Asked the bald man. The lord nodded. The rewards are tempting. If we can help her, she'll give us 2 A-class treasures. 2 A-class treasures. The bald man's eyes widened. A-class treasures were considered top-quality treasures. S-class treasures were almost impossible to obtain via missions. What kind of mission is it? The two lords didn't hide anything. As long as you can provide information about the treasure they need, you can just go and claim the reward n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. The two lords held back the identity of the one who had assigned the mission. So, no matter who got the information, they'd have to find the two lords to know who to approach to claim the reward. The bald man noticed that the two lords didn't give away the name of the one who had assigned the mission. To be able to survive till now, the two people were far from fools. I just hope you are serious about this and not playing a bad joke on me. Otherwise, I'll make you experience real pain. Brother Knight, we are not outsiders. We came to you because we want you to benefit from this too. This mission is just the beginning. There will be many other benefits in the future if we get onto that person's good side. Do you want to get on their good side too? The bald man nodded. It's all settled now. If there's any news, you come to us, all right? We'll go together. The bald man asked for more details. After confirming that the two of them were telling the truth, he spread the news. The tavern was the hotspot for lords and other adventurers alike. It did not take long for the news to spread. As long as they obtained any information about the soul contract, they would visit the tavern to claim the treasure. A-class treasures were already considered very rare among the lords. Many people just gave up on obtaining them because it was so difficult to find them. The news spread so fast from the tavern that every corner of Kanglan City was abuzz with the mention of the treasure. After leaving the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce, Yuan, Yuan, and Tristana took a carriage and headed to the black market.